Oh, it's Championship Sunday here for the Phase 1 playoffs in the SBL Season 8, all powered by Alienware. A lot on the line for these two teams, at least a nice chunk of change that is going to be able to line their pockets, assuming you get the victory and you're able to come out on top. But before we get into that, you heard it in the video, and you can see right here that we're rocking the Alienwares, and we want to thank Alienware once again for coming on board as our title sponsor here for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. As you saw, our pros are playing on that Aurora R10 Ryzen desktop, as well as these Alienware, the 25-inch 240Hz gaming monitors. You want to check out everything that they have, all of their awesome products at smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW when you're there, and while you're at it, go ahead, follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware. Go to alienwarearena.com for giveaways and more to join their global community. So thank you once again to Alienware, because they are now giving us the gear provided to make sure that we have a really good Sunday. Also, happy Father's Day to everybody, or all the dads, I should say, out there. As we're celebrating that, hopefully you're going to get a good finals, at least from us. Otherwise, we're your dads now, and yes, that includes Taco. Taco, you're now a dad.
I'll be a father to the SMITE community. That's fine.
Yeah, see? It's fine.
I left, but I came back. You know?
Exactly. Like I did. Like you. Never mind. I'm not going to get into that. That's a deep hole I'm not going to dive into. This is going to be a really fun one. As you've seen this entire weekend, best of fives, lots of action. Yesterday, surprisingly, only 7 games total needed to be played, but it was 7 games to give us the Bolts and the Dragons as we moved forward. Leviathans knocked out. The Dragons have had the hardest path to finals that they could have had, I guess, save for maybe 2 games there from the Warriors yesterday.
Dragons have never liked making it easy for themselves, and even as PandaCat has mentioned in the previous interview from yesterday, they are sometimes their own worst enemy, and I think that that is something that also kind of symbolizes just how strong this team is individually, and the fact that they're able to mesh those identities so well together to look as strong as they do so consistently, Gore. Even when we see them having those mild slumps, it's not like they stay down there. They always have that bounce back aspect.
Now I've got my own worst enemy stuck in my head. It's just running on repeat. I'm going to get that one out of there and get a little bit focused up, because we're going to be talking about the Dragons here. This is something I was looking a little bit earlier, because, the last time these two teams played, the Bolts were able to win. There was some fun on Twitter afterward. Everything kind of blew up in an explosion of just a 2-1 set, right? So let alone what we could see in a whole best of 5. But I decided to look back at it, because I was like, man, everybody, save for Herwind, everybody in the Dragons didn't struggle much against the Bolts last year. In fact, I looked at it, the Bolts won 1 game against this entire lineup, save for Herwind last year. So they're already technically doing double the work.
Some team alterations, of course, taking place as well. I think that Herwind has always been a very mechanically strong player. It's really just come down to him being surrounded by a team, I think, that's going to take the initiative to really utilize his talents mechanically and just know that he is a very consistent member at understanding how to position, how to follow up. He catches a lot more flack, but that's kind of expected for carries in the Pro League.
I mean, especially in this moment, you look at the Dragons, again, last year, what they were able to provide, what they were able to accomplish. This is a team that dominated pretty much every facet. I mean, early on, the first phase, maybe not as clean as they would have liked. Then phase 2, every playoffs they went to, and then Worlds up to the last finals. I mean, everything going so strongly in their favor. Unfortunately, Herwin's been the one that's been taking maybe the brunt of it, kind of the lightning rod for everything that comes through. But at the end of the day, all of the things that made this team so dominant still exist. In fact, we still see it pretty often. Yesterday, they didn't even break a sweat against the Warriors.
When so much passion is involved for their profession, it's kind of expected for tensions to run a little bit high at times. But I think at the end of the day, Gore, there is a ton of respect between these two teams across every single one of the members on each of these rosters. And while we do get to see the fun from time to time, I think ultimately this is just more of a standpoint for either of these teams to make, and I think especially for the Dragons, they kind of just want to really reinforce the fact that this is a team that is not just looking at winning the playoffs, but they're looking at taking it all home this year.
Now, this is something, at least what I'm learning from these highlights, don't let Herwind have Tiamat if you can avoid it. Of course, the Giannis was banned a lot yesterday, Mercury was banned a lot. The Bolts, they didn't get a lot of footage in the semifinals to look at. Lucky for them, there was a whole 5-game set on Friday to watch over if they wanted to, and I'm sure they did, to make sure they could come into this with as much homework on the Dragons as they need, because looking at the Bolts, that's where a lot of their success has been. I mean, you look at it yesterday, a lot of people I've been seeing talk about it. If Lasborough has a good day, the Bolts win, and that's just how it goes. The question is whether or not, Taco, will today be another good day for Lasborough?
And that depends, because it's not just going to come down individually to Lasborough. I think that it's going to require all of the members on the Bolts to really be on their A game, because from what we saw out of the Dragons yesterday, Gore, and the quick work that they would make of the Oni Warriors, granted, I don't think that we saw the Oni Warriors at their best of the performance. Most people would probably agree with that, but I just feel as though the Dragons are definitely out for, blood here on the SMITE Battlegrounds, and I do expect the Bolts to certainly keep that in mind. As Venenu also mentioned in their post-game interview, he understands that this is going to be a tough set, and he also just, I think, has a really good idea of a lot of these players' play styles as well, having been in the league for as long as he has.
And the good thing about this, and I think this is actually going to be interesting, there's so many good matchups in this individual set that makes the full 5-on-5 interesting, but of course, we're playing up to it. Venenu is the one that we want to look at, and he was willing to pull out the Discordia yesterday, looked phenomenal on that. His Merlin play lately has been top-notch. Morgan feels like a must-man. Like, there's so much to try and lock down for just the mid lane here that the Bolts are able to run rampant.
The main message that I'm getting from both of these teams, though, Gore, watching them throughout the group stages and through their playoffs phases so far, these teams just have players, especially mid laners, that are incredibly flexible. And I think you could throw up just about any god for any of these individual roles, and they'd be able to make it work, because that is just the mechanical level that these teams are working with. So both of these teams have kind of seen a little bit of a reveal for some styles of draft, but you have to imagine that both teams are also taking that into consideration when they're going through what kind of compositions they want to try and run today.
I feel like adaptability is going to be the name of the game. I also saw a Zhang Kui highlight in here. I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I personally don't expect to see it. Maybe, I don't know if they might already be in the call. They might be hearing it. I might be predicting
versus Baba Yaga.
A Zhang Kui,
the real showdown.
That'd be a fun one to just have someone stream only mid lane perspective, see the head-to-head. It'd be really fun. But you know what? We've been talking a lot about the mid laners here, so why don't we bring in not just one, but both of them, Herwind and Venenu here from both the Dragons and the Bolts. And guys, since you're both here, all those strategy questions, how you deal with your opponent, I'm going to throw those out there. I'm just going to ask you both the same questions, and I'll go to Venenu first here. Is there anything you want to say to Herwind before the game starts, man?
It's going to be a fun set. I mean, both teams, the best teams in the league right now, for sure. And I'm excited to play against them. And playing against the best of the best is always fun. Always learn a lot, and I'm excited.
And Herwind, same to you. Any words for your opponents here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just, may the better team win. It's honestly just been a long time since we've played against each other, since all that beef went down. I mean, and part of it feels like it's faded. I think other people have held on to it maybe more than me, but it's still a little bit more exciting, I think, than your average game. There's definitely going to be some trash talk at the end of the set one way or another, so you can look forward to that.
Lightning's in the air, fire's in the air. Either way, both are going to be happy. I also want to ask you guys, especially because we're in this position, a lot of people are coming out. You two have a very vocal following, both the Bolts and the Dragons. So, again, back to you, Vin. Is there something you want to say for the people rooting for you today?
We're going to give it our all, We prepped hard for this, and excited to play.
Excited to see it. Herwind, same to you. Anything you want to say for all the Dragons fans out there?
Yeah, I mean, just thanks for the support, guys. I mean, there's been way more support than I would have ever expected. Hopefully we can kind of reflect in the effort that we put forward to in preparing for this match and the rest of our matches and make you guys proud. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks to both of you for coming in, hopping in, and having the words for us. Good luck in your games, and let's get you to it. Let's ship you off and let it get going.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, hey, they sound kind of focused, if anything. It was one of those moments where it's just like, what Vin are we going to get? What Herwind are we going to get? Sportsmanship's the name of the game as of right now. Wait for the trash talk afterward. I can hear Panda Cat's Twitter account now going off saying, look, you got to be brave enough. You got to put it out there up front and be willing to eat your own words.
I just find it particularly hilarious, Gore, because for anybody who doesn't know back at home, Venenu and Hurrywin are, honest to God, two of the nicest personalities behind the scenes. So it was hilarious watching that whole Twitter debacle take place, and even talking to them like individually after the fact. They're both kind of in the same boat of like, oh man, did not want to deal with all the like exterior problems that came about from that. But they both obviously, I think when it comes to playing the game professionally as well, you just have a certain understanding that, again, those tensions are going to run high at times, but ultimately you're both in the same playing field, and it's just about who gets the better set at the end of the day.
Well, this is going to be a little more interesting. Again, while they're getting things set up, getting themselves into game and all that, picks and bans this weekend have been a different beast to try and tackle. Like you said, both of these teams are, I want to say, very cerebral when they approach this game. So really good, not just at this initial approach. I expect we're probably going to see picks and potentially bans that we haven't seen up to this point, but I won't be surprised if there's a game 3, potentially game 4, game 5, where we're seeing things that we haven't seen all year just because they can pull it out for a counter matchup.
A lot of teams have really been taking heavy focus towards eliminating a lot of those front line and mid lane picks. Giannis, I would be very skeptical to believe as something that either of these teams would be willing to let through, because both Venenu and Hurrywin more than proficient on that god, more than proven on that Giannis when they've had their opportunities to perform in given sets. But I actually would like to see a little bit of direction towards the jungle, and have a deep appreciation here for PBM, making sure to get that sleeve up there tight. But you know what really complements the sleeve for me here, Gore? The jersey. What is there to not appreciate about some primo gear, drip or drown lifestyle between these two teams? I'm actually a pretty big fan of both of the colorways that have taken place, and you two at home.
That's one of those things. I think the Dragons color scheme might actually, look, it just outright is my favorite. I like the colors of the team. Does not mean anything about anything else. It's just the colors I really like. But I will also say, I think the Bolts jersey might be my favorite. And in fact, I'll even plug it, not only shop.smiteproleague.com. If you are rooting for either of these teams or plan to for the remainder of the year, now's the time to go ahead and get some of that merch. But also, you can go forward. I was even going to say, if you have that merch already, you can tweet us at SmitePro. I'm sure we'd be more than happy to throw you up on screen at any point during the finals today.
You know what I would like to see is
pictures with their dads for Happy Father's Day.
Well, that is very cool and thoughtful and extremely sweet of you to say, Gore, but for sure, Happy Father's Day. Again, can't say it enough because they are awesome. We all love our dads, but I want to see some player headbands. Imagine if they had team headbands, because I really started thinking about it when I saw Panda repping the Ninja
there it
headband,
is, right
but
there.
How cool would it be to see them get to rep their own kind of player headbands? I actually think that it could go a long way.
I also eventually there has to be some sort of Dragons themed sleeve. At least, well, I guess if we make it for one, we make it for everybody. But you got to get the sleeve. No way is Mike going to be wearing just some other brand. We can't have that. We got to make sure we outfit him from head to toe. I'm sure it's going to be happening anytime soon this year. In fact, we're going to go ahead and get things rolling. The closer we get through this set, the closer we are to that cool merch. Either way, the closer we get through this set, or these picks and bans, the closer we are to better Smite. This is where things are going to get interesting, Taco, because I think that this is just going to be a complete deviation from what we've seen.
And I was talking about maybe looking a little bit more towards that jungle focus, and immediately both of these teams, Bolts whipping out the Fenrir Band, Gilgamesh in response from Jade Dragons. A lot of the flex pick options already being stripped away. And while Fafnir, Amir, Yamoja, Giannis, those have all been relatively popular bans against both of these teams, I feel as though the direction shifting towards this mid-jungle is certainly the way to go, just because you want to try and force something new, and you can definitely expect that any pro team is usually going to come into a given match with a loose draft in their mind, and the general consensus is usually, okay, well, if they go this, then we're going to go this, and if they go that, then we take this. And it's really cool just to see how much of a shift it has come down to in this finals, because Sol, Raijin, Discordia, Tiamat, the pressure is definitely on the mid lane, that's for sure.
I like this, though, because I was looking at it a little bit earlier, and this Soul specifically is one of the most picked things that the Dragons have had. Giannis, though, not banned out this time around, not even scooped away. And that is something, if this Fafnir wasn't locked in, I was going to go into a whole tangent about how Jake's Ares has been great at dealing with it, but they've gone for the Fafnir here.
This is a wise response, though, from the Jade Dragons, immediately locking in that Surcat, because there is still some loose flexibility here. There is a chance that this Surcat could be for the support, although I would definitely anticipate that to be an early secure for Sam, just given the fact that the Bolts already made a shot his way with that Fenrir ban. So I do think it's an interesting strategy from the Bolts, though. They seem, and that's the cool thing about a best of 5 as well, Gore, is that teams are willing to experiment just to see, does Hurrywin still got the Giannis juice?
I mean, this is the first time we get to see it all weekend. It has been banned against him. It better still be there, else all these other teams are going to feel very foolish about that ban. Of course, I'm expecting it. It looked phenomenal last year, and that was before everybody else was playing it. And this is going to be an interesting one into how do you reply. Again, this is where I start thinking of Jake, and immediately my mind went to Ares, but he's got that Fafnir, so maybe a little more difficulty locking down the mid lane. Is there someone else, maybe a solo laner? King Arthur's still available. The Guan Yu was very popular for Haddix yesterday as well. Now that that's locked in, is that going to be good at handling the Giannis in the back lane?
Bolts just seem very team fight driven right now with their current composition, and the Merlin being added on top of that. So this is going to be one heck of a showdown between the Merlin and the Giannis. Definitely two heavy flavors of mid lane style, but the Merlin certainly going to complement this team fight style of play that the Fafnir and Guan Yu have already introduced. A lot of lockdown potential as well, which is wise from the Bolts given the fact that there is so much mobility just from this top 3 out of the Jade Dragons.
Well, Danza there going to be locked in the final top 3 pick for the Dragons. Like you said, I'm really excited for the Merlin Giannis. That has a lot of weight behind it. The interesting thing, I mean, all of the picks that we've seen skyrocket to the top, you know, your Chirons that have been very high and prominent right now, completely ignored, neither team really leaning towards it. But your Onhers, your Heimdalls, I mean, your Jingweis, like all the stuff that we've seen Bara play up to this point, still getting ignored with both the solo lane and the support already locked in, theoretically here for the Bolts. I anticipate more jungle-specific bans, the Raven, now the Jingwei, banned out by the Dragons, the Ymir, and probably something else towards Mike about to get banned away.
Could potentially be a Sobek, although Jade Dragons haven't really had the most success whenever they have gotten the Sobek in their favor, and Ares not exactly an ideal pick for this Jade Dragons composition either. Wouldn't mind seeing Mike flex a little bit more towards possibly a Xing 10. Could be a solid pickup choice here for the Jade Dragons, just to try and maybe counteract some of that lockdown potential that the Bolts have already opted for. The Ratatosker, though, is looking like a fine okay Ratatosker. He's willing to just go do or die situation for the solo lane potentially. And granted, there is still the possibility this could be Ratatosker for Sam, Surcat for Polar Bear Mike. And I think the main reason why we don't really see any sort of Chiron priority for the Bolts is because they don't really have to top pick Barracuda's Hunter. You generally know Pandicat's either going to be looking for that Panzaburu, it's going to be looking for the Hou-Yi, or even a Heim, since we did see that flex out of him yesterday as well. I just don't think that the Bolts have to place a whole lot of priority into locking a pick for Barra, because Jade Dragons have shown time and time again they do not care if teams get Chiron.
Now, the Bolts locked in this Erlong Shen. They tried this yesterday in Game 1 versus the Leviathans. Didn't go that well for them. It was a very not clean game for the Bolts. They were able to come back from it, but now with Chiron around it, Merlin, Guan Yu, Fafnir, I mean, similar-ish to the team they had yesterday, but enough changes that it's definitely going to make some strides. Do you think this is going to be a big swing in their favor, or is that something that the Dragons are going to be able to handle pretty easily?
The only question mark I really have is for that Erlong Shen and how effective Lasbra is actually going to be on this pick, because he did look a little bit lackluster up against the Leviathans. Granted, it wasn't exactly the greatest composition for an Erlong to fight into, but the Erlong here paired alongside of the Fafnir and the Guan Yu, again, gorgeous, complementing very heavily that team fight focused style of play. The Tauntaun could also be extremely nice for the Merlin and the Chiron, but this is an incredibly aggressive comp out of the Jade Dragons, and I do believe I don't expect it to be fine okay on the Surcat solo. That seems like too much of a stretch, and we have seen, you know, the Ratatoskers and rank supports, but that is not something that I would ever expect from Polar Bear Mike. I definitely like the idea, though, of this Surcat in the support role. Mike can just play heavy aggression, especially into that Merlin. It seems as though the Jade Dragons are just fully intending on trying to kill Venenu off cooldown.
I mean, if they're able to get it, they've been historically a very fast-winning team. The fastest win this year is held by the Dragons in 18 minutes, 47 seconds. Look, if you get 3 assassins, you're looking to play the clock here and make sure things even work for you. That Ratatoskr, again, it's like you said, like if you open FindOK's stream, there's a chance like once every like 3 weeks you're gonna see a Ratatoskr solo, maybe even more often than not, honestly.
It is a decent matchup though into the Guan Yu because you have that Acorn Blast to stun out during the Tallow Assault. Your dash is relatively effective in creating some space away from Guan Yu's dash, and also you just have your ultimate, the semi-global aspect from Jade Dragons, especially when paired alongside of that Giannis. It's going to be difficult for the Bolts to they might not necessarily be able to gauge which direction the Jade Dragons are actually coming from when they're entering these team fights, and this is a very strong composition from the Jade Dragons if they have the execution, which I do think this team is capable of, to look for those picks early on.
Now, this is where things, like you said, looking for picks early on, Erlong, kind of peaks or starts to get good around that level 5 mark. Is he going to be able to compete? I mean, with a Ratatoskr, a Mercury, like Mercury's a little more late game, so maybe that helps balance out the jungle a little bit?
This is more so about PBM on the circuit and how much he's going to be able to restrict this Erlong Shen because, again, you don't want to deal with the anti-heal aspect against that Erlong because he loses a lot of that early game presence if he's not actually able to live through that sustain because there is plenty of burst. Giannis is arguably the weakest burst factor here for the Jade Dragons in the early game, but when you have portals, when you have speed boosts, slows are incredibly effective against Erlong Shen, and there is a good amount of interrupt. Despite the fact that it's coming from 3 different assassins, all of that interrupt still plays a part against the likes of a Merlin and Erlong Shen.
Well, let's talk about objective burn, because that feels like it's very heavily in favor of the Bolts here. Like, we talk about just Merlin alone and what he can bring when it comes to Gold Furies, Fire Giants, things like that. But then you add that Coerce up there from the Fafnir. It feels like if they can coast through this early game without losing too much of a lead, that Furies and Fire Giants might be on the table for the Bolts pretty easily.
And I guess that's what the Jade Dragons are really trying to combat here, because sure, you can have great objective burn, but can you play around objectives if your carries are constantly getting picked off? Because it is not tough for the Jade Dragons with 2 semi-globals and a full global, plus the Denzaburo rocket. He can just cut the gap almost instantly. It's not easy for Merlin and Chiron to live through this level of dive, and so if the Jade Dragons are actually effective in just utilizing that Ratatoskr, that Mercury, and the Denzaburo ultimates, they can just bet on Hurry to just be a taxi surface out of trouble. And again, I wouldn't even say the Jade Dragons have weak objective control, because you have to factor in that Sam's likely going to go for crit on the Mercury, and Mercury arguably one of the best assassins for burning objectives.
I mean, this is one of those moments that it feels like not only is our Barra and Vin in a little bit of trouble throughout this game, but maybe even more pressure onto Haddix, onto Jake, to perform above and beyond to try and make sure that space is created, because it sounds, at least from what you're saying, that the Dragons, and you highlighted it really well, they have so many ways to close the space there and get into that back line. A lot of trouble for him. Plus, you had mentioned not just the crit for Sam, but Sam, especially against this Chiron, loves the same lane ganks. Like, he will just run down at you, ult however long he needs to chase you down. It feels like there's going to be a lot of focus potentially over in that duo lane.
And that's why the Jingwei ban was so smart from the Jade Dragons, because they were probably expecting to try and lock in this Mercury for Sam once they saw that the Bolts prioritized taking away some of the better frontliners. And I think that when it comes to the Chiron Mercury matchup directly, Chiron has almost nothing to escape there. Unless you're insanely quick on your reflexes, typically the training exercise cleanse is never going to come into effect fully. Maybe you can hope for the ultimate, but even then, there's certainly a lot of pressure that can be applied here from Sam and from Polar Bear Mike. And even if Haddix and Awesome Jake are aware of the transitions across the map, it's still going to be a tough one.
Well, we're going to learn a lot in game number 1 here, but let's go down to Dave and Aggro to take us through the set.
Well, the time has finally arrived. The Phase 1 playoff finals officially kicking off, and it's the Olympus Bolts up against the Jade Dragons. My name's Dolson, and Aggro's with me. Doug working the camera for this best-of-5 final matchup, and there is some history between these two teams. Jade Dragons and Bolts played earlier on here in Season 8, and that was a matchup that the Bolts were able to take the win out of. And what an interesting strategy here, Aggro, after what we saw the Dragons do yesterday. Now, the Bolts had a fantastic set, don't get me wrong. But so much of what worked for the Dragons yesterday was this duo lane matchup. And you're immediately picking in to the matchup that the Dragons love.
Yeah, the Chiron up against that Danzaburo is a little bit surprising, but I think the Bolts recognize that the Dragons draft is really good at shutting down Lasbra. I think that's been the whole plan for the Dragons coming in, just based on these picks and bans, has got to be taking Lasbra off these comfort picks. I mean, you looked at the bans they went for. They top pick Serket. They ban Robin away in the second phase, and they pick Rat coming out of that ban phase. All of those being gods that Lasbra plays a lot of course, the Gilgamesh ban as well. And that forces Lasbra to go to this Erlong Shen, which we saw struggle pretty heavily in that Leviathan set yesterday, both for him and for Panatom. And then they have all these picks that do well against it. Serket absolutely loves going up against Erlong. It's one of her best matchups. I think Mercury has a pretty good matchup there. I like Rat in that matchup. And I think that the Bolts recognize that and picked the Chiron because they honestly need the cleanse for Lasbra to be able to do what he wants to do and be that blink initiator and be that facilitator through the early to mid game. Barracuda's got to be on point with those training exercises because I think the Jade Dragons are very cognizant of these two guys for the Bolts.
I think this is such an exciting matchup because every individual lane has a bit of story coming into this one. Of course, Venenu versus Hurrywin, the pregame interview. We know what happened the last time these two teams matched up. The duo lane so important for both of these teams. And then a lot of the conversation, I was reading a lot of the discussion before this matchup yesterday, and I tend to agree with some of what I read, and it's that a lot of this hinges, you feel like, on Sanford Soccer versus Lasbra. Lasbra showed up so big for the Bolts yesterday in a few of those games. Needs to continue to do so, doing things like this, find the engage, find the beads off of Hurrywind, continuing to find that pressure, especially when we know what Sanford Soccer can do on the Mercury. Haddix won't find the solo kill, but Jungle's going to be pivotal here in this best of 5.
I mean, look, the Bolts have all of a sudden really gotten on a tear towards the back end of Phase 1 and the group stages, and now, of course, in the Phase 1 playoff finals. And I think so much of it has to do with their mid 3v3, in particular, Lasbra and Venenu really stepping up their play. Lasbra has found a lot more consistency. We've seen that this high end from him throughout his career, but oftentimes it was just too few and far between. I think as of late, he's really been able to find his stride more consistently, which has been a big deal. But for me, I think Lasbra has been enabled to look to be more comfortable, in large part due to Venenu's raised level of play. Ven has played probably the best Smite in his entire career.
I think so.
during the back end of this phase, and that includes his Phase 1 or his Season 4 Worlds MVP, where he was really playing well for that E United team. I think that he's assumed more of an initiator and leadership role on this Bolts team than he was back then, and I've been very impressed with his level of play. And if Ven is going to keep that high level of play in this set, I think the Bolts have a really good shot.
And this Merlin has been pivotal to some of that great gameplay there for Venenu. So a fun matchup here between Venenu's Merlin and Hurrywin's Giannis. So high expectations, I think, out of the mid lane for a bit of fireworks. Early on, though, Lasbra finds a blue buff invade, thanks in large part due to the pressure that Haddix already has in on Final K. It's a one-level discrepancy now as Final K will fully push out this wave. But the early pressure pushing against this Ratatosker gives Lasbra the chance to work in, grab that blue buff invade, small advantage over in the solo lane.
And we haven't seen Sam hit level 5 quite yet, and that's going to be the mark for me because he on this pick, he has been so consistent on hit 5, get Sonic Boom, hit a lane with it. And which lane that's going to be, he's been really good at keeping teams guessing on where he is. Watch for the Bolts to get really deep wards in this matchup, knowing that that's where Mercury likes to gank from, coming down the lane more so than coming out of the jungle like a traditional assassin.
Well, here you go. Sanford Soccer's on the left-hand side of the map here, positioning himself between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower. Barracuda may be privy to something going on there, doesn't even want to put himself in harm's way. So Sanford Soccer will complete the back here, and avoiding early issue is going to be pivotal here for the Olympus Bolts, because so much of what we talked about in this dual lane matchup, the Danza versus the Chiron, so much of what the Jade Dragons did so well yesterday was not allowing the enemy team to kind of withstand that early pressure. So that's so pivotal here for the Olympus Bolts to be able to do.
I mean, Barra knows that he watched the set yesterday and saw what everyone was going through. He saw what Vote went through yesterday. He saw what Cyclone Spin went through a couple days earlier. You just got to sit behind that wall. Make sure that Sam doesn't have an angle, because he has been so accurate with those sonic booms.
Oh, level 5 for Polar Bear Mike, only level 4 here for Awesome Jake. If a skirmish breaks out, there'd be immediate support advantage, but early damage in onto Fino-K as the blue buff invade turns in to a little bit of a scrap. Hurrywind returns damage over onto Lasbra as Polar Bear Mike pushes him away. Sonic Boom flies through from Sanford Soccer, but it's only found one. PBM taking damage on the back end, and the Olympus Bolts looking to collapse in onto PBM, and first blood goes to Haddix.
I like the idea from Mike. You got to peel Lasbra. Sam getting over there a little bit late, but that's just how that play sort of developed. Hurry's got to find a way to get the damage off from through space and time. Now, I don't think it would have made the difference. I don't think Lasbra dies in that instance because of a good collapse coming in from the Bolts. But I like the idea there from the Jade Dragons, just the Bolts playing aggressive early, and you're seeing Lasbra's focus. He's blinked in on Hurrywin twice in 5.5 minutes already.
Yep.
Now Hurry has lost the beads yet again, 2 minutes on that. Will he be able to find on that mid laner once more?
Slight discrepancy in blink timer with those beads, so you're talking about 10-second window or so for maybe Lasbra to find that over in the mid lane yet again, but a chance, of course, with the ultimate transformations, things like that, to find some pressure here. Awesome Jake, despite that one level discrepancy, made the most of that engagement, grabbing an assist for himself here. Both supports aggro picking up the horrific emblem early on in this game. What does that tell you?
Just means that Mike really wants to neutralize Lasbra in particular. That's where I think the horrific emblem is going to be great. It's something that Erlangsten does not deal with well. Being slowed, it affects his 73 transformations. It makes it so he can't get his auto attacks on you, and that's where the vast majority of his damage comes from. I'm a little surprised to see it on Awesome Jake because you look at what Sam's going to do. He's slow immune on the Mercury when he pops his 2. Hurry isn't going to be around you long enough to really get affected by that. Maybe it stops the Danza all in, and that's why he's going for it, but I'm not a huge fan of it in this matchup.
Sanford Soccer's underneath the Tier 1 tower, was charging the ultimate Barracuda, playing safely on his tower line here. It's what you have to do when you don't know exactly where Sanford Soccer is. Deep ward only on the red buff right now for the Olympus Bolts, so this is just Barracuda, I think, reading the ebbs and flows of the game so well.
Yep.
Pandacat a little bit more aggressive, hanging out in the middle of that lane, not hanging back at all, and sensing that that's maybe where Sanford Soccer will be. Still pressure, though, from the Olympus Bolts over on that blue buff. Another one gets stolen away.
A lot of trust in Barracuda and leaning on that veteran experience over here in the duo lane because they clearly do not want to help on his side of the map. They want to keep the pressure going on the right, and Barra hasn't misstepped yet.
Whoa, it could be a collapse in onto Jake. The taunt is through, but Jake only able to leap out to the left. The transformation comes in, but then a sonic boom to chain the CC and way too much damage into the Bolt. Whoa! Dragons grab one, but on the back end, no! Hurrywind! Massive damage as Barracuda pulls back a kill. Lasbra dashed on through, and Pandacat grabs the double.
Man, a huge taunt in from Lasbra. What an engage by him, but it's just a little bit too early from Barra on that Chiron. If he just holds his ultimate so that he can hit multiple shots off that 3-man taunt, then I think that goes a little bit better for the Bolts. It's a 2-for-1 for the Jade Dragons. Hurry ends up falling, and I think the Dragons did overcommit onto Jake in that moment. How many ultimates did they use on him right there? 4 ults in order to just make sure they're killing Jake probably isn't worth it. But if Jake just has to do a better job of getting his horrific emblem off in that moment, maybe that would have been the difference maker.
Right.
But overall, I mean, the Dragons definitely got away with a pretty risky play to dump that much into the support, get 3-man taunted, and only lose 1. They should consider themselves lucky.
And pretty important that Barracuda is able to pick up the 1 return kill for the Olympus Bolts because Pandacat had the double, and sometimes that's enough to get this Danza lane a bit off the chain. So Pandacat with an early 2, Barracuda with 1, about a half-level difference between these two here, but still playing safely around Sanford Soccer, sending that ultimate, the Sonic Boom we haven't seen used across an entire lane just yet. More so in some of these jungle fights, but lots of fighting over these buffs here, aggro. We haven't seen full-on lane engagements, just teams collapsing in around their own buffs.
And Sam, again, on this duo lane side, not trying to mess around with this right-hand side, just as the Bolts are giving a lot of trust to Barracuda, the Dragons are doing the same for Fino-K, understanding that, hey, you're probably going to fall behind in this game. That's not the game plan, is to play around your side. He's the weak side of the map, so to speak, and they're trying to play around this duo lane as expected whenever Panda gets his Danza Burrow.
And now it is a 2-level lead for Pandacat here after Sanford Soccer rotates in, helps out with that purple buff. Greater Scorpion drop down. What was the poll on Gorp and Scorp? Do we say yes?
Yeah, we love it.
I'm not sure. We'll have to return to that here as PBM gets pinned on down, but he'll leap away. And so both supports with some form of engage and disengage, and Mike uses it defensively.
So it turns out the Bolts are the first one to crack on their strategy. They send Lazra over to this left-hand side. They allow Fine OK in order to get the blue, in order to defend this red buff, and that's the right call from the Bolts. You're not getting a massive lead. You're not killing this Ratatosker in getting your mid and ADC behind by losing purple and red is too scary in order to just keep getting single buff invades and back harpies on this right-hand side. So I like the Bolts' willingness to change up their strategy when they don't feel like it's doing quite enough.
Lasbro's over here on the right, but he's been spotted out by a ward. Sanford Soccer in as well, but he'll just farm up some of those back camps. Not much for Lasbro to do. Haven't seen much around these mid laners just yet, outside of Hurrywin getting caught out in that early fight. Things still balancing on a knife edge though, Aggro, but these recent engagements, some jungle invades, little extra farm going to the Dragons, finds themselves small bit of gold in the lead, small bit of XP as well. This Pyromancer for the Bolts, though, if secured, will help even things up.
And Hurry's starting to pull ahead a little bit of Venenu despite the death. The Ven just now hitting level 11, where Hurry's been there for a little bit, and then had a wave anyways right after that. So that Giannis starting to get the farm that we know he can.
Fine, okay, has to use the ultimate to survive, and survive he will, but Haddox has his ultimate if you choose to really chase down that Ratatosker. But that would have been quite the range for Haddox to try to close that gap. So still bully potential. Normally around this mark, you're seeing some damage go one way or the other, but both solo laners tend to be able to stay in lane pretty successfully. Still, though, enough prot shred there with that Guan Yu to force Fine OK out of lane.
And again, Sam on this left-hand side, just consistently on this purple. And Barra again is not forcing it. He's letting himself get invaded. He's letting these waves go underneath tower and accepting that that's just how this game plan is right now.
Big engage on Fine OK, who does not have his ultimate. He'll swirl and he'll dash, but will he survive? The pin does not connect. And that's the escape route on out. Hurrywin sends through space and time on over to the right-hand side of the map, but doesn't connect for anything. Just there as an insurance policy.
Yeah, just in case. And he's got the Chronos Pendant, so it's not going to be that long until that comes up. Maybe didn't really need it, but better safe than sorry in those moments.
Leap in onto the Oracles here, but Polar Bear Mike engages with a leap of his own. Panda Cat a couple levels over his counterpart over, and Duo will have enough damage to force Awesome Jake away. But all the Bolts collapsing in on this red buff, sensing that the Dragons want to put some pressure over here on left. And you have to wonder then, Aggro, you start to look towards maybe an early game Gold Fury for the Jade Dragons. He got a couple levels over Barracuda, maybe force the issue on the left a little bit more.
Agreed. I think they're likely waiting for Hurry's ult to come back up before they want to go for that play, but ultimately should be where they start to look sooner rather than later. The main concern that I have, though, for the Dragons in this game and the composition that the Bolts have built is that Hurry is going for the same build that he loves and that a lot of players, Giannis players love, but you are so late to get your pen in this build. And you've got a warrior in the jungle. I know Lasbra's going to build mostly damage, but he's still a warrior with those base stats. You've got a Guan Yu that's going to be healing. Hurry's not going to be building anti-heal. Who is going to be building anti-heal for the Jade Dragons? Probably not. Sam doesn't want to build it. He's going to want to go regular crit, though maybe he goes the Shadow Steel Shuriken. He's willing to do it on the Nemesis. Maybe he flexes it here on the Mercury. Panda doesn't want to go anti-heal. Fine OK is working towards what I'm assuming is going to be a Pestilence, but no Onk for him. Is Mike going to go Onk and just not have Blink on the Circuit? I don't really know the plan to handle this Guan come team fighting time, and that little bit of sustain from the Chiron, and the little self-healing that Fafnir gets. I think the Bolts have got a really good opportunity to start snowballing these fights centered around Haddox, because I don't think that there's an easy player for the Jade Dragons to outright kill him. Giannis can't really do it. And they're not building anti-heal for when they don't kill him, and he just keeps on healing up the team.
We've already seen in sets this weekend how important that Guan Yu healing can be, so it's definitely something to keep your eyes on as this game rolls through. Finally, Sanford Soccer finding a gank on the left-hand side, chases down Barracuda in the rocket to confirm it. It's the play that the Dragons love to make, but have they bitten off too much? Jake is here.
It's only Jake, though. I mean, if Jake commits to this, then this is a mistake because he's going to get killed for it.
Sanford Soccer uses the beads, but now Jake locked down. Jake leaps away, but he's on the wrong side of the map, and PBM grabs the kill. Bit of a fumble there for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, Jake definitely with some bad decision-making there to try and go for that kill, because now it's just another kill in the pocket of the Jade Dragons, and they use very little in order to confirm it. It's just a Circuit ultimate. I guess he got Sam's beads, which isn't too bad, but not enough to be willing to give over that much gold and experience over to the other side.
And that just feels bad for Barracuda the entire game.
Yeah, for 14 minutes, he
sitting
played
back
it perfectly. Yeah.
and not letting that happen. And then one moment you step too far forward, and Sam for Soccer makes you pay. Now 4 assists for Sam. A little bit of fighting happening here as Lasbra dashes away, but looks like that's all that will happen here in this one.
And look, I mean, he didn't even step too far forward. He was underneath his
right.
Tier 1 tower. They just had the damage to be able to burst him through
good
that
point.
at that point.
Good point. And maybe Tier 2 is where he needs to be hanging out for a little while. But Gold Fury started up by the Bolts here, given how the left side of the map has gone. An interesting and aggressive call for the Bolts that pays off. Gold Fury over to the Bolts, but big damage from Hurrywin on the left-hand side. Gets Lasbra Venenu low, and they'll have to back away here. Sam for Soccer looking for a little bit more from the mid lane. Final K up into the sky. A sonic boom in from Sam for Soccer, but the damage has been turned, and Lasbra opens up the kill.
And Barra's got big shots coming through the team fight. The last one will not be enough to kill Mike, but Jake's still hunting.
Jake is on the hunt this time, and it's a much easier target than Jake had last time. Lasbra will look to close the gap, and Jake will grab the kill. An aggressive call for the Bolts pays off.
Man, such a good call because Haddix was just there far before Final K was, and they could just use this healing, use this prot shred, and who was going to punish us for it? Hurry got a fantastic ultimate off in order to really chunk down Venenu, but he didn't have his soul gem done. That might have been enough to just burst kill Ven all the way if he would have had that soul gem proc, but without it, he's a little bit short on the damage. Final K ults from just out of range, and the Bolts had just started to coalesce. They just started to group up because of Sam's ultimate coming down through behind red buff. If Final K is able to get there just a little bit sooner, if he would have left half that wave in the mid lane, look at how grouped up everyone is. This is a huge rat ult that is just waiting to happen, and instead he stuns Haddix, and that's all he gets out of that rotation. I think Fine's got to be there a little bit earlier and really make the Bolts pay for that grouping.
And hey, little bursts of healing maybe makes that a little easier for the Olympus Bolts around the end of that team fight. Seems like we've got a set on our hands here in game number 1. The Olympus Bolts have brought it back despite early discrepancy on the left-hand side of the map. Barracuda now closes that gap as well, just one level behind Panda Cat. Things looking even.
And check out the build for PBM. He does forego Blink on Circuit, which is heresy. I mean, you just don't do that. That's what this character does, is gets into the backline quickly and disengages with all the mobility. But this tells me about the Jade Dragon's game plan. Mike's not the engager. He's going to be sitting back, and he's going to be pocketing Panda Cat and Hurry, and just his whole goal is to neutralize Lasbra. He is just playing Shadow Lasbra in these team fights. You've got Ankh to help kill him, you've got Horrific to help kill him, and you've got your last breath in order to help kill him. Lasbra is going to have to be wary of where that's coming from.
That's a massive swing here in this game as the Olympus Bolts grab about a 1,500 gold lead, the largest lead they've had here so far. Still 2 levels for Panda Cat, so there's still an advantage here on the left-hand side, but Barracuda kept plenty safe in that previous engagement. So now, Fury down for a little bit of time, halfway back on that respawn. Pyromancer's fallen as well. Back to a bit of a state of farming, setting up for those next big objectives.
So if Mike is not going to be the initiator, who is for the Jade Dragons? Because they don't have a blink across their entire team. Final K's ultimates are going to have to be it, and Sam's ultimates, but both of those, Sam's a little bit less so, but certainly the Rat ult is very telegraphed. Are the Bolts going to be the ones having to initiate all of these fights and just kind of waiting around until the Jade Dragons then counter-engage? That's going to be the question. Do the Bolts end up taking that bait? And is Lasbra going to identify what Mike is trying to do in these fights? And is he going to try and stay away from Mike and really switch up and go to a less optimal playstyle? Hitting frontline as Erlong is definitely not the game plan, but you have to adjust your playstyle because I think Mike has the pick and has the build to really stop what Lasbra's going to do effectively anyways. You might as well be marginally effective by hitting frontline.
Small grouping here under the Tier 1 tower. Jake is in, but Jake is alone. The transformation comes in, buys him some time. It's a portal from Hurrywin on the back end. The unstable Vortex does some damage as well. It's a knockback from PBM through space and time, connects. That's Lasbra who finds the first kill. Hurrywin follows up with one of his own. Sam for Soccer locked in place, and Lasbra through the Cosmos will grab himself a double. It's a 2-for-2 trade as we stand.
Yeah, but the Jade Dragons are the ones limping away because Haddix is up, and he can heal you, and Venenu and Barracuda are full HP with 3 out of 4 relics available. They can keep this siege going because who puts threat onto Haddix from here?
Top mid carry for all these teams is Haddix and Fino K looking like they might find a re-engagement here, but instead it's Panda Cat. Walks a bit forward. The Olympus Bolts not wanting anything extra. They don't get the Tier 1 tower in mid. is real close, though. One wave crashes into that, and the Olympus Bolts grab themselves a little extra gold.
In that time, it was Mike who didn't get his relics off on that dive. If he's able to get a horrific emblem off in the midst of 5, the cursed Ankh, you can end up turning that fight a little bit more easily. But the fact that he got bursted right after hitting that last breath is a huge deal for him, and that makes that fight much harder for the Jade Dragons to really come back into. It was a good ult from Sam. Final K got into the back line, but they were focusing out Lasbra. I mean, Ven and Bera took next to no damage in that fight, and that's a testament to how good their front line is and has been throughout this run that they've been on. Haddix has been unbelievable out of this solo lane, especially for a rookie.
Jake goes back and finishes up the Frenzy. That plus Coerce means objectives die quickly, but it's the Dragons on the Primal Fury, and it's the Dragons finishing the Primal Fury. A quick call from the Jade Dragons, and it looks like that's it. There was a big fight after the last one, but the Dragons happy to take the objective and back off.
And look at how little damage Jake took for jumping in there and being right in the thick of that objective secure. This composition for the Dragons does not kill tanks particularly well, especially right now with where they are in the builds. I mean, Hurry's going to finish off this Mirrodin. That'll give him his first pen now 21 minutes in, and he'll have 10%. That's it. Then he'll probably work towards an Obsidian Shard, maybe a Charon's coin, but I'm more of a fan of Obsidian on Giannis. Then you're sitting at 30%, and you're going to need to still sell your boots in order to get to that 40% mark or buy a power pot. It's just a little bit too difficult for them to knock down these tanks anytime soon. Sam's working towards Wind Demon or maybe Shadow Steel, so maybe he will be lacking in pen,
right,
but at least have the anti-heal. You see where all of these catch-22s are coming into play. Now, it is worth noting that Final K has gone for the Acorn that gives him double of that flurry, and that is a prot tread ability. And he's gone with the Void Shield. So I think Fine is actually built very intelligently in order to make sure that you can strip those protections a little bit better for your team, but that's not going to be the difference maker up against Sovereignty, Thieves, Pridwin,
right.
Fafnir. I mean, you just, that prot tread will help, but that's, that's like having an umbrella in a hurricane. It helps, but it doesn't really do that much for you.
I hope it doesn't lift you up and take you away. This Final K at 101 has definitely played a role here in this game. Good eyes by Doug. It is a Shadow Steel Shuriken picked up now for Sanford Soccer, still sensing that more anti-heal is needed and still built into that crit somewhat well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's cheap. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's not exactly great. It's just when you need it, you need it. And that's what Sam needs at this point. But this means, is he not going Wind Demon? Is he not going Deathbringer? He's got to choose at least one of those, or he's got to sell his starter, which isn't horrible in order to get those huge power spikes, but you'd like to be able to fit it all.
The Dragons have to be here. The Olympus Bolts, with the way that Awesome Jake can push this team forward around objectives, could do Pyro or FG so quickly.
I will say, though, I don't like the fact that Jake has not upgraded those starters, and it's made a difference in his gold income. I mean, he's got a full item over Mike right now, sitting with that Pridwin, but I still really wish that he would have upgraded these relics. They're so impactful when upgraded, and it just makes a huge difference for these team fights.
Well, it's Pyromancer secured by the Olympus Bolts. Hurrywin sent through space and time on in, but didn't connect onto anything. The Olympus Bolts have all of their actives ready to go here. You could say the same for the Jade Dragons as well. Right side, towers gonna start to get pushed in here as the Jade Dragons rotate on through mid. You wonder how aggressively the Bolts can try to play these next couple of minutes. Hurrywin doesn't have through space and time, so the ability to push up, maybe feeling a little better. We got a 1v1 over in the mid lane, but Lasbro wants nothing else. Haddix gets taunted on in, and it's a leap into the back line by PBM. Cavalry Charge answers that one out. Mike stunned up, pulled back in, nearly taken down, but there's not enough damage until there is, and Barracuda finds the kill.
Huge engage there by the Bolts, and just catching the Jade Dragons without one of their primary engagers in this Mercury, and now Sam doesn't have the beads because Lasbro got it with his ultimate in the mid lane. Huge deal here for the Bolts, because now you don't have to worry about Lasbra's dive in the backline being ineffective because Mike's on the respawn for 24 seconds. Plus, he doesn't have his relics because that time he got him off, but the rest of his team was nowhere near in order to help assist.
The Olympus Bolts playing a very small lead very aggressively, and it's paying off for themselves here. Just about 2,000 in the lead after that tower goes down. It was even less before the kill onto Mike and the kill onto the tower there as well. Mike will be back up in the next 3 or so seconds, so the Olympus Bolts don't have much more time in this 4v5, likely looking for this tower here in mid, but Jade Dragon spotting out those backs realize they can play maybe a touch more aggressively here on a Jake and Lasbra.
And Hurry's got the ultimate, so you know that the Jade Dragons have that chase potential with the Giannis and the Ratatoskr. It's just a matter of how well can this front line continue to be invincible for the Bolts now that chin size are done for Panda Cat.
Yep.
And you've got Pen for Hurry.
Oh, Frenzy popped in Final K will avoid enough of the damage to get up into the sky. And out he will go. That is big re-engage or initial engage potential. When you're already on a team where you're worried about where that engage is coming, you don't want this Ratatoskr ultimate getting burnt defensively.
No, you don't. He's got a little bit of CDR there from the Glad Shield, but that's about it. So it's going to be a while before that ultimate is back up. But whoa, Sam's looking for Ven, but a nice flicker and just a little bit of a miss
Makes you
there
flinch
from
a little
Sam.
bit.
Yeah, it does. I'm sure Ven flinched too. You got to keep your head on a swivel whenever there's a Mercury on the map. Pretty easy to get clotheslined out of nowhere. I just think that the Dragons do get some big power spikes now towards the later end of this game. I mean, Bumba's Hammer being done for Final K now makes his dive threatening on backliners, that you could actually kill them now with that Bumba's proc over and over again. And you got Mike hitting that Lono's mask, so now he's not going to just get one-tapped, but all of his shutdown potential on Lasbra is still there.
Well, no Frenzy, but Coerce will help it. This FG does end up going through. Lasbra's taking a bit of damage. Haddix has as well. A portal over onto the Guan Yu, but won't result in much.
And that's
the Olympus
great.
Bolts looking for that engage, just seeing how the Dragons would respond.
And the Dragons used 2 ultimates and got a whole lot of nothing for it because Haddix is going to sustain Lasbra back up.
There's a stun over onto Polar Bear Mike, and the root is as well. Final K has the ultimate. He looked for an engage onto the back. He's found Venenu. That's a priority target here, but can the Dragons follow up? It's over onto Lasbra on the left, where most of the damage has been found on a knife edge as this fight. Both teams back away.
I just think the Bolts, you see the strength of their draft right now. Frankly, I think they outdrafted the Dragons in this game. The Dragons, I like their idea. We're going to keep Lasbra honest. We're going to keep him off his comfort picks, and we're going to try and pick something that we can engage with.
Wow, the Bolts start up the Fire Giant just a moment ago, and it's nearly dead. Has not been reset.
No, sir!
The Dragons steal it away. The Olympus Bolts don't look for the fight. Neither do the Dragons. Dragons take it. Made you look from Sam for soccer, and the Olympus Bolts thinking twice.
And you know he rolled a crit on that as well, 564. He doesn't have that much crit chance in the build with just 2 stacks on the Rage and that Shadow Steel Shuriken. And you can't even get that mad at the Bolts at that point. I mean, Sam uses beads in order to get in there. You know that you're coin flipping that. Maybe they should be taking that fight knowing that the Jade Dragons are down a lot of ultimates in that fight, but so were the Bolts after that last engagement. They're just relying on that. Did Jake not use the Frenzy?
He didn't. That's what I was about to point out.
Okay, that's
Frenzy was still there.
That's where that's the mistake that you've got to do. I mean, they try and zone him. You just got to tip your hat to a guy making a play, and Sam makes the play.
And then Panda Cat on the back end gets a pretty big taunt.
Yep.
And keeps Sam for soccer alive on the end of it, so the Bolts don't even get anything in. And look at the shift that this game has now found. Earlier on, I mentioned the Bolts doing a lot with a small lead, and now you can tell how close this game really is with the FG steal. Jade Dragon's now able to rotate over, grab a Fury on the back end of that, and suddenly it's the Bolts who are on the back foot.
And you've got to keep concerned about their ability to get into this back line. As much as I think the Bolts did outdraft here for the Jade Dragons, the Dragons have that oops, I win card. And, oh, our backliners got hit by Giannis ult. Guess we lose. Or, oh, I guess Sam hit a really sick Sonic Boom, one-shot one of our carries, and now our tankiness up front doesn't really matter. Guess we lose. And that just happens easier whenever they have a Fire Giant on their side and they get to late game. Sam has finished Deathbringer, so he's not looking to hit frontline at all. No Wind Demon, not a whole lot of pen for him. He's just going to 2-tap this Chiron if he gets on top of him. And the Bolts, I still love their composition. I still love what they can do, but they've been able to control these fights really well, and it only takes once for the Dragons to break it open.
Lasbra and Venenu. See PBM and Final K over here on the right. That means Sam for soccer. Hurry and Panda are looking towards this tier 2 tower. Hurry went on the back end, as you figured, adds in a little bit of percent pen into that build. So you talk about the Oops I Win card, Venenu or Barracuda, who sometimes are through space and time magnets.
Yep.
They're going to have to position themselves pretty smartly here. Portal goes up. That's going to make the Bolts think twice about where exactly they position. You send Final K or someone of the like through in on there. And suddenly the engagement is made a whole lot easier.
Ooh.
Awesome Jake taking a bit of damage. Panda Cat, first to reach level 20 here in this game, absolutely swinging.
Yeah, does not have the beads any longer, though, because that hammer found home from Jake, and I think a little bit of a panic beads in that moment from Panda. No carry. All the carries were in front of him. Maybe he didn't have eyes on Lasbra at that exact moment, but think you can react beads to that blink a little bit better. Him not having beads means that he is awfully vulnerable to this dive as Danza.
Yeah, can you tell the Bolts don't want to give up this tier 2 quietly? Fine, okay, looking for the engage. It's an engage instead from Sanford Soccer. The stun is there, but the Aegis saves his life, and then the beads as well. And Lasbro's found no one with the taunt. Barracuda's in his ultimate, but he'll follow the Hurrywin on the back end. Everyone's got to leave. If you're the Olympus Bolts, 3 get out. Lasbro in a bit of a sticky situation.
And Panda's going to be the one chasing. Beads used by Lasbro, and I just do not think it's going to make a difference for him. Sam doesn't have blink. Maybe Lasbro can escape.
Maybe he can. Just needs
Nice
those cooldowns
slow.
to come back. It's a slow from Hurrywin, then the pin on the back end, and a killing spree for Hurrywin. 30 minutes into this game, the Olympus Bolts, 3 members left alive defending the Phoenixes.
And think about how well these fights have gone for the Bolts. It's because they've been able to separate these team fights. They've been able to keep front line far ahead of their back line and use the length of their back line's damage to their advantage. Underneath that tower, it all gets messy. It all gets condensed, and it's much easier for your front line to get bypassed. And then into the back line go the damage dealers of Sam for Soccer and Fine OK. Really intelligent dive there from the Dragons.
Oh, Fine OK is looking to go here as well. 8 seconds on Barracuda, 25 on Lasbro. This is a 3v5 engagement. Sam for Soccer eats some damage. Venenu jumped on in the back line. Some shielding keeps him in the fight, and he's able to return some damage in on the PBM. Sam for Soccer as well. Haddix in on the chase, and Haddix has got the kill. It's a 3v5, and the Bolts are doing the damage.
And Hurry's just hit the eject button with through space and
Do get
time
Phoenix.
in order to get the rest out. He does get Phoenix, as you mentioned, but how about Haddix's pickup here of the Hero's Axe? Keeps Ven feeling comfy, cozy in the backline right there. Doesn't matter that he gets Rat ulted, that he gets Rat stunned, instantly able to help with that extra shielding from this Hero's Axe, and then instantly hits the gas pedal into that front line of the Jade Dragons and able to punish Sam for not having his relics. Panda, I think a pretty bad misuse of the Aegis. Doesn't use it until he's really low on HP and took a huge chunk of damage by that point anyways.
Well, look, the Jade Dragons are able to springboard that gold lead right back into their favor. The miracle steal from Sam for Soccer. I don't know if you call it a miracle if the Bolts kind of ushered him in towards the FG there.
No Frenzy.
Not available to get used. Good eye there by Awesome Jake. Haddix has taken some decent damage here. Venenu will return some in onto Fine OK as the Fire Giants respawn. Panda Cat back from base, or back in base, through space in time from Hurwin, flies on in, finds some damage onto Venenu as Polar Bear Mike looking to chase down onto the back line. It's Horrific Emblem popped, Fine OK with the re-engage, and the Jade Dragons take a 3v5 and find the opening kill.
Oh, but Fine's gonna fall. Unstable Vortex hits home for Hurwin, and now all of a sudden, the Bolts don't have a backline.
Oh, the portal is... Oh my God! Sanford Soccer flies on in. It's a double for Hurrywin. My man is rampaging here in game number 1. Lasbro pulled in. It's 3 for the Giannis. Awesome Jake, the last one alive.
Yeah, you could do it for 30 minutes, but eventually the hottest is going to come for you as well. Hurry makes it happen on this Giannis, but it wasn't just him. It was PBM. The blinkless Circuit got a massive Horrific Emblem off and then just stood there and waited for Final K to come help.
Fire minions walk on in and usher the Jade Dragons to win number 1 here in this set. I gotta say, I like... Was it the Hannes?
The Hannes, that's right.
I like that better than Haba Haga or whatever it is.
All right, you're a hater, I guess. I don't know. I don't get it.
I'm a hater with the H.
Hater starts with an H, Dave. Great work.
So
you're doing great
It works here in this spot.
Yeah, sure, I guess.
Yeah, we get a great cast, and then I immediately
and then you immediately nosedive it. Yeah, that's
perfect.
great work by you.
Look, the Jade Dragons and the Olympus Bolts, we figured these two would be pretty closely matched, and I think Game 1 proves that.
I just love the strategy from picks and bans for both teams. I can't wait to see the adjustments. The Bolts did it right for so long, but the Jade Dragons are just going to pressure you and force you to make some mistakes. And then just a great two-man game between Mike and Hurry on that Fire Giant defense. It sets up with a great through space and time that lands onto Ven. Mike gets a massive Horrific Emblem off. It's like watching a beautiful pick and roll between Trae Young and John Collins. Go Hawks.
I'm glad that we got the actual correct sports reference right this time. It wasn't a Tom Brady home run or anything like that for those two. And talk about the steal from Sanford Soccer and what a shift that makes here in game number 1. Jade Dragons, they take game number 1. We'll take a break right before game 2.
I know they hated or love it. You know I love when they hate it. Last year was living basic. Haters on the other side. 3 up, read between the lines. Know I got some majors with me. Made it through some evil times. Late night can assume with your chains on. I can see none with the lights off. Cap, you been the main one. Coolin' when I got my mains on. Show money, but those aren't the same ones. I been told you that it was game on. Been winning since I was on game one. Telling me how to live like you made me. Go a dog, man, I blame you made me. Money longer than a grown-up baby. Step crazy in a new Mercedes. Thinking that's 550. 5 seats, 50 kids in there. Prime steak on my dinner plate. Nike tag for the dinner wear. Flex up, never playing dress up. Never gonna let up. Never, ever, ever. Set up, play on my fam, get wet up. Go, 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 won't let up. Never, ever, ever. Haters on the other side. 3 up, read between the lines. Know I got some majors with me. Made it through some evil time. Late night on some demon time. Pour the Sprite, I need it on. I can't lock in, see the line. Freeze time.
I don't know if I'm okay. I don't see the light of day. Looking up to higher ground, thinking that'll be a sweet escape. These days gotta schedule the romance. They say that love is a slow dance. A short bike ride to the crib, using no hands. Oh, did it feel like I'm floating? But I'm falling with both eyes closed when I let the world spin. Testing the water, she got my nerves tense. Back when I ain't even have a purpose, I was so eager to learn some things. Anxiety bring out the worst in me. Society paint me as enemy. My making it by that remedy. I'm more occasional, don't do it regularly. Backs under my eyes, weighing down heavily. Mama been worried, the devil allegedly deep in the plan. Subconsciously wanted it since I was 10. I thought I was sharp on my scroll and my pen think it did. So mama found she to them legs. She told me that's not who I am. But nowadays I put on for the fam, see you when I can. I'm surrounded by my feelings, I'm stuck on a Ferris wheel. I bet I perish at 140 acres. She want the horse and the carriage, a porcelain portion of garbage. I talk to the mirror, I know that life's not the fairest. I lost my can, I can't pay off the bills with the blessing. Not sure I relate to the Reddit page. It's feeling like money is everything. Money is everything. It's everything I need. Till I lay my eyes on you. I don't know what this is, yeah, but I feel like it's real, baby. I don't wanna pretend, no. I just wanna come clear, wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. I wanna see you again. Yeah, young. What's the thing? This was everything I need, right? Not so fond of change. I'm too caught up in my way of thinking. I get by on me. No, I don't need nobody. Yes, I was so naive. Somehow I'm still all in on me. Yeah. Way too many times I let the ball drop. Now I'm Steph Curry with the wrist flick. So they.
Well, we're in for a fantastic day. Game number 1 delivers almost everything that you could have possibly wanted, and there's still a minimum of 2 games left, but hopefully, and I say this for everybody, 4 games that are going to be able to come through for today. But as you just saw, not just like the players who are in the game, but all the players in that video. You can go to shop.smiteproleague.com, get yourself a jersey, get some of the merch, rep your favorite team, and look good while doing it. Not only that, but Abby Loreno, or at Abby Loreno, I should even say, got their favorite team's jersey here, repping the Scarabs there. It says it's the best Father's Day present, being able to now rep your favorite team. Of course, the jersey is super comfortable and stylish. I like all of the logos and pretty much every single one of those designs. And not just team jerseys and more. There's shirts, there's hoodies, but also right now there happens to be this limited time, that's very crucial, limited time mouse pad that you can get. All the team logos over there on the right, of course, the Roll logos over there on the left. I even think I see the Thor hammer up at the top. Nice Bologna, multiple sizes, ends tonight. I can't It's less than 12 hours now, so you really do need to get on the mouse pad and buy it if you want to get that today, because otherwise I have no idea when or if it will be available again, and that's on you, not me. I said it. I did my job. Now it's time for you to do yours. And you know who else did their job? Well, the people over there behind Taco, the Jade Dragons, did exactly what you would have wanted. Maybe more so, Sam did his job, then everybody else got to come in and just pile on.
That was just so back and forth from the get-go, Gore. I mean, we saw lots of instances, lots of commitment from the Jade Dragons. They were trying to punish Awesome Jake early on with that Fafnir, realize, hey, maybe we just bank it all on Sam with the Mercury, and that is the problem with the Meiju looks and the crit possibilities. A very painful loss, I think, for the Olympus Bolts on that objective that ultimately funneled into the victory for the Jade Dragons on game number 1. But more importantly, Gore, I think this might be the last time we see Hurrywin get Giannis this set.
First time this weekend, maybe last time, should be
Just
last
first time in
this
forever.
week. Yeah, nobody lets him have it anymore. And he kind of showcased why. And, there was some conversation early on that first 10 minutes maybe wasn't really the best for the Dragons. Their comp didn't live up to the pressure it wanted. And then late game, oh, yeah, by the way, Mercury and Giannis, they did the things they do as they scale up, and they looked incredibly good. Even there, Barra manages to juke out all the through spaces and times. Can't always dodge out the unstable vortex.
And this isn't terrible either for the Bolts by any means.
Oh, no.
This was more so a mild slip-up from the Bolts, that's for sure. They're probably kicking themselves for not having the secure like they would have wanted on that Fire Giant, although it is a bit of a coin flip because Merlin, while he can produce some burst, it's more so damage over time with that mid lane option. And so I think that for the Bolts, they just need to be a little bit more steady and confirmed with the picks that they're able to acquire before leaning into those objective plays, because the Jade Dragons are always going to contest score, and I am just I'm very happy to see these style of drafts come through, because it's two very different ways to play the game. Very pick-oriented style versus a big team fight objective style, and it just so happens that Jade Dragons were just able to run them down at the end after they got that Fire Giant to restabilize the match.
And like you said, there were even portions in that where it still felt like a coin flip. You get that FG steal. That's the start of your comeback.
Now
But there were still a lot of moments afterward that were a little shaky for them. We'll have to see how they adjust in picks and bans here for game number 2. So far, Fenrir still takes the top slot. Gilgamesh over there for the Dragons as well. Last time for the Bolts, it was Fenrir, Sol, Raijin. They're continuing on some of that, but do you think you let the Raijin through?
Raijin could potentially come through. Bolts could also maybe choose to reban the Raijin, let Hurrywin have Giannis again. Nope, cancel that. That's going to be an option totally eliminated from the realm of possibilities here in game number 2. Bolts, I was going to say they let the Giannis through just because it wasn't like the Giannis was controlling everything for the first 20 minutes of that game. It really wasn't until after that Fire Giant came through for the Jade Dragons that Hurrywin was able to really start finding those super powerful unstable vortexes, because they just delayed the game. That's all that the Jade Dragons really needed to do, was find that little bit of game delay until they had their itemization online to optimize their burst. But I like the Circuit ban from the Jade Dragons since they're not in that first pick position, because I do believe that the Bolts would have probably opted for that. But seeing Haddix with the switch up onto the King Arthur, a wise choice. It's a lot more difficult, I think, to try and run something as aggressive as the Ratatoskers. This might be a little bit more of the conventional solo lane picks here for the Jade Dragons.
And again, wildly successful for them through Phase 1, like an 87-some-odd% win rate for them. The Bolts love this King Arthur. Haddix looked good with it. I believe most other teams had started to struggle with him towards the end of the phase. At least it was being handled a little better, I guess is the better way to work with it. The King Arthur looked good. It was just maybe the teams crumbling around him. Haddix, though, has always been able to stand up there. It looks like they're going to get the matchup immediately by locking in the Cullen. Throw your memes out there now, chat, and put them on Twitter. Anything, anywhere that you can put them, because now is going to be potentially the only chance. It depends on how this matchup goes.
A big fan of the Pele pickup here, though, for Sam, largely just because of the fact that Pele does a lot of the same things that you would want from, say, a Mercury or a Fenrir. She is still great for cutting through to the back line. She has a lot of mobility in the early game and just a lot of pressure as well. Pele is just such a threatening force throughout that first part of the laning phase, and I think it's especially going to apply a lot of pressure onto Awesome Jake and Barracuda over there in duo lane. They weren't really getting too heavily focused out. The Jade Dragons were having some difficulties because Lasbra just had some fantastic rotations and set up for his team. But this Pele pick could definitely pose a lot more issues if Lasbra's trying to run back the Erlong Shen. But I'm very skeptical to believe that he would want to go for that again.
And for those who remember yesterday, it was Game 3 versus the Warriors that Pele came through, and it was frightening to see what Sam was able to do with that one. But now the Jingwei, the Fafnir, that feels like a really Bolts top 3 that has been locked in. All of them fit really well with their hunters. Although Jingwei, I mean, right now, like the quote-unquote best hunter, it feels like a few weeks ago it was easy. You'd just say Hamdollar on her and you were right. Now it feels like that's such a difficult conversation to have, this Jingwei getting a top 3 spot.
Jingwei is just a heavy survivability pick. She can also lean very heavily into the crit builds that have sort of faded as of late, but Jingwei definitely still gets a lot of utility out of that build pathway. It's super strong for objective play, which again, I have to believe that's what the Bolts are trying to lean into here with that Fafnir having been picked up. Neither team's mid laner, though, having been prioritized in this top 3 section, Gore, and I believe that that's just due to the fact that both of these teams kind of left their hunter, well, Bolts left the hunter to the wayside. Same for the Jade Dragons. They kind of left Fine OK and pick a little bit more to the wayside. And it seems as though they just wanted to swap the prioritization because it might just give the Bolts a little bit of an edge, especially around those mid-game team fights, Gore, because I don't think that Pele is going to have as much of an opportunity at punishing a Jingwei.
Oh, and Kronos, of all things, banned out. I was going through the list of things I've seen Vin play and do really well with. I was expecting to see Merlin up there, but Kronos being taken away by the Jade Dragons here. Something that we've seen a few times, like Xerus loves to run it mid. We've been seeing specifically the Valkyries run the Neath combo with that Kronos. What merits does that have? Like, why take it down?
Kronos makes sense because Jade Dragons, they are playing for single target focus. And if there's one thing that Kronos can be great at, it's avoiding all of the possibilities of dying if you're able to find a solid rewind. And there is some great bursts so far from the Jade Dragons, especially now that they have that Raijin in tow, the Taiko drums with the Pele ultimates, even the Duns Buru. There's a lot of power in the Jade Dragons composition, but again, a Kronos, a simple rewind, and all that damage just falls to the wayside. So it definitely is a pick that makes sense, and Kronos also excellent when it comes to objective shred with the Fafnir in tow.
This Raijin, it's not something like we see Heroin kind of have to shuffle a lot. This Soul has been a very big pick for him. The Yanis has been very big for him. Raijin's there, it just hasn't necessarily been his go-to god lately, so it'll be interesting to see how he's going to pilot this one and where exactly he's going to be able to take it. But they're going to go back to the Erlong Shin here. I mean, you had said it at one point while we were watching that. You're like, man, Erlong and slows, it is the worst thing that you could possibly feel. But admittedly, Lasbra had a really good amount of setup in game number 1.
He hit me with the bamboozle here, Gore, because I did not expect him to want to go back to the Erlong Shen. And it's not like he played it poorly by any means in game number 1. It's just that once the ball started rolling for the Jade Dragons, we started to see those negatives involved with the Erlong Shen, all of the slows, all of the interruption. And I'm seeing still a ton of slows and interrupt from this Jade Dragons composition. But if Lasbra can get off to a strong start like he did in game number 1, and the Bolts can actually lock down on the big objectives like the Fire Giant for the secure, Discordia might also be a little bit better for that.
Now, of all the things you can say, first off, just looking at that hover, I see the Dragons logo over there. That very, very similar in terms of pose, even though you might say that's more Leviathans for Jormungandr, but it's going to be the Umoja. I was actually going to say coming into this, these last 2 picks are perfect. The Bolts banned Raijin and Umoja every single game that they've played up to today. Raijin was still banned in game 1. Umoja kind of tossed to the wayside. Now both of them coming in for the Dragons. Feels pretty good for PBM here to get that pick.
For sure, especially because it still plays very heavily into the isolation thought process that this draft is sort of alluding to from the Jade Dragons. Umoja with that Crushing Wave, the Riptide. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for the Bolts to have as much of their team fighting aspects going on because you don't want to get caught up inside of that Umoja ult, and you certainly don't want to get two grouped up for the Ryzen Tycho drums. Just very methodically played out drafts from both of these teams, because there's certainly a lot of win conditions involved from the Bolts composition. It's not a bad draft by any stretch of the imagination. It's just going to depend on how well they're able to execute in the team fighting area.
This is another one of those drafts that just feels like both teams are coming out full force, right? Like
Yes.
there's not really, like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, where's the weak link? There isn't one. Like, maybe the Erlang Shin, but even then, after what we just saw, no, that's not the case. So, like, they're both coming out, and it's about as best as you could get. You're getting the full effect from both teams.
Both teams are definitely getting picks that they want, Gore. I don't think that these are gods that either side is really upset to have to pilot by any means. And it's also just the fact that I'm really curious to see what happens with the dual lane now, though, because Yamoja Denzaburu has a lot of fighting potential into that Fafnir Jingwei, and it could pose some issues for Barracuda if they're constant, because Jingwei, she's one of the better hunters, obviously, for getting into the game after backing, but if you're consistently being forced out of lane, consistently being forced out of farm, you don't have to die to fall behind in Smite.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do. Even, like you said, being able to get back to lane fast doesn't necessarily help you too much, depending on what you expend to stay safe. So a lot of options there for the Dragons and for the Bolts in this one. Feels like a coin flip going into it. Let's go down to Dave and Aggro and see how it plays out.
Olympus Bolts, even with a loss in Game 1, probably feeling comfortable in some sense at how they brought themselves here to play up against the Jade Dragons. It's now the time in game number 2 here where I think a win is so crucial for the Bolts. Of course, you can win 3 straight, but you don't want to have to do that against the Dragons.
No, definitely not. I mean, game 2, Mifflin and I had a long discussion at the beginning of the weekend about, in best of 5s, which games are the most important. Without elimination games, which is obviously the caveat, I think Game 2 is the most important because going down 2-0 is such an important, it's so difficult to come back from, but evening up the series 1-1 is a big to get that momentum back and reset the series mentally. I think the Bolts have gone with an interesting strategy, and I'm interested to see how the Dragons respond to it, because I think this is the first time that we've seen the Dragons have this Danza pick up against a really safe hunter in Jingwei. And how is Barracuda going to be able to withstand that pressure? Will the pressure still be there? Will the Dragons switch up their lane that they want to try and send Sam to? And will it be more mid lane oriented? Because Discordia can suffer from early dive. She can really struggle to get away from characters like Pele if falling behind.
Now, we have seen some variety start to spring out of the starter items over in the long lane there, but with the Hunters, we've seen some Death's Toll. Obviously, Bluestone has been pretty popular with a lot of the Hunters. Arrow Start still here for Barracuda aggro. I mean, does that just kind of synergize a little bit better with the Jingwei? Keeps you getting that gold in your back pocket a little bit more consistently on a pick you don't want to fall behind on?
Yeah, you're not getting pressure, so trying to go with something that gives you pressure ends up not really paying off anyways. And more gold is just better. So I think it's good. I think that Hunters have really gone away from the Gilded Arrow a little bit too quickly, in my opinion. The stats might not be great, but if you're not trying to fight anyways, and you think you're going to be able to get away with not losing a whole bunch, getting the extra gold is just the best thing you could be doing.
And over here in the duo lane, you'll have Awesome Jake back on the Fafnir. Wild to me that PBM gets Yamoja last
10th.
pick.
Yep.
that seems pretty crazy to me.
Yep.
You're rolling the dice. Goremizer called it a coin flip. It feels like you're flipping the coin here, giving Mike a pick like this that late on in the draft.
And it's a little bit of a different look, but a similar game plan, I'd imagine, for Mike on this Yamoja pick in comparison to that Serket. All about trying to stop the momentum from Lasbra on these dives, make it difficult for him. No way for him to get around that River's Rebuke. Once he's in and committed, he's in and committed, and that's it.
And you imagine then we see some aggression from Mike early on here in this game. There was plenty with the Serket there and the Fafnir matchup. Quick pause before we jump back into the game here as quickly as possible. Now, I'm intrigued really in the jungle matchup again here in this game, of course. We saw Lasbra in a matchup that we said had some difficulty maybe for the Erlang Shen in Game 1. You go back to it here in Game 2. And then the aggressive in-your-face playstyle from Sanford Soccer continues. It's the Mercury first.
Yep.
See how that works out. He gets the steal. Little luck, little skill, probably both when it comes to Sanford Soccer. A lot of skill, though, in that category. But the Pele, a pick that has quickly become a Sanford Soccer special.
And he's looked unstoppable on it. I mean, his KDA must be through the roof in phase 1 on this pick and just in general in Season 8. And I think it's the right idea. Again, similar to what they did in Game 1, trying to keep Lasbra off of some of his comfort picks. That Pele is something that maybe his first god that he looked really strong on whenever he came back into the jungle at the SPL level. I think that they're really cognizant of what Lasbra's god pool is likely to be like and how they can neutralize it in these picks and bans. And it's the perfect situation where not only can you keep it out of Lasbra's hands, we assume he can play it, though I don't think he has it all in Season 8, but we know that Sam can get it going and be that aggressor early on. The Bolts have gone with a draft that's a little bit more defensive early, I think, than what they had in the past. I think they're trying to really group up and utilize that strength in the mid-game just like they did in Game 1 and hoping to play a little bit better around objectives. Can Sam keep that pace high? Is that game plan? Is that the game plan for Sam, or do they want to try and just ride it out just like the other side does?
Ride the lightning, right?
No, that's what the Bolts are trying to do.
The Bolts want to ride the lightning.
Exactly, but the Dragons are trying to eat them.
To eat the lightning?
Yeah, I guess
that's
so.
What
I don't know.
You want to see more of that, and you want to see the Zeus feeding people lightning on a consistent basis, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I want, but we're not going to see him today, I hope.
You hope you don't see him today.
Yeah, because then that player is just at a disadvantage.
That team just loses.
Yeah, Zeus isn't very good right now.
You give Aggro a moment to pitch a Zeus upgrade, and he's going to take it. That's
right.
That's entirely my fault. I am
buff
curious,
Zeus, baby.
Yeah, buff Zeus. Hey, I'd be okay with that. I am curious, though. Look, we talked a little bit about PBM, this Yemoja, the weight that carries with it.
Yep.
Jake on the Fafnir we know is a pick that can work as we jump back into game number 2. Didn't look fantastic there in Game 1. Do you like the Bolts going back to that pick here for a second time?
I do. I mean, just talking to Barra a lot on our podcast that will be on later tonight at 8 o'clock, just for the record.
Really? During the Hawks?
That's right. Listen, man, I got to make it happen, just like Sam is trying.
Oh, there's a root in onto Sam. The stun is there as well, but the damage is the Riptide, the pin on the back end. And Lasbra transforms, rolls on through, finds first blood yet again for the Olympus Bolt, and that it's big from Venenu on the back end, but it's not enough. Hurry answers back.
And Barra is just nowhere to be seen on this fight quite yet. It's still a 3v2, and the Jade Dragons are going to end up trading 1-for-1, but certainly you like that fight more for the Bolts, knowing that Sam fell for the first blood just a little bit too aggressive, and without those purification beads, without that volcanic lightning. Pele really wants to just farm hard until level 5. She can gank mid level 2 really well with the knock-up. That can go well for you. But you need Blink on this character, and you need your ultimate as CC immunity and mobility. And when you don't have it, one Fafnir hammer kills you. And that's exactly what we saw. Insane peel from Mike. Just preposterous peel with that Riptide. And it nearly got Sam out.
Yeah, we did.
But good patience from Lasbra. He didn't use his 72 transformations too early and let it get interrupted. That's the only way that Sam lives, is if Mike had interrupted that 72 transformations. Lasbra is nice and patient with that and the pin, and that's what nets him the kill.
And of course we've talked about how First Blood gives you a good start, but it's what you do with that then compounds onto a lead. Feels great for Lasbra that even though he also died, he at least got the kill. Sanford Soccer comes up with a goose egg even in the assist column. After all that started off there in that game. Finds himself about a half level behind. Lasbra's ticked over to 5. Sanford Soccer is yet to do so. Interesting, though, and maybe it is the call from the Dragons. Maybe it's just how that moment ended up. We saw something very similar yesterday between Venenu and Lasbra with the Discordia in the early game. You're fighting in to those stripes, and the control that Venenu's already shown us that he can play with this pick, I don't think can be looked over.
No, definitely not. You're going to end up in some pretty bad spots. But now he's pretty far behind. I mean, Hurry's level 6. Ven should hit level 5 off this wave. But that kill bounty, that extra gold, and the experience, of course, that you get from it ends up being a pretty big difference maker. Hurry is solidly a level up, and that's not where you want to be up against Raijin. Because when he gets enough damage and can just afford to jump in and play stupid aggressive on this pick, it feels nearly unstoppable.
Yeah, I love seeing the Raijin back in the meta here a little bit. The immense amounts of damage that it can pour out in the late game, sometimes even in the mid game, and then, depending on what you want to do with the Taiko drums, whether it's a taunt, a fear, or just extra damage, there's a little extra utility to play around there in that kit as well. So already a good start here. I guess you could argue for both teams, but really Polar Bear Mike feeling comfortable now on this Yemoja is Awesome Jake. A bit between 3 members of the Jade Dragons. It's a Riptide instead onto Venenu, and that's where Mike turns his eyes, and that likely means Awesome Jake feeling okay to escape.
Same game plan. Lasbra's going to invade blue, but look at this. Ven, no 3, nowhere to go.
No chance, but Hurrywind will Thunder crash away, and Lasbra won't have the damage. The Jade Dragon turn their eyes towards mid. and find the opening kill. It's a transformation from Awesome Jake, and Barracuda is here this time. Needs some damage onto Hurrywin, and the airstrike's got it. It's a back end as Panda Cat rockets in and turns one back.
Panda Cat has arrived, by the way. A massive rocket coming in from the side from Panda Cat is able to turn it around alongside Sam. And that time, I'm sure after the fight at Red, where Barra never showed up, they were like, hey, Barra, we need you, buddy. Ven needs some help now, and Barra's his only help.
No, don't tell me he's going to die again. He survived. He's got to have to go back to base, so it's a TKO onto Venenu. Unless for soccer blinks through. It's the lazy
Turn around,
back from
Barra,
Ven.
no!
Barracuda is going to be on the chase here. Sam for soccer
Sam's
doesn't
dead.
have much mana. Lasbro won't get it. Will the tower get it instead? And it sure does.
It sure does. Still gives a little bit of assist gold over, but still worthwhile because Ven just spent how long not farming? When was the last time Ven even got a lane minion at this point? Clearly the focus.
Absolutely is. Luckily for the Bolts, the gold in the even territory, even a little bit over towards the Olympus Bolts. The XP not out of hand, but starting to get in that direction here for the Jade Dragons. Lasbro feeling comfortable enough to grab the Scorpion, the Greater Scorpion, and down it will go. I think now the Olympus Bolts just need to take a bit of a deep breath. That was chaotic there in the mid lane.
It was.
For just a moment. Venenu dies to a great engage from PBM, comes back to lane, takes too much damage, lazy backs, dies. You got to slow this game down around this Discordia and give Venenu a chance to farm.
Yeah, but are the Bolts going to be able to slow it down?
Right.
Are the Dragons going to let them? Yeah, exactly. Maybe they won't.
It's a hammer onto Sam and a transformation all in onto this Pele. The follow-up leap from Awesome Jake, not enough. There is a stun onto Hurrywin, though. Olympus Bolts collapsing on in, but from over the wall, PBM sends the River's Rebuke. And now it's Haddix and Awesome Jake caught between three of the Dragons, and Hurrywin has his second of the game.
Fine, okay, just short on the route, but
Wow.
with it blink, I don't think he's going to be able to close this gap onto Haddix. Jake, again, a little bit too aggressive. That Pele mobility, it comes into play pretty heavily whenever she's got enough fuel in the tank, and Sam was able to hit the eject button pretty quickly on that fight, baits Jake into a bad spot. I feel like Jake's just trying to do a little bit too much right now. Saw it in Game 1, here again in Game 2.
Whoa, Haddix down to half. Final K and Sam looking towards the Tier 1 tower, but King Arthur difficult to dive here at this point in the game. Only has tank boots, but only going to get more difficult. On the back end of that, Panda Cat rotates over, steals away the red buff from the Olympus Bolts, so small moments maybe making a big difference here as Lasbro looks towards the left-hand side of the map. PBM is there to answer back, though. Awesome Jake returns with the hammer, but it's a good stun from PBM to stem that immediate follow-up.
And Mike has beads, but didn't use them. Nice and patient with that relic, knowing that he just needs to stun and then Riptide away. Really patient on this Emoja. And so far, it's made a big difference. He's got 100% kill participation already on this pick. We've seen the Dragons themselves struggle against it, particularly for Neil in that matchup. I think Neil really showed off how good this pick can still be. And I think Mike's doing the same. 1-0 and 4,
Yep.
really been a difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. Participating in 100% of the kills here so far. Down towards the bottom of those net worth charts, as you point out there, unfortunately, is Venenu. And you'd think, look, you look at the gold up top, if you're the Olympus Bolts, you're thinking, we're only down by 1 to 300 gold, depending on where the waves are. After being down 3 kills here in the early game, you're probably feeling pretty good about it. Unfortunately, it's Venenu where a lot of that difference, it would be worse for the Jade Dragons maybe if Venenu hadn't fallen a bit behind.
Exactly, and the XP is maybe the bigger deal. Now, the good news is, when you're playing Discordia, even when you aren't doing very much, your passive's going to help. And you're going to be able to help boost somebody up, at the very least, on your team. Can't tell who has the Discordia passive right now in this matchup. It might actually be Ven, just based on those based on those effects, and it is actually Venenu. So this is worst case scenario
Right.
for him, is that you have the Discordia passive, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Now it makes it so that he's not as behind feeling as he normally would be, but you'd much rather have that on Barra to let him try and push his slight lead over in duo, or maybe Haddix or Lasbro to make these right side invades be a little bit easier.
Well, PBM and Awesome Jake continue to hold the hands a little bit there in the mid lane, but it's Venenu who needs a little bit more of it. 2 levels down now against his counterpart, and you imagine that trend continues on here. The aggression, though, from Hurrywin and PBM will they collapse in? After what we saw, I wanted to be hesitant there because I wouldn't have been surprised if the Jade Dragons were aware of that. They crash on in and try to find something, but now
hello.
Soccer turning around onto Lasbro. The knockup is there, and Mike nearly has enough sustain to keep his jungler alive, but instead Haddix has found the opening kill, and the Taiko drums will be enough to return back from Hurrywin, and the cooldown is there, and the Raijin gets out.
And yeah, just off the mark for that hammer for Jake. He still gets the beads from Hurry, so not the end of the world, but maybe could have gotten the kill if that had landed. How about Sam? Reacts to the blink in, and I think he was trying to escape. I think he assumed that Lazarus was coming from bottom left side, and that's where the blink would be coming from, so he whips his camera with that volcanic lightning for the CC immunity. It ends up just headbutting Lasbra.
Yep.
Nearly got the kill with the help from Mike.
Whoa, Jake is low, and the Olympus Bolts are able to grab the Pyromancer. Venenu sends an apple Hurrywin's way, but Hurrywin is not hungry and will avoid the ultimate from Venenu. Awesome Jake barely stays alive. Now Fino K somewhat low. Barracuda's here. Ultimate gets used from Fino. It's a stun, but then an immediate beads follow-up. And Fino K will survive because Sanford Soccer and PBM are in to try to peel out for their solo laner, and it'll work.
And just barely, though. Good beads from Fine, because Haddix had him in his sights with that overhand
Bolts aren't
slash.
backing away.
Yeah, they aren't, because Barra's here in level 13, and he wants to make the most out of this rotation over, but got to be a little bit careful because they don't have a whole lot of ward vision on this side of the map. It seems to be working out, though. No one from the Jade Dragons really interested in rotating. And I like the fact that Lasbra's gone over to the duo lane and picked up this farm that Barracuda is foregoing. Though it looks like Panda's trying to fight him.
Panda maybe engaging. Actually, Rocket gets used there onto Lasbro as we take another quick pause here. Looked like maybe the Donza icon was backing away there.
Well, it's either that or Panda was hacking, and I don't think he was hacking. So I think
you don't
he
think?
was, well, he does hit a lot of stuff.
He does, doesn't
I'm not,
he? That Rocket is got a pretty high percentage rate.
I'm not ruling it out, but I think he probably just used the ult.
Well, how about this, though? It's been the continued trend now in this game from the Olympus Bolts where the individual numbers as far as kills go, I mean, if you really want to simplify it down to kills, the Dragons have been controlling those skirmishes, but
sure,
gold has been even. Whatever the Bolts are doing on the map, whether it's farm or who they're handing that over to, talking about Lasbra picking up farm that's otherwise dropped off if he's not there, they've kept themselves gold-wise right even with the Dragons.
And that's been one of the maturation processes of this Bolts team and really taking their game to the next level, is being able to fall behind in the kill department and still be able to get farm and really still keep themselves in these games. And you're right, Dave, this game is even. By every metric, they've got a slight lead for Haddix on the right-hand side and the slight deficit for Ven in the mid lane, but even that is starting to close. Now Ven's only 500 gold down of Hurrywin, where it was closer to 1,000 just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, he's been able to farm himself up well, has the Charon's coin, so just a tier 1 in the flat pen tree behind what Hurrywin has been able to build here so far. The Raijin does, I think, have to be a point of concern, though, for the Olympus Bolts here, where, again, it's not completely out of control, but a 3-1-1 start on an already feeling good Hurrywin after game number 1 is something you're going to have to be mindful of, finding that Raijin and bursting him down quick enough to where you can't disengage.
Going to be tough because Hurry is in a good position now. This is where Raijin really starts to hit his power spike anyways. Once you hit that third item, you start to feel like you're going to be able to 100-0 people with your combo pretty easily. And Hurry's been always one of those players that's willing to be aggressive, not Captain Twig level suicide Raijin jump in aggressive at times, but picking his spots well and willing to sacrifice the body in order to win the team fight. And a lot of times when you're this far ahead, it actually is right for you to die in the team fight by getting all of your damage off and doing as much damage as humanly possible and kind of transferring that lead to the rest of the team. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. You can just hit everybody from a distance and set your team up for great success, but with the type of player that Hurry is, wouldn't surprise me if that's the direction he decides to go, just trying to get in there and really use every bit of this lead that he has.
I think so important as well that Awesome Jake has been able to keep pace XP-wise with Polar Bear Mike, who still on this Yemoja has 100% kill participation, 1 kill with the 5 of 6 on 6 kills. Awesome Jake been a little bit less effective than what PBM has been, though the Bolts in general, you could argue, are in that same category here in Game 2. But the fact that the levels are even definitely bodes well for this Fafnir as this game continues to roll on here. Barracuda building into that crit a little bit. We've seen this, though, on Jingwei, I think, sometimes, where Devo's into Wind Demon and then either Rage or Deathbringer or something like that. A little bit later on still makes enough sense with the way it synergizes.
Yeah, not a Transcendence God. You're definitely not leveraging that extra physical power scaling very well on Jingwei. She's so much more auto-attack based than someone like a Danzaburo. So this is definitely the right sort of build path for Bara. And I mean, take a look at the net worth. He's in a pretty decent spot, only down by a little bit, despite the fact that Panda, I think, has done a little bit more in terms of his map pressure. Obviously, Bara rotating over to that right-hand side and getting that tier 1 tower was good for them, but Panda invading red by himself and just generally having some pretty decent wave control over here has ended up with him having a slight lead, but that Gilded Arrow keeps Bara pretty close in the net worth department.
Does that force out Spectral Armors in your mind later on into the year? You have to against the Jingwei?
Have to, because otherwise she's going to eat you up. So Fine OK should be going Spectral in this game. Sam just finished
he already got it.
His
Wait,
Spectral.
Mike has it too?
Mike has it as well. I mean, Bara instantly becomes a lot less valuable.
Were those on the screen
in
before
these team fights. I don't know. I feel like they backed and bottom
they
right as
have.
you said it. Yeah, I guess they must have been. And look, Spectral's cheap. It's got decent stats. You can use it in games like this for Fine, for Sam rather, where he's going to be diving and trying to win the 1v1 up against Lasbra pretty often. And now you just don't have to worry about Barracuda a whole lot at all.
Yep.
And you can still win your 1 up against Lasbra.
Uh-oh, Sam for Soccer thought he had a 1v1 against Barracuda, but it's anything but. CC immunity for Sam for Soccer will keep him out of the taunt on the 9 turns blessing. So Barracuda gets away with 1 there. Lasbra nearly gets the return engage onto Sam for Soccer, but Pele will live on, holds onto those beads too. Ever so important. Anti-heal becomes very important when you're playing up against something like this Emoji. You get that mindset. Lasbra seems to agree. He's got Toxic Blade early on here. Venenu with the Divine Ruin as well will help mitigate some of what the Dragons are hoping to do in these fights.
I definitely like that amount of anti-heal. Toxic Blade I'm still not super sold on. Just feel like Lasbra's going to have a hard time getting consistent autos off in the mid to late game, but it only takes 1 to apply some anti-heal, and so it does make a difference at the end of the day, and it's fairly cheap. So,
right.
All right, I've talked myself into it. It's fine for Lasbra.
We'll see if he can do it here on the
Sundered.
PDM. Lasbra taking plenty of damage in the backline, though. Awesome Jake has transformed Apple. No good. Would have made a difference. On to Hurrywind, who has to escape over to the Tier 1 tower in the mid lane. If that Tycho Drums was still up, there's still enough range on that where Hurrywind could have made a difference. But the Olympus Bolts, they found their target. They wanted that Raijin, nearly got the kill.
Nearly. I mean, upgraded Sunder there for Jake. And how about Haddix not trying to blink in and save Lasbra from the melee damage coming from Polar Bear Mike, but instead just gets on top of Hurry very quickly and forces Hurry to cancel out those Tycho Drums, beads, and jump over the wall. So really good target identification from Haddix, who had a really, really good game 1 despite the loss for the Bolts. And now he's on his best god in this King Arthur. So excited to see what he's going to do come mid to late game.
If the Bolts have shown us anything, it's that they will not back away when adversity starts to strike, and it had early on here in this game. But the Pyromancer, yet again for the Olympus Bolts, proves that they are here to play. It's a knock-up from Fine OK, and some damage returned onto Lasbra. The Strife does not connect, and the damage is all but there. And PBM is in on some peel as Fine OK walks out with his support. But Haddix rotating around the left. Lasbra ends up dying in the back line to Sam for Soccer. The Olympus Bolts need to pull one back here. They want PBM. Whoa! They want Fine OK. They might want Sam for Soccer, but they won't get him. Not just yet. Panda Cat rotates in, finds the opening kill on Ven.
Yeah, just way too much target focus onto the tanks. Fine OK and Polar Bear Mike just look like this tasty little meat running away through the jungle, and the Bolts swallow it hook, line, and sinker. They go all the way to the Tier 2, and Sam picks off Lasbra, who's 1 HP, and then comes in with a massive ultimate on the back end.
Steal in game number 1. Awesome Jake is going to have to work some magic to grab a steal here in game number 2. Fire Giant low, Tycho Drums used. Jake jumps on in, and the Jade Dragons make no mistake. Grab the FG and a kill onto Awesome Jake at the end.
No problem with Jake trying to go for that play at that point. I mean, you've got to try and make it happen on that fight, because you just know that a Fire Giant at this point for the Jade Dragons, when there's this much gold on the map for them to take, is going to be difficult to come back from. So Jake throws his hat in the ring at the very least, but just an overextension by the Bolts. Fine does such great work, man. I mean, he handles the 4-man dive onto him really effectively, nearly killed Lasbra all on his own, and then still manages to escape. Mike's in the right spot, and the Bolts just cannot help themselves but try and kill these frontliners. When their composition, I mean, the Spectral Armors there and done for these guys mean that Bara's not doing that much damage. Ven is too far behind to really put a whole lot of threat on these frontliners. He doesn't have a whole lot of damage in the build at this point. Needs his 4th item in order to really get that big power spike. and the Jade Dragons are able to just come in and play cleanup crew. Sam comes in and hits a massive volcanic lightning. Panda Cat hits a massive rocket. And the fight's just over because the Bolts walk into traffic without looking both ways.
How many times have we seen this from Panda Cat, where regardless of how slow the game has gone for him early on, this Danza still feels good. 303 now for the Jade Dragons Hunter. Gold Fury's going to get taken down by the Dragons as well. It's a 2-level lead for Panda Cat over Barracuda, who might have gotten a little spooked, Barra did, by the 3 Spectral Armors over there for the Jade Dragons. A little bit of a pivot towards the end of his build. Just has the Wind Demon right now, and forgoes crit with that most recent item purchase, and maybe that's the right call.
I think so too. Switching over to the Chins, I mean, you've got 3 Spectrals on the other side, and used to be that crit was so strong that Spectral just kept you afloat against it, but the crit was still the best way to go. At this point, maybe this is the right idea.
Uh-oh, Final K's found Barracuda with a knock-up in the backline, but it's a follow-up stun, and the Apple this time does connect, but where did Haddox go? He is gone, he is missing, and Sam is the culprit. Awesome Jake rooted down beneath the tier 2 tower. Barracuda's finding some auto attacks here, but now the front line mitigated for the Bolts.
And Final K again just soaks it all up. Not a care in the world. Great healing coming from Mike. Fine needed every bit of additional HP that Mike tossed his way.
And the Jade Dragons are now 7K gold in the lead. 1 Phoenix down. Lasbra, Ven, and Barracuda are going to have to sprinkle some magic here into game number 2 to keep it from going down 0-2. That's a good bit of damage on the Panda Cat in the backline. Venanu resetting those cooldowns as best as he can. But Sanford Soccer has found the Discordia. Panda Cat grabs the opening kill onto Lasbra. Now Barracuda on the wrong side of things here. Low health bars across the Jade Dragon. Sanford Soccer searching for Venanu. Barracuda goes on back to base. Venanu weaving the damage in there as best as he can, but the Jade Dragons juggle it well, and they'll take game 2.
Man, close. I mean, Haddox and Jake were coming up, but not close enough for the Olympus Bolts. And that's what this Jade Dragon team does so well. They just get this slight lead, they win 1 fight, and the game just feels over from that position. And that's got to be so frustrating for the Bolts now, weighing on their mental, because you know that this is a team that's been hungry. Remember, last year they did not perform that well outside of the playoff events. This is their first year where they're really considered that top-end team in the SPL. They've made it to the finals against the team they want to beat. They make, 2 mistakes game 1, lose the game after looking really good for 30 minutes. All right, that's fine. We'll just come in and play well game 2. Game 2, they make 1 mistake and lose the game off it in 20 minutes flat, and now they know they've got to win 3 games in a row. This team's got to be mentally strong because this is not going to be an easy set from here.
And all indicated by the props we were giving the Bolts basically that entire game. Look, you've been losing a kill here and there, but you are even in kills. You even got Venanu back to relevancy point in that game, and the Jade Dragons just too consistent on the shot calling, and they'll take this set to set point. Will they win it in game 3? Stick around and find out.
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing 1 for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores. Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true. I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy,
I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality. We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Steak on my dinner plate. Nike tech for the dinner wear. Flex up, never playing dress up. Never gonna let up. Never ever set up. Play on my fam, get wet up. Go, won't let up. Never ever. Haters on the other side. 3 help read between the lines. Know I got some majors with me. Made it through some evil time. Late night on some demon time. Pour the Sprite, I need a line. I can't lie, can't see the line. Freeze time.
I don't know if I'm okay. I don't see the light of day. Looking up to higher ground, thinking that'll be your sweet escape. These days gotta schedule the romance. They say that love is a slow dance. A short bike ride to the crib, using no hands. Oh, did it feel like I'm floating? But I'm falling with both eyes closed when I let the world spin. Testing the water, she got my nerves tense. Back when I ain't even have a purpose, I was so eager to learn some things. Anxiety bring out the worst in me. Society paint me as enemy. My making it by that remedy. I'm more occasional, don't do it regularly. Backs under my eyes, weighing it down heavily. Mama been worried, the devil allegedly deep in the plan. Subconsciously wanted it since I was 10. I thought I was sharp on my scroll and my pen think it did. So mama found she to them legs. She told me that's not who I am. But nowadays I put on for the fam, see you when I can. I'm surrounded by my feelings, I'm stuck on a Ferris wheel. I bet I perish at 140 acres. She want the horse and the carriage, a porcelain portion of garbage. I talk to the mirror, I know that life's not the fairest. I lost my can, I can't pay off the bills with the blessing. I'm sure I relate to the Reddit page. It's feeling like money is everything. Money is everything. It's everything I need. Till I lay my eyes on you. I don't know what this is, yeah, but I feel like it's real, baby. I don't wanna pretend, no. I just wanna come clear, wanna see you again. Yeah, young, it's the thing. This was everything I need, right? Not so fond of change. I'm too caught up in my way of thinking. I get by on me. No, I don't need nobody. Yes, I was so naive. Somehow I'm still all in on me. Yeah. Way too many times I let the ball drop. Now I'm Steph Curry with the wrist flick, so they cold shoulders never defrost. No deal, but I pre-floss with the money tree in a deep pot. So I'm Cornell Haynes with the rundown. Jump all in the field with the cleats off. Everything that I want out of reach, I had the tunnel vision, couldn't see far. Negative vibes that I feed off got me up and down like a seesaw. All these decoys hit the destroy. Usually keep it poised, but it's ultra violent with the power moves when I deploy. For the real ones, I wanna feel something. Looking for a sign that I might be worth your time. Yeah. When I look into your eyes, it make me feel alive. I don't know what this is.
Well, in that video, we find out how many casters it takes to build one chair. Yesterday, we found out how many how many chairs one caster can make. There we go. Words. Sometimes you do them right. Today, we are going to find out just what could make potentially a good Father's Day present for you. SMITE Max, the Maxonomic chair. Of course, we love those. And we actually have Dave, I believe, standing by with a really special interview.
Maxonomic, it's Father's Day. I did something with my mom for Mother's Day. So naturally I have to bring in Carl Olson for Father's Day here. Dad, can you hear me? Can you see me? How am I looking over here?
Dig Dog. Dig Dog. Sorry, Dave. Dave's your Dig Dog's his home name. Dave, I can see you okay, but I got to get close because your chest and your arms are looking kind of small. and Liz was just saying that your proportion of your upper body to your legs is getting kind of off. So
yep.
I thought the big screen was supposed to make you look big, but you look kind of small.
My own father, live on air. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate that. Well, I think I already know the answer to this question, but are you feeling prepared? Look, Mom came in with a great interview. I think you're already doing well, given that. Are you prepared for a big Father's Day interview?
Sure. I mean, well, you got to know your ma is awesome at everything. She outdrives me in golf. Yep. She beats everyone in games, especially Cards Against Humanity. So I'm trying my best. I have a few years of DJ experience from college, so hopefully that will pull me through.
I think it will. Look, you're doing great here so far. Now, as I mentioned yesterday on camera, and as some people at home know, you definitely know, I'm between apartments right now for like a month. I'm back living with you guys. Are you more excited for me to be home?
Ramsey.
Okay. I didn't even get to finish. You're more excited for Ramsey to be home. I'm not surprised.
She's cuter than you.
Hey, that's fair enough. Like, you won't catch me disagreeing with that one. I have to rib you a little bit before we get into to some more fun stuff here. Why did you make me a Bengals fan? Why? That's a serious question. Why?
Because I had to teach you about commitment.
Yep. Okay.
Good times, bad times. You had to stick. No matter how good they are, but you gotta stick with commitment. Plus, they have the best helmets in the.
They do have some great helmets. You're right. You're absolutely right. Now let's get into to some brass tacks here. First of all, I have no idea where you are. Where are you sitting in the house right now?
Well, Dave, since you're not here, I decided to commandeer your setup.
You're on my computer.
I am definitely on your computer.
Don't press Control H or whatever on your browser.
See all this stuff? I retried. It was kind of slow this morning, so I plugged in a bunch of wires. These are left over, so I don't know what the heck to do with them.
Right.
So hopefully you can make some sense out of those.
Yeah, I'd like to. Well, look, it looks like you're sitting in a very comfortable Maxonomic chair over there. That's mine, but do you know where you could go to get a chair of your own?
I absolutely do know where you can get a chair of your own. But first, let me say something, Dave.
No, not again.
I put together about 20 chairs while you were gone today. Yep. They're all in the garage. But my advice to you is, yesterday you were putting them together with a saw.
I was.
Plus, you scared the heck out of Gore and Taco. That was not good. So use a socket wrench and a wrench, and you can do it. But needforseat.com, promo code SMITE Max. In fact, I'm going to pick up one of these for work. This thing is
that's smart.
Awesome.
Yeah, once you get your desk in the basement back, I'll let you.
That?
Yeah, kind of runs in the family. It absolutely runs in the family.
How do you like my Kanga?
I do like your Kanga jersey. A throwback to some Paladins days. Thank you, Dad, for plugging the chair here for us. Final thoughts from you. Any messages out there to the fathers on Father's Day?
Well, Dave, I absolutely love being a father. I have 2.5 great kids. I mean, 3. I have 3 great kids. I have a wonderful daughter-in-law. I couldn't ask for anything better. So I wish all the other fathers out there. I hope they feel as lucky and as fortunate as I am, and have a great day.
Yeah, right.
Because every other day is kid day. We gotta have one.
You know
day.
what? I appreciate being the half great kid that you have there at home, Dad. Love you. Happy Father's Day. Once again, that's Maxonomic, needforseat.com, code SMITE Max to sit like my dad and I are comfortably sitting here for this wonderful interview. Dad, go enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you later.
All right, I'll plug these all back in at some point.
Okay, thanks. Gore, take it away.
Dave, thank you so much for that. That was fun to watch.
Appreciate it, Dig Dog.
But I wish I will say his mom gave us the best tagline, and admittedly we should use it more, which was the Maxnomic for your rear, Alienware for your gear. If that isn't one of the best lines that anyone could have had for ad reads, I can't think of it. But either way, Dave and his dad showcasing exactly how well those Maxnomic chairs can stand up to about anything, even the embarrassment of your, well, I guess the embarrassing nature of your parents, or maybe the embarrassment of your parents. It depends on what you're doing. Either way, that was game number 2. I forgot there's a set. There's other things going on outside of just fun, and that has been the Dragons a little more concise in game number 2. Taco, it's beginning's a little more close up until about a Fire Giant call, a win from the Dragons, and then everything from that point forward just feels like their control.
Well, Gore, you're talking about fun, and I think that for the Dragons, they are having fun being up 2-0 in this set now, but the scoreline of the set overall definitely deceiving for the action that's truly been taking place here. But game number 2 was just all about kill Venenu, and this was very much what I kind of was expecting to happen when you look at just how much dive the Jade Dragons were bringing in. So I think ultimately for the Bolts, if they want to bring this one back into a contention for the best of 5 series, Gore, they're really going to need to just maybe look to prioritize a nice solid mid-lane pick for Venenu that doesn't have to really have as much dependency on the team peel, because when you have 5 different members from the Dragons just trying to gun you down at all points of the game, it just gets incredibly difficult to farm, and that was really what hurt the Bolts the most, I think, as this game started to progress more towards that mid-late game aspect. There was just no means for Venenu to really keep up from the amount of pressure that was constantly being applied.
And it just, again, once they got ahead, it kind of feels like it was essentially snowballed into itself. And they played it well, like you said, Venenu 0-3 there, Jake 0-4. Not a lot of opportunities for the Bolts to really look too great. Panda Cat, though, 5-0-4, PBM 1-0-11. I think they only got 13 kills, so being part of 12, he was definitely a huge driving factor for them.
Also would like to see Lasbra maybe steer into a more aggressive jungle pick that can actually try and better contest against what Sam has been leaning towards, because the Mercury, the Pele's, they've all had the same mission that we've been talking about, and it's just get to the back line, because if you're able to punish the carries, whether or not you kill them, as long as you're restricting their farm, they're going to be suppressed in levels, they're going to be suppressed in items, and when you are trying to look for these team fighting compositions like what the Bolts have been running, you never really get a chance to utilize the Coerce and the Fafnir. You keep just having to expend for a disengage, and that's more often than not what we saw happening to Awesome Jake. It's just been close, but no cigar for the Bolts.
And while there was, I think yesterday I'd mentioned it, between second place, which is the worst case scenario for either of these teams, and third place, which was what we saw happen to the Leviathans as well as the Warriors, there's about $11,000 difference between just those games. There is more than $20,000 on the line for this one, Taco. A lot, I think, of pressure there for the Bolts, maybe even more so for the Dragons. They're sitting around, they're like, okay, cool, well, just one more game. Admittedly, they've got a little bit of time. The last time, I'm going to take us back in time a little bit to January of 2021. Feels actually like ages ago, even though it's only June. It was a 3-0 for Ghost Gaming over the Renegades after the Renegades had a really, really good run during Worlds.
Where does he get so much bread?
Look.
Is his pantry just full of bread? That's what I'm starting to imagine now for Barracuda, man, because it's either bananas or bread.
That's a healthy diet,
Sometimes
right?
both.
That's all you need.
On occasion,
there's potassium in bananas, and there's carbs and bread.
But how do we always find him when he's eating the bread? He's always just eating it. That's the difference.
It's the always eat diet. It's definitely something that you can. If you're only eating slices of bread, depending on the slice of bread, you're gonna see how weird I am about calories. Depending on the type of bread you get, about 70 calories. So how many of those do you need to get to 2,000?
I mean,
you could do a few hours worth of bread.
Bear's also an incredibly tall guy, so that would definitely be a lot of bread. He certainly eats his weight in it. By the looks of things, on a daily basis, might have to ask Destiny to chill out with the bread purchases in that household.
Either way, they're getting into Game 3. The bread's going to have to do a lot of work here for Bear and the rest of the Bolts to make sure things can kind of level out for them. They're down 2-0. And what could be the final game? Gilgamesh, Tiamat, Sol, Yanis, now Raijin. 3 mid laners now knocked away by the Bolts. But Fenrir for the first time, going to be available.
And Fenrir could be possibly locked in here for the Bolts because it would still make a very strong flex pick option. I don't think it would be wise to leave it up for the Jade Dragons. If they weren't already down 2-0 in this series, Gore, I would definitely say, yeah, Fenrir, fair game. Still look to prioritize either the King Arthur again for Haddix or the mid lane pick for Venenu. But I still have to lean heavily into wanting to see the Bolts opt for that early pick for Venenu, but again, with Fenrir being on the board, it's kind of just a forced lock-in for them. And they definitely have a team that's more than capable of flexing this as well. It just would cause too many issues for the for the Bolts if they let the Jade Dragons have that.
And it's something that worked and has been nice to Lasbra. I mean, you were saying something maybe more aggressive, especially more proactive. Like Fenrir can get in the game and can affect it, but there are going to be some issues with Fenrir early on, and that's that. There's some ways to deal with them. Some gods maybe don't deal with them as well. But there's Ymir getting locked in, Danzaburo, which has been treating Panda Cat more than fine. Especially, like, it's one of those things, very small taunt in the kit. I can't count the amount of times that I've seen it be the difference between a guaranteed kill and having to chase someone down. So this feels like a good top 2.
Especially if you have guaranteed crowd control like what Ymir can provide with that freeze. And it lasts for a decent amount of time. Not only that, but the walls, the limitations that Ymir is going to introduce in a lot of those jungle fights is definitely something for the Bolts to keep an eye out for. I'm very glad to see the Emoja, though, as the answer back, because if you have one wall from the Ymir, granted, Emoja might not have hers on as low of a cooldown as Ymir, but it's still a great way to just counteract some of that isolation from the Jade Dragons, because the Bolt can also look to limit the mobility from the Jade Dragons here. And it's not like Ymir, and Danzaburo, don't get me wrong, he definitely has some options for a decent escape or decent mobility, but the Yem pick could be crucial here for the Bolts if Awesome Jake is able to have a fantastic showing.
Well, we get the Merlin as well. It feels like some more or less signature picks. The Emoja is something that Jake didn't play a lot of last year, didn't necessarily look great on last year, but did bring it into his wheelhouse and has had a lot of success on it more recently. But Ymir, Danza, we already mentioned how those fit so well with the players. Mercury, the thing that has been banned maybe the most from Sam since he played it a couple of weeks ago, locked in once again. And other than having him banned out in the game, how do you deal with a Mercury?
Mercury would be a lot more scary here, Gore, if it wasn't for the fact that Emoja and Fenrir are already on the board here for the Bolts, because again, Emoja has the ability to throw up her own wall with that Riptide and Crushing Wave. And also Fenrir, I like the idea because Fenrir can brutalize Mercury's ultimate. As long as you don't get caught out from the start, if you start to brutalize from behind him when he looks for that Sonic Boom, you're going to be able to follow him the whole way through. And you have to remember how much damage is actually involved with that brutalize as well. And it does have some AoE application depending on how close Sam is to the rest of his team. So a slight chance for splash damage as an after effect here. Bolts, I think, probably were expecting the Mercury lock-in from Sam just because it has been such a signature staple pick for him. He has had fantastic showings the whole way through every single time he's gotten this god in his wheelhouse. And I think that for the rest of the composition now, the Baron Samedi respect bans to Fine-OK. Not trying to give Fine-OK a very strong option, at least for punishing the Fenrir.
And he still ends up with that Osiris that we saw treat him really well yesterday, though. So it's one of those things, especially like a lot of targeting towards Haddix, the Baron, target straight up along with the Ratatosker towards Fine-OK. And he still picks something that he feels good with, especially after he was able to win against this King Arthur last game. He went for the Cucullin then, but it feels like he's pretty confident that he's not going to have to worry too much about Haddix this game.
And it's not like Haddix has been having a quiet set by any means. It seemed quiet from the solo lane, but that's just because so much of the focus has been taking place over in the mid lane. Hasn't really given many opportunities for Haddix to be that centerpiece for his team like we have seen him in the past, being a more standout member, kind of carrying through some of the weaker team fighting aspects. But I do have a little bit of concern here for the Bolts, because the early game is what I think the Jade Dragons have been really focusing in on. And while Fenrir and Emoja can, and same thing for the King Arthur, they can technically provide that, but it's not going to be as consistent of pressure as what the Jade Dragons have opted for.
This is one of those things. I always love to look at numbers for like the first phase. We're in the playoffs, so how did King Arthur perform through all that? I don't care about that right now. All I saw was 4 picks throughout this weekend and a 0% win rate for him. Does not inspire a lot of confidence. But the Scylla coming through at the very end with all of the bans that went towards Heroine's way in the top 3 kind of makes sense that he then goes to another god that he's played a few times at least. And it feels, at least burst-wise, confirm-wise, that they've got that going for them. There's a lot of setup. I'm having some trouble poking holes in the Dragons' composition.
It's going to be tough to ever poke holes into the Dragons' draft score. I think that they have really been taking a lot of steps towards adapting towards what they've been seeing some of these other top-tier teams in the SPL run, and these do seem fairly foolproof of compositions, but the one thing I am taking note on is I do feel, even with Scylla's burst confirmation on objective play, there is still a pretty big win condition here for the Bolts if they're able to just get Bara and Venenu to a relevant stage of farm and not have them being so choked out like what we saw in game number 2.
And that's going to be the struggle, right? It's just getting a hand on the wheel at this point. They have a lot more options, and like you kind of highlighted, specifically Fenrir, Yamoja, I think give them that push forward that they were really kind of missing in Game 2. But if they start to fall behind, I get a little scared of Mercury. I think rightly so, get scared of the Danzaburo. Ymir for PBM has been such a signature pick. Is this where the Dragons close it out, or are the Bolts finally going to fight back and at least give us 4 games?
Because of how close games 1 and 2 have been, Gore, I really want to believe that there's a chance that we see a game 4 here. I know Polar Bear Mike's dad's probably not going to be too happy with that prediction, but the commentator in me loves to see the action, and especially when you have such highly talented squads between these 2 rosters, it would be cool to see this set stretch on a little bit longer, but this is a really strong draft from the Jade Dragons. I do have to lean towards them a bit more, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if we see that fight back potential from the Bolts.
Especially because now the pressure is on for the Bolts. It is about as do or die as you can get. Aggro had mentioned that except for elimination games, Game 2 is the most important because you can end up in, well, exactly this spot, an elimination spot. And so very unfortunate for the Bolts with their backs against the walls. Now is the time to fight back, and if they do it here, they're going to have to do it 2 more times to find the dub. The Dragons, though, on the precipice of victory. It's all coming down to these 10 picks, Taco, and I don't know which way to go, so it doesn't matter anymore. Let's just jump into the game with Dave and Aggro.
What a turnaround the Jade Dragons have had since some stumbles mid-phase here in Season 8, and they have made an absolute statement here this weekend. Can they complete that statement with an exclamation point? That's the big question. They could do it here, Aggro, with a 3-0 over the Bolts.
And I think they came up with a really good draft. I mean, it says a lot about Hurry's level of play, that he eats 3 bans to lead the draft. It wasn't even 3 bans across all 5. The first 3 all in his name. Interesting that the Bolts don't decide to go with more bans in order to try and get him lower down that God Totem pole, but he ends up on the Scylla that he's had really good performances on. And how about somehow, for some reason, Panda keeps getting Danzaburo, and he has looked unstoppable on this pick, not just today, but throughout the whole playoffs.
I was going to ask, at what point, regardless, we had very specific conversations around the Danza and the Chiron matchup. It seems like just Danza in general for Panda Cat, regardless of who he's going against, seems to be feeling good for him later on in the game. We'll see if it pays off. Barracuda able to stay relevant there in game number 2 despite the way that the game went, so I think getting the Jingwei back for him, definitely something to look toward. Awesome Jake on a different pick for the first time this set, though, Aggro. He'll get the Yamoja. I think that's an important pivot here for the Olympus Bolts, maybe something they can lean on.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, so good on Fafnir. It's one of his signature picks, but hasn't really brought that the last 2 games. Think maybe letting him be less of a initiating support and more of a follow-up or peel sort of character maybe gets him in a better mindset and slows the pace of the game down a little bit. You know, obviously we aren't in comms. We don't know what happened in that game to Chase that really lost the Bolts the game, but I think trying to go with something a little bit more controlling in the team fights rather than dive-oriented with that Fafnir might put Jake in the right spots in these team fights.
Well, here one of the players had to reset their PC, so we'll get them back into the game, and we'll get ourselves back into the game as quickly as possible. The desk referenced this game individually because of both of these drafts as a bit of a coin flip. With the way that these teams have been playing, with how one mistake has made the difference in Game 2 and like 1 or 2 mistakes in Game 1 has made all the difference, do you echo that mindset? Do you think this truly is a 50-50 split coming out of the draft at least?
Probably not, because I just don't think that you can understate how important the mental state is coming into this.
Good
and
point.
even if the Bolts come in with a better draft, the way that the Dragons have won these last 2 games, I think, does have to weigh on the mental of the Bolts, and that the Dragons should come in feeling very confident, and the Bolts might feel the weight of the situation a little bit more than you would if you had lost those games in other circumstances. So I think that it's on the Bolts to really reset and re-energize themselves and come in feeling fresh here for this Game 3, because I think the Dragons are in an advantage in a situation where the drafts are fairly close, which is where I think we are in this game.
Have you felt like this has been, obviously they're down 0-2. Have you been seeing the Bolts that you're used to seeing, the successful Bolts, over the last few weeks in this matchup so far today? I mean, look, they're a team that has been able to find some early pressure and convert that so well so far here in Season 8. Have you seen that team today? They've just made a couple mistakes that have cost them?
Yeah.
Or do you think this is an untraditional look at what has otherwise been a very successful Bolts team?
No, I think that's a good way to put it, that they've done some things really well. I don't think they've fallen into those exact same pitfalls that we've seen from them in the past. And that's kind of a bad thing in the sense that, it's new problems that might be arising and new mistakes that we haven't corrected recently. Yep. I think we've seen good play from the Bolts overall. I think that Berra's had some good moments, and Ven's had some really good moments. Lasbra had a really good start to Game 1.
Yep.
It's just that, Game 2 ended so quickly. It was 20 minutes. and again, it was one mistake by the Bolts. So if they can get back and just understand that, yes, it feels like a lot, and it is, to win 3 games in a row, but all you have to do right now is win Game 3. You can't win Games 3, 4, and 5 all at one time. You got to take it one at a time and not let that pressure of the moment try and weigh in on you.
And I don't want to cross any bridges before they've been built or even we've arrived at them. How concerned are you about the Dragons if they lose this game? Are they a team whose mental you're concerned about to a point where you're on the edge, you're in a 2-0 position, you can win the Phase 1 finals right here? Are you concerned about that mental flappability, or maybe it depends on how they lose if they lose?
Nope, doesn't matter. I'm not concerned about it at all, because if it were World's Finals, yes, I would say yes, that it's happened to them 2 years in a row. They've lost on this stage. They've won every playoff event last year. They've been here, done that. When it comes to this sort of stage, I wouldn't be too concerned about their mental, regardless of the outcome of this game.
No, the Jade Dragons, a team whose mental is hard to flap? I don't know if that's the way that saying goes, but I'm going to stick with it here. Back into Game 3 we go, and how important the jungle matchup has been throughout this set so far. Lasbra will pivot for the first time, same for Soccer. Back onto the Mercury. What do you want to see out of this Fenrir here in Game 3?
Gotta try and shadow the Merc, because that's a matchup where this is one of the first times I think that Sam's been on this pick that you think that Lasbra can actually try and match his early rotations and win the 1v1 pretty easily in this matchup. But Lasbra, has been really focused on getting Haddix ahead. Bolt's been playing heavy solo side during this set, and the Jade Dragons have done the opposite. So where is Lasbra going to be? Is he going to be playing duo side now in a matchup onto Danza, where Danza, I believe, the 3 will break the Brutalize, as it is a pseudo stealth. So that matchup doesn't feel particularly good if I had to guess for him. Ymir, definitely one that you don't necessarily want to be around all the time, because he's got so many ways to put you out of position all of a sudden. Ooh. And the Scylla's pretty difficult to gank as well.
This is something we've seen a couple times throughout this set, the junglers and solo laners looking for some pressure onto the blue buff. It's actually been the Bolts really driving pressure against Fino-K.
Yep.
Will elect not to go for the full-on invade this time, as Sanford Soccer has made his way on over to the right-hand side. So traditional blue buffs now. Nice double freeze from PBM on the left-hand side. That'll force Barracuda back beneath his Tier 1 tower, and some chunky autos into Awesome Jake there as well. Luckily with the Emoja, you have the ability to sustain up small engagements like that.
Man, it's just, when you think about this run that the Dragons have been on in these playoffs, hasn't it just been these two the whole week?
Feels that way, huh?
Where this duo lane just has dominated every matchup. I even in the losses to the Tartarus Titans, maybe there was one game where Cyclone got really ahead of Panda, and then that was a win condition for the Titans, but yesterday, it was just Panda and Mike really, really taking it to the Warriors, and they've done it so far here today, where Berra and Jake have been one of the premier duo lanes in the SPL since last year, where a lot of times they're the ones being aggressive, they're the ones playing on enemy purples, they're playing on that side of the map, and the way the Jade Dragons have selected their gods and the way that they've played has just told teams that they aren't welcome on this side of the map, and that's where they're being aggressive.
Well, early aggression in the mid lane here. Ult for ult out of the jungle, but it's Lasbra who takes way more of the damage there. Admire the mindset there from Sanford Soccer. Beads gets used by Lasbra as well. Bit of a lopsided trade then for the Dragons.
Absolutely a lopsided trade, and this is what Sam has done on this pick. You want to talk about someone who can set the pace. This Mercury has done it for the Jade Dragons, and being aggressive even when you know that that's not a kill opportunity necessarily, unless the bolts were to mess up. The instant ult in, know you're going to get something for it, and back up. Now, Hurry did use his ultimate as well, so it is 2 for 1 in that instance, but Hurwin's not using I'm a Monster for anything except for setup anyways, and now you've got a guy where that setup is going to work really well.
And so Lasbra and Sanford Soccer have shown a little love to the mid lane, but Sanford Soccer more aggressive in turning around some of that. So we'll have to see how Lasbra then plays the next 100 or so seconds. If that kind of slows things down for him, just chooses to rotate around, start to farm up some of this map here. That's not what you want. You want this Fenrir to be active early on in the game.
And for what it's worth, I think that we haven't really given enough credit over to Final K so far in this series, because he has absorbed pressure really well. That's not always something that's easy to do.
Whoa, it's a Rivers Rebuke, and it's a well-placed one on to Hurry Wind, and there's enough damage for Awesome Jake to grab first blood. Olympus Bolts, I think they've gotten first blood in all 3 games now.
Yeah.
This one goes on to Awesome Jake.
And that's all Jake, man. I mean, he pops Hurry back in with the Riptide, forces the Sentinel use, and then Hurry feels like he has to go through that vine, and those auto attacks delay his escape enough to allow Jake to catch up and barely catch him with that Rivers Rebuke. The follow-up damage coming from the rest of the guys, I don't even know if Jake needed it, because he had Hurry dead to rights.
Hey, but I'll take an assist for Lasbra and Venenu if I'm the Olympus Bolts. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Great skin on this Merlin, by the way. You had a hand in that by any chance?
Yeah, he's saying some funny stuff and all that kind of stuff, and I say funny stuff every once in a while, and that's the only comparison I'm willing to make.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Look, giving you a chance to props, but we're not going to take any props here. Quick pause before Game 3 recommences. So now it's 3 out of 3 first bloods for the Olympus Bolts.
Yep.
You've been off to a great start in 3 out of 3 games, and this one's clean.
Yep.
Remember, Game 2 you get first blood, but then you trade one back. Game 1 gets a little muddled there as well. This is a clean first blood and out for the Olympus Bolts. Goes on to Jake. The ability to play aggressive is something Awesome Jake needs, and we can see it here in the first blood clip.
Really, really clean from him, and that's what you want out of this Yemoja. And look, even though I'm saying it's more of a peel-oriented support, you're not diving as much as you would on Fafnir, you can still solo carries with Yemoja pretty well, and so it fits Jake's playstyle overall. And giving him that confidence early on a god that he doesn't play quite as much as things like that Fafnir, I think is a great start for the Bolts.
Agreed, and it's what we've needed from Awesome Jake in Games 1 and 2. Now we're getting a taste of it here in game number 3. So it's about converting now some of that early pressure for the Olympus Bolts into something more. And they've been able to do it in a couple of games. But at some point, look, if I'm a player in this situation, thank God I'm not, because my team would lose every single game in about
Unless
10
you had
minutes.
Ganesh.
Unless I had Ganesh, then we win every game. We're going to Worlds.
Yep.
3-0s.
MVP.
2-0s. MVPs.
Yep.
Right. They give me 2 rings just because.
Wow,
even though
you were
it's
that much
one,
of a difference maker. Right.
That much of a difference maker.
You're actually the world's first 3-time, even though you'd only won once.
You actually just give me 5 rings because I'm more impactful. Right. This is just me on Ganesh. Anyone else, they're kicking me out of the building, most likely. I do wonder, though, how the Bolts' mental is. We talked a bit about the Dragons. You go down 0-2 when what you feel like you've had a couple games where you have a lead.
Yeah.
Now you get it again. We'll see how the Bolts reply.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be in a pretty decent spot now because you've got this Yemoja with a lead. Maybe that stops Hurwin from being quite as aggressive on this Scylla on following up for Sam. I mean, the big cooldown that still matters is the Lasbra Purification Beads. And even though that might not result in a kill, it does slow down his capability to shadow Sam on these fights. Because if he shows up and Mike's there and you don't have beads, you're probably just dead on this Fenrir. Or the Mercury just turns and 3s you. You probably just die from that CC chain. So those are the sorts of things that really matter in terms of not necessarily getting a kill, but now Lasbra just had 2.5 minutes where he couldn't be aggressive. Now they're coming back up, so now he can try and be that aggressive Fenrir once again.
I appreciate you at home sticking with us. After another pause, and back into game we go one more time. It's going to be the Greater Scorpion, picked up for Panda Cat and PBM on the left, and a Greater Scorpion for Awesome Jake and Lasbra, taken over on the right. And with how much love I think we've given basically the rest of this map, it's so important between Haddix and Fino K to continue those strong performances. We've seen Haddix alone on this King Arthur pick take over games before. Been a quiet day for the solo. I think he's played well, don't get me wrong. but haven't had that carry performance. Hard pressed to have a carry performance like that up against someone like FineOK and the rest of the Jade Dragons. But team's backs against the wall here. It's time to step up.
Definitely, and Haddox definitely has looked good. I mean, this is his first really big playoff event this year. He is a rookie, but remember, he did play in those Worlds qualifications for Sanguine a couple years ago. So he does have some big game experience, and he played very well in those big games.
Ooh, it's a leap over the freeze from PBM, who has to use the beads here, and then a Rivers Rebuke follow-up from Awesome Jake and Venenu now on the board. And this one brought to you by Lasbra and Jake. And Venenu looking better off for it. Another pause rolls through, a Sanford Soccer right on the edge of what's looking like maybe a stun there from Awesome Jake. But now it's kind of a repeat play just somewhere else on the map.
Yep.
And we're already seeing the difference of what this type of support pick can make for Awesome Jake.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just so much more aggressive for Lasbra, and it enables him to be that initiator without maybe getting punished as much as he did whenever Jake was on the Fafnir. But that's where Lasbra being aggressive ends up working really well. That Fenrir pick instead of this Erlong Chen that we've seen from him, able to facilitate those picks a little bit more easily onto the support. You get Mike's speeds and ultimate anyways, so now he can't be quite as aggressive moving forward. And all of a sudden, your jungler starts to get a little bit of confidence. And that's been the key for the Bolts during this run, is that their mid 3v3 has looked a lot better. The Lasbra and Venenu have played with a lot more confidence and been playing at a higher level. Good start to this game 3.
And we saw Venenu on Merlin earlier on in this set, and hard to keep pace with Hurriwan's Giannis there in game 1, but was able to do some good damage throughout that game. So I still love this Merlin pick, I think, for Venenu, if you're able to play around the rest of your team the way that we know Venenu can. I want to look back towards the solo lane a little bit, though. The King Arthur for Haddox, we know a lot about that. I think Osiris for FineOK is also something we know a good bit about.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the type of pick, with the way the drafts are, FineOK can continue to absorb all of that pressure on a pick like this Osiris?
Yeah, Osiris is one of those picks that, of course, when he gets ahead, you think of those moments where he can just 1v4 and walk in with a massive tether and walk out and be A-OK. But even when behind, you can still end up absorbing a lot of cooldowns in these team fights. And he defends his blue buff pretty well. He fights in the 2v2 pretty well. And I think that Mercury Osiris might not be quite as strong in the early stages as Fenrir Arthur, but it's enough that if the Fenrir Arthur oversteps on a blue buff invade, or, you know, finds Yamoja in the jungle and all of a sudden Jake's in trouble, that's the type of pick that can be impactful. I've been impressed with the Osiris play, not just from FineOK, but from a lot of guys so far this weekend. I think Osiris is one of those sneaky good warriors right now. You know, all the discussion has been it's Arthur and Kukulkan, and then a massive drop before we hit any other warrior. But I think Osiris has looked equally impactful as those characters a lot of the time.
Right, it's usually been Osiris kind of next up, whether know, whether we think in the tier list Osiris is way down there. It's been Osiris kind of on the top of that next stack.
Agreed.
And look, you zoom out of this matchup a little bit between the Dragons and the Bolts. We love to talk about the drama and all that fed out of the last time these two teams have played. I think it's been a good showing, really, from both mid laners specifically. Obviously, exchanged nothing but pleasantries, and I mean that literally before this game kicked off. Hurriwan hasn't let that shake him at all. He's been playing fantastic here today. Haven't what the Tower Boy meme, whatever that is, haven't seen that
not
all that often here in this set. So I think for both of these teams, really, to kind of bear down, harness some of the good energy that comes from that, I think important and makes for what should be a good set if the Bolts can continue to play that they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more fun when there's a little bit more on the line than just the prize money
Game
and the
7,
standing.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should be how it is. Look, I just think that Hurry's really played at such a high level, and no matter the outcome of this game, if you get triple banned with the first 3 bans, you're doing something right. And so you've
immediate ammo.
Yeah, immediate ammo. That you're that terrified of his 3 gods in order to make it work. So I think that Hurry's played well up until this point in this set. But so has Ven. I don't think Ven's made a whole lot of mistakes and ends up putting him in a bad spot.
Whoa, some fun here over in the duo lane as a quiet 2-level lead has built up for PandaCat. Awesome Jake continuing his world tour. Can he do this to Hurriwan? Does not want to try. I'm a monster channeled.
Okay.
And Awesome Jake has done enough. He forced the ultimate out of Hurriwan, gets him down quite low. Remember, we went into that pause and right back out. Sanford Soccer maybe getting stunned there by Jake. And so this Yamoja pick, we talked about it in the pause there, but what a difference this has made here and given the Bolts some legs.
Yeah, Hurry, still is one of those gods that you got to be in rhythm on, and maybe getting him on this pick was a good call from the Bolts because he seems a little out of rhythm so far. On it, you thinks he's going to hit the root, which means he goes up into the ultimate. Then if he hits it, Sam might be able to get the kill, at least force the beads out from Jake. But now without that I'm a Monster, slightly more vulnerable for Hurry, though he's got 20% CDR, not too long until it comes back up.
A 1-level lead for Venenu then out of the mid lane. Not surprising given what we've just talked about here for the Scylla. Still scale potential and still steal potential, so that's going to be interesting. The Bolts have played pretty aggressively around the Pyromancers here this game, or in this series, excuse me. It's something you absolutely have to consider outside of a crazy steal like Sanford Soccer has with the Now You See Me. Truthfully, the I'm a Monster has to be something that this Bolts team considers when going for any of these objectives.
Definitely. And the Bolts do have good zoning tools now between the Arthur and the Emoja. Those are two gods that can create space for you on an objective pretty well. But certainly the I'm a Monster is going to cause you problems. And Sam still has that major look just in case it doesn't go super well for the Jade Dragons.
That's the real secure.
Yeah, that's the real secure that the Jade Dragons have in this game. The way that the Bolts are playing, I mean, Jake has been so far up. He's been in enemy back harpies. You can tell he's playing with a ton of confidence right now on this Yemoja, and maybe a little bit harder to punish than he was on that Fafnir potentially. Maybe the Bolts should try and just follow his lead and start to put some pressure on Sam's farm, because instead of trying to match his rotations, Sam has really been locked in on trying to farm and not spam ganking with that Sonic Boom like we know he usually does on this Mercury pick, and that's because he knows that his farm is at such jeopardy to both Jake and Lasbra invading.
And there was a blue invade just a moment ago that given that one on over to Haddock, so definitely a boon now to the Olympus Bolts. Gold Fury spawns, and Gold Fury started by the Jade Dragons. The Olympus Bolts are going to check in, but it's only Lasbra who's here. It's immediately reset as Barracuda's around the left-hand side here. It's a leap in from Lasbra, but an immediate ultimate from PBM, and then a kill for the Ymir as well. The rocket flies in, and it's caught onto Barracuda. It's the airstrike out and away. Sanford Soccer spins Venenu's head around, but it's not enough just yet.
Good wall coming from Mike as well, and now Jake doesn't have a lot of options, still pretty healthy, so he'll be able to limp away, but what a turnaround onto Lasbra. Jade Dragons inviting him to jump in and think that you'd be able to punish this Ymir, but a great ult from Mike gives him that CC immunity. Lasbra hesitates for just a little bit, and Hurry slams him with that crush damage. Then the Shards of Ice damage comes through, and Lasbra's already toast at that point. So just a great turnaround by the Jade Dragons. Even though they don't get the objective, love the idea.
I think something that's been interesting to follow, Aggro, is Merlin in different item metas has kind of had to find different ways to itemize. Charon's coin's been pretty popular. We've seen Chronos Pendant a couple of times. Venenu feeling like the Rod of Tahuti is the way to go here in Game 3.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because that isn't usually the call. Maybe he wants just that extra raw damage to try and win his trades up against the Mercury, would be my guess, because otherwise, I don't know.
Whoa, Lasbra takes more damage than he bargained for. Haddox is rotated over from solo, but Final K is here as well. The King Arthur continues to work in, but it's a wall from PBM that really slows this one down. Sikkim and Crush no good onto Venenu. You have to imagine that might have been a kill there. Hurrywin had his I'm a Monster. Venenu does not have beads. You got to position carefully for the next 75 or so seconds if you're Ven.
Yeah, a couple beads get traded there. Hurry loses his, but Lasbra the same boat on the other side. So which backliner, which character is going to get dove more effectively now with that 2-minute timer on their heads? Hurry has definitely got to worry about Haddox on this Arthur. This is a matchup where obviously the root feels really good against the Arthur, the root cripple in fact, but Haddox has beads now. Hurry, it's pretty easy for Haddox to just beads through that Sikkim and gun you down on the Arthur. Once that's down, you don't have a lot of self-peel options as a Scylla, and he can cover that Sentinel distance better than most other warriors can. Immediately, Haddox was able to force the beads from Hurwin there. Might be more of the same once this team fighting phase starts.
Yep, seen great pressure so far out of Haddox is opening up the door to some looks at the blue buff. One successful invade so far. So keep your eyes on that top right blue buff timer. We'll see if Lasbra and Haddox continue to try to combine for some pressure there. Left side of the map has largely been left alone here. That's given Panda Cat a 1-level lead over Barracuda. There was an assist in that little skirmish for Panda Cat over around that Gold Fury, but you can tell the Olympus Bolts call here is let's combine with Haddox and Lasbra and Awesome Jake here on the right and see if we can't strip some farm away.
I mean, Jake's even trying to steal Sam's speed, and he won't get it, but I don't think he's going to get punished for being that deep in the enemy jungle either, so doesn't really do too much.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained there for Awesome Jake. Things have slowed down for the Emoja. Granted, with how the game started, it was going to be very difficult for Awesome Jake to keep that pace going throughout everything here. There is a stun onto Jake here, and then a wall from PBM, and then an I'm a Monster
Nice
won't
juke.
connect. The Riptide is out for Awesome Jake, and he had to juke the last bit of damage there, and he's able to do so.
Really nice juke from Jake. He just puts her in a no-win position in that point, but certainly you'd hope that I'm a Monster connects a little bit better for Hurry next time around. Jake holding on to those purification beads awfully long at that point. I don't know, man, but I suppose so. He knew he had it under control.
Gold Fury now started up. I'm a Monster, not on the map right now, so that gives the Bolts enough confidence to start up the Gold Fury and finish off the Gold Fury without any drama on either side. That's going to give the Bolts about a 1,500 gold lead here, 14 minutes into the game. All has been quiet, but maybe no more. River's Rebuke won't catch out onto anyone. And that's what we've seen Jake use, is just catch out one person with that River's Rebuke and find that follow-up. Doesn't hit anyone, and the rest of the Bolts will back off.
I almost wonder if Mike's going to go Phantom with his second relic, because that ultimate is so good for Jake that it might honestly be worth his time. Hurry can get through it, sure. Osiris can get through it with the Lord of the Afterlife, of course, but Sam and Mike and PandaCat are all going to be pretty hard-pressed once that River's Rebuke comes out during the team fights. It would stop Mike from having Blink, but if he's not going Blink on Serket, he doesn't have to go Blink on anybody as far as I'm concerned, if you're willing to make that choice. So the Ymir might just be there for the walls. I think an upgraded Phantom would actually be sick here for Mike.
We'll keep our eyes on that Relic here, level 12. Just one level away for both Awesome Jake and PBM to grab that second active as this game rolls on. Feels like Mike has been able to hit the stuns that he's wanted to, kind of regardless of having that Blink or not. The walls have been there just the same for Awesome Jake as they have been for PBM. Wondered what direction Barracuda would look in his build here this game. Bit into the crit there in game number 2, then transitions over into a bit of tank shred later on. Looks like could be considering some crit in his build here. It is a blue buff invade for the Olympus Bolts. Gets dropped on down, and Fine OK will get this one picked up.
Definitely no third item Spectrals here for the Dragons up against the Jingwei, but probably not going to be too far behind once Barra finishes off this Rage. I think that is pretty likely to be the call for him, but maybe he won't go in more after that. Could just be that being his lone crit item and just relying on that, and then the explosive bolts can go into the chin size just like he did afterwards last game. But he went crit third in game 2 with that Wind Demon, now delays it a little bit.
Are you interested at all in the pathing of Sam for Soccer? Not pathing so much through the jungle, but gank selection from Sam for Soccer so far here this game. We're 16 minutes in. We haven't quite seen the same traditional tier 1 left ult on down the lane. Maybe it's harder to execute something like that onto the Jingwei.
It is.
But it's been a quiet game so far here from the Mercury. Did find an engage earlier on, stripped the beads away from Lasbro there in the mid lane. Haven't seen much from, I guess, either jungler over the last few minutes, though.
Yeah, I think that it's really mostly about the Yemoja for Jake and why that's really stopped Sam's aggression, because Yemoja, once you commit that Sonic Boom, you're in that moment, but he's looking in mid here for Ven. He might be able to find him.
Ven has to move his way over on towards the right. Lasper would have been there, so it would have had to be immediate follow-up from the Jade Dragons. Cursed Ankh, by the way, for PBM is the second active pickup there. So I guess you're kind of juggling two, right? How impactful is Awesome Jake's ultimate versus how impactful is some of the sustain that this Yemoja and the Stone of Gaia, things like that, can provide?
Yeah, I think I would have preferred the Phantom here for Mike. I mean, obviously that Ankh is going to be valuable, but maybe not as necessary as the Phantom could have ended up being. Not hating on the Ankh.
No?
I think it's fine.
There's value to it.
There's certainly value to it, but boy, I'm envisioning a lot of really good Rivers Rebukes coming through from Jake this game, and really making life difficult for Sam on these dives, for PandaCat once he commits with that rocket. Once you're in on these picks, you're in. And Yemoja's one of those really good gods at punishing you for overplaying your hand and overplaying your mobility right in front of her on her carries.
Yeah, and you're getting that sense kind of from both teams here, where the only difference in active selection across the board is a Sunder that's now been upgraded for Awesome Jake, and then the Ankh upgrade for PBM. But both solo laners got themselves a Blink. Everyone else in this game have Blink Aegis. And so you get the idea that once you're in there, you're kind of locked down. You're going to need these beads. If you're everyone, you're going to need the Aegis if you're any of the carries or the junglers so far now in this game. But I'm looking forward to what Jake can do here with this Sundering Spear. You pull someone back into you with that Riptide, you hit him with the Sunder. The rest of the team is there for follow-up. You got a quick kill.
Definitely have the option to just burst one of these frontliners. Final K included, even with all that damage mitigation.
Oh, in the back line, Awesome Jake has found 4 with the River's Rebuke. It's a leap in and stun from Lasbra. Hurrywin has to use the Sentinels to get on out, and somehow there are no kills here. There might be, though, on Venenu as Sanford Soccer's found the back line. Final K misses the axe, but he's got the damage. It's a big fight for the Jade Dragons, who've already got 3. Now Haddix has the chance to turn things around, but the Jade Dragons 1 kill away from the 19-minute DSI.
Haddix doing what he can, Beyblading through, but it's not enough to stop Panda Cat. 3-0-3 for him, and you can see him popping off in the player cam. Just a great ult from Jake, and it doesn't get much better than that. But that's kind of where Danza wants you, all grouped up, and he gets a big rocket, he gets a nice taunt, everything starts going pretty well for Panda Cat, and Sam also split that fight beautifully. Instead of sitting around and waiting for that play to develop, he instantly hits the sonic boom right down the area where Jake had laid it, and puts himself on top of Ven. And Ven all of a sudden can no longer put the damage onto Hurry and onto Panda Cat where they need it, but instead has to worry about this assassin right on top of him. And Sam played that really, really well. Made it very difficult for Ven to be effective in a team fight where he really should have been able to get a ton of damage off. Instead, he was on the run from Sam the entire time, lost the trade, lost his relics. Sam was able to get out temporarily until Haddix was able to come in and clean him up. But then Sam baits in Lasbra, Aegis is the entire Brutalize, puts Lasbra down to 1 HP. I think that Sam really turned that fight around alongside Mike's excellent ultimate.
There's been a bit of a shift in the air here in what could be the final game in the Phase 1 finals. The Jade Dragons pick up big-time kills to pull this game back in their favor.
And I don't know what happened to Barra in that fight, but he must have gotten one-shot by something because he came out of that fight with both relics. And even though Ven was zoned from that fight, Jake had everyone trapped. Surely someone should have been able to do a little bit more damage in that instance. Something tells me something bad happened to Barra that fight.
And now you wonder how aggressive the Jade Dragons are going to get around this Fire Giant. Pyromancer gets secured. Venenu's still over in the mid lane. Fire Giant started up by the Jade Dragons. This is an opportunity for maybe something to go on towards the Bolts. Instead, Haddix gets pushed on back. Stone of Gaia sustaining him up on the back end of this fight as Barracuda looked at by Final K. First kill, perfect target. Panda Cat down, and the Olympus Bolts have gotten a pick.
And Mike's in a bad spot. Still has that wall, and it stops the stun coming from Haddix, but it's not going to stop Lasbra.
Oh, it's a freeze on the back end, but it will not be enough. Venenu gets the kill on the PBM, and the Olympus Bolts not out of it yet. 2 down for the Dragons.
And that was just a really greedy call from the Dragons to go for fire, because Panda didn't have any relics. I know the Bolts were low on relics as well, and the game plan was to one-shot Haddix coming in, but Jake's River's Rebuke blocked Hurry's vision on the I'm a Monster, and so they couldn't complete the one-shot onto the Arthur.
Can the Olympus Bolts do this? Now you've got sustain from Awesome Jake. You've got a blink from Haddix over on towards Sanford Soccer. The Fire Giants at half HP. Hurrywin does not have I'm a Monster at the moment, but Lasbra considering it as he leaps in towards the Jade Dragons mid laner. Awesome Jake taking way too much damage here. Final K, Lord of the Afterlife, up down, has not found its target. Hurrywin looked at, but he will Sentinel away. Lasbra trying to leap back in, and the Brutalize through the Aegis will grab the kill as Sanford Soccer spins him around, finds the auto attack at the end of it. Awesome Jake's got to be careful here. 1-for-1 trade, but the Dragons have delayed the FG.
Yeah, they stopped the objective from going down, but Hurry loses both relics on the back end. That's going to make it difficult for him to step up, and now you look at the relic situation across the other way for the Bolts, and both Ven and Barra still looking awfully pristine in that category, but same can be said for Panda, and Panda's the strongest person on the map right now. Level 20, 5 items completed on the build already. Feel like he's the one that the Bolts have to continue to focus. They did so successfully there. He didn't have any relics. Lasbra had excellent target selection, was all over him. Didn't let Panda get away from him in that instance, but now that he has the Beads Aegis available, can the Bolts do it again?
And while that one was very, very close, I think Haddix, under that initial engagement, being able to stay alive, so important. Of course, King Arthur, very tanky. He's got the Stone of Gaia, Bulwark of Hope a little bit later on in that build. We'll keep Haddix in a position where he can do some of that. Even if you get immediately engaged on playing it properly with the rest of your team, we'll give you a second lease on life. There are some Spectral Armors flowing through. Still 3 now for the Jade Dragons. Talking about tankiness, it's the one big crit item here for Barracuda. Still enough to force out those Spectrals.
Yeah, I think it's the right call, because if you just get hit by a Stray and it's a Deathbringer crit from Jingwei, it changes the whole fight.
How's his crit luck?
It's look, pretty decent. Barra gets some pretty decent crit luck, I think. You end up in a pretty good spot. I think all ADCs have pretty good crit luck.
Right.
With the Explosive Bolts in addition, he's going to need another crit item. I think Wind Demon is definitely the right idea. But if you're going to invest all that gold into Deathbringer and then go straight into Chin Size, that feels a little bit awkward in my mind.
Right.
Certainly something that, Rage is a much cheaper investment, and then you don't get as punished in my opinion on the Spectrals on the other side.
Well, there are a couple Spectrals for the Olympus Bolts here as well. Definitely will play a role in mitigating down Sam for Soccer. Now, not that the wind has sucked out of anyone's sails, but the Dragons were controlling this game after that big deicide they had 4 or 5 minutes ago. The Olympus Bolts call the Dragons on an aggressive positioning around that FG, and now this game brings itself right on back towards the even. Barracuda has reached level 20, not full build like Panda Cat, but as close as it's been in recent memory. And this FG is going to be a big one. Both teams stepping up to contest.
And Mike has finished off that Compassion there in the support role. But it's worth noting that Compassion redirects damage to you in the form of magic damage. And Mike doesn't have that much magic defense. I mean, it's just that Thieves and the tank boots. Compassion gives you a decent amount as well of that magical protection, but doesn't have anything that screams really tanky. It's just a little bit of extra HP coming from that Magi's and that tiny bit of protections. Mike might be kind of squishy coming in this team fight.
Uh-oh, it's a wall and a stun onto Jake. Plenty of damage onto the Emoja, but plenty of disengage from the Emoja herself to get out and stay alive. Spear of Desolation, by the way, for awesome Jake. So you thought the Emoja was doing a little bit of damage. Might get a little bit worse if those targets are hit.
And it's worth noting that Hurry has not found a home with an I'm a Monster yet. It has not looked good for him, and these fights have still been close. If he's able to find a priority target, then the Jade Dragons might just wipe him.
Oni Fury secured, but is the kill onto Mike secured? Yes, it is, and it's Barracuda who deals the final blow. Lasbra into the Ragnarok. Panda Cat melting away, but there's some sustain on the back end. The Aegis wears off. I'm a Monster, no good from Hurrywind. But both of the solo laners getting involved in the killing department, but the carries better positioned now for the Olympus Bolts. Sam for Soccer melted through, and the Olympus Bolts grab 3.
And it's just Mike. You have to accept that Mike's dead in that instance. It's okay to trade him for that Oni Fury if that's the call going in. You kind of have to go into those objective fights saying, hey, this is what we're willing to lose. I'm going to go zone. Leave me if I get caught. And Mike gets caught by River's Rebuke, but instead of leaving him, the Jade Dragons step up, and they group up way too much. Panda and Hurry are pretty close together on that fight. Hurry bails and isn't able to really peel for Panda particularly well. Again, I'm a Monster doesn't land.
Just quickly.
And I think the Dragons just should have left Mike to the wolves.
Oh no, Hurrywind uses all of his actives at Benanu with a massive burst of damage. Puts him in the dirt. Now the FG down low. Final K potentially looking for a steal here, but the damage being dealt right on back towards him. Barracuda is low. Fire Giant not fully reset. Final K has to use the beads here. Fire Giant not stolen away, and the Olympus Bolt able to secure the big one. Final K is going to get damaged on down, and Haddix will put him down.
Yeah, just one after another. The Jade Dragons conveyor belt walks in and gets picked. And really, like we said during one of the pauses, getting 3 Gods banned away from you in the top end, it's already a win in and of itself. You're really looking at Hurry's likely 6th option on the list, because Tiamat was also banned, and you've got Merlin taken by Venenu, and we know that Hurry plays that as well. But he certainly struggled. Even though the damage is okay from Hurry, these ultimates have not really landed, and Panda has not been able to withstand this dive on this Danzaburo as well as you like. Remember, he got that triple kill on the Dia side. He was 3-0. Now he's 3-2-4. Has really struggled to stay alive because of this dive coming from the Fenrir and the Arthur on the other side. The Dragons just not on the same page on where these on how these objective fights are starting to happen. They've got to find a way to either let Mike do what he wants to do and get involved, or just let him step up in zone and then leave him for the Oni Fury. The fact that they fought afterwards really made this game much more difficult.
We are a ways off from hand-clapping, fist-pumping Panda Cat, aren't we, as the Olympus Bolts have dragged this game back. Now all 5 members of the Bolts have the FG. They're sieging down the left-hand side. Tier 1 has already fallen, and now all eyes on Tier 2 here. Jade Dragons, I think, smart not to risk the game on defending a Tier 2 tower here at this point. Barracuda surged back into this game as well. It is kin size on the end there for this Jingwei. Sam for Soccer, interesting positioning here. It is a Mercury, so plenty of disengage potential here from this one. Maybe just making the Bolts think twice about what direction you're pushing. You never know when a Sonic Boom could fly down from the other way.
Really smart. This stops the wave coming from mid lane. I mean, no one can stop him. He's going to be able to get his back off, and if they would have chased him, he just would have Sonic Boomed out. So that's the right call from Sam. It limits the offensive options here for the Bolts without putting him in a bad spot. And as you said, the Dragons aren't willing to die and lose the game over at Tier 2, and they needed relics to come back up for Panda Cat and Hurry. Hurry still has 30 seconds on the Aegis, 20 seconds for Final Case beads. Dragons should give this up if the Bolts really want to force the issue on it. They need to wait for these relics to come back up.
Been a very quiet game from Sanford Soccer here so far. Second to last on the damage charts, even behind Awesome Jake. All it takes is one, though. We're at a point now where this build for this Mercury feels good if you're able to operate it the way you want to. Sanford Soccer, you see him charging up the Sonic Boom there, but Jade Dragons, bit of a soft defense there. We'll give a little more gold over to the Olympus Bolts. It was lopsided towards the Dragons earlier on. Now you find yourself about 5,500 gold down if you're the Jade Dragons. The Olympus Bolts absolutely in the driver's seat here this game. Look at the golden XP charts and the big swings that have happened here in Game 3. Olympus Bolts knocking on the door, sending us to a Game 4.
I mean, this is a fight now for the Dragons around this next fire, maybe around this Primal Fury where this lead dissipated for the Dragons, that they have an opportunity because Sam got the beads from Lasbra, Haddix used Blink and beads in order to strip away the beads from Hurry on that Tier 2 on the right-hand side. Theoretically, Hurry should be able to play far enough back that the lack of beads doesn't hurt him as much as the lack of beads hurts Haddix on these dives, or just even a quick route. Sam for Soccer setting him up, a freeze from Mike, all of those, as long as Hurry's in position over a wall, could end up spelling death for the solo laner. If they can take Haddix out of these fights, it's going to make the Jade Dragons' job a lot easier.
It's a scary thought, that having to be what you have to do when Haddix is as tanky as he is. At this point, all of the little health ticks kind of look like one giant health bar all at once as the Primal Fury secured by the Olympus Bolts. Decent timing there on the Primal Fury. This is a team that can burn it so quickly. We talk about the steal and secure potential of the Jade Dragons. Now with the Primal Fury, the Olympus Bolts, with this Merlin and with Barracuda as well, and then of course the rest of the Olympus Bolts can do this FG quickly. So it's such a balance between the steal potential, the steal threat, not that the Dragons do it slowly by any means.
Sure.
But specifically in the mid lane, burn versus steal has got to be on the mind of both of these teams.
And no Frenzy for the Bolts this time around. You know, no Fafnir in order to help facilitate that. But Barra's gone with the Deathbringer, so if he just gets a couple crits on that Fire Giant, will do it pretty quickly. Certainly an option, but as you said, the Dragons are no slouches themselves. Sam has Serrated Edge now, so he's got a lot of pen and can really chew through objectives and of course, the enemy front line with the Serrated Edge. I think that this is there to help him win the 1v1 up against Lasbra. I think at this point, Sam should be very favored in that 1-on-1 engagement.
We talk about gold and XP and where we are. Is this game effectively even at this point?
Yeah, I don't think that it really matters. I mean, everyone is basically full build at this point. I don't foresee it making the huge difference.
It'll have to be the fights that make the difference. And right now, Sanford Soccer critting away onto Lasbra. The beads get used by the Mercury here, but that's big. Lasbra has to use the Ragnarok. Awesome Jake has used his ultimate here as well. It's an immediate, decent ultimate advantage now for the Dragons.
It is, but Sam uses the beads. I like the way Lasbra played that. He knows that he actually can't win the 1v1, but he can at least force Sam to think that he's trying, and then ends up using the Purification beads. I like the play.
Mid lane Tier 1 goes down. Over here by the FG, the other four members of both teams continuing to brawl out just a little bit. Haddix, a little bit worse for wear than anyone else on the Jade Dragons as Sanford Soccer continues to play this split push game. The minions starting to work in towards the Tier 2. It's going to be Lasbra who has to work back. What's happened to Mike here? Over around the FG, channeling the ultimate, but the kill has not come through yet for the Olympus Bolts. Over on the right, Fine OK poking his head in as well. Lasbra and Sanford Soccer continuing to battle out. That's going to force Venenu on to the left, but everyone stays alive.
He's looking for him, but Sam has the ultimate ready to go. Immunes it for that Ragnarok, and they trade ultimates this time around. As you said, I don't know what happened to Mike. He took a ton of damage on that front end, but Fine OK did not, and he was able to keep poking at Barracuda. That upgraded Sundering Axe ends up making a difference for him. As you ended up pointing out to me while I was talking, that Sunder on cooldown for Awesome Jake. Got to imagine that that's what made the huge difference there on Mike.
Pyromancer secured on the end of it by the Olympus Bolts. Can you feel this tension a little bit? Look, this game has been back and forth, the ups and downs of this game, all culminating now into an all-important fight around the FG. Awesome Jake is taken low. The River's Rebuke is up. and it is down, but Awesome Jake lives on.
Sam?
Final K, half HP. Sam for soccer around the backside, nearly grabs the kill. But Final K chasing him through. Barracuda uses the Aegis, but he's still in the fight. Fanenu on the killing spree, but Hurrywin trades out one.
Lasbra looking for Hurry, and he grabs him. No beads is a double for Ven.
And he wants to keep going here as the rest of the Jade Dragons work in with PBM. They're fighting into the Olympus Bolts right now. Haddix knocks up PBM on the backside of this fight.
What a
it's a double stun. Panda Cat melted through the Olympus Bolts. They'll get the deicide in 33 minutes.
What a fight for the Bolts, and it's all centered around Venenu and helping peel for Barracuda. Able to turn.
They want the FG.
I mean, Sam just absolutely annihilated Barra, but a good Aegis from Barracuda and Ven there to help peel for him. Forced the relics out from Sam. Sam not having beads mattered a lot because he couldn't get away quite on time. And the target selection from the Bolts was fantastic. Haddix does a phenomenal job on that front line, continuing to tank up a lot of damage from the Jade Dragons. That was the best fight for Hurrywin by a mile. He had a fantastic I'm a Monster that fight, and it still was not quite enough to take down Jake instantly. The fact that Jake survived for that amount of time baits Sam in and makes the fight that much better for the Bolts.
2 quick questions. Do you think the Bolts could have ended?
No.
And now we're seeing what my second question was going to be. Do you think they still can end, and the Bolts don't want to risk it here? They'll get the mid lane Phoenix, they'll go back, spend some gold, take a deep breath.
No, they make the right call. Enhanced Fire Giant on 5 members is a huge win. They've got a pretty decent relic situation, but Sam coming up, it's just a little bit too risky. They still had all 3 Phoenixes to go through. They had a tier 1 or tier 2 tower in mid. I think Enhanced Fire Giant is such a big buff. I think they make the right call. You're able to get a little bit more safely by going for that. But with the way that this team fight goes, I mean, the Dragons are a composition that have so much damage. They can swing a game even on a Phoenix defense. I'm not saying it's guaranteed with the EFG, but I think they make the right call.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, you got to want the Bolts to win this one if you're just a fan of exciting Smite, because the way that this set is now gone, and the Bolts with this never give up type attitude have put the Dragons on the back foot and a chance to just go one more game. I got Surf and Turf waiting at home, and I want this one to keep going on.
Wait, you got Surf and Turf?
Yeah,
Can I come over?
Sure,
I need some Surf and Turf in my life.
Yeah, but you got the Hawks.
Yeah, I got the Hawks game.
And
you guys
you
can
got
put
the
it on.
Backliners podcast.
Yeah, I got the pack. I can do it from your place.
There.
Yeah, I
have my setups at home, right? You
Perfect. Your dad got it all set up for me. You got the Ethernet wire.
I've
I'll
never
be
been
there.
more nervous in my entire life than my dad being like, "Yeah, I'm on your computer, by the way." I said, "Oh, really?"
No way you get punished for that. Yeah, just imagine me in that exact same seat. Yep. Yeah, I think that could go well.
Yeah, I think that definitely works. All right, I'll see you over at my house later. But if this set continues the way that Game 3 is gone, at least, that might not be for another couple hours. So you have to look towards the Phoenix defense against 5 members with the Enhanced Fire Giant. Do you think that this is a pretty cut and dry now game for the Olympus Bolts? Is this game simplified? You siege a Phoenix, you take the fight, you have enough of an advantage that you should win if you play it properly, and you just work into the Dragon's base.
It is simplified, but at the same time, I think it's also easier for the Dragons a little bit. It's pretty easy for Hurry to end up hitting a big root crush combo on these Phoenix defenses. It's easier to peel for Panda Cat, who again ended up getting left a little bit alone at the very end of that team fight. Can they control the space a little bit better? Because I think that the big advantage of the Bolts composition is that they spread you out pretty well. They're able to use River's Rebuke. Haddix creates a lot of space. And Lasbra, I mean, how many times in that fight did he come up and over a wall for a big stun? That's not happening as often as it would elsewhere in the jungle on a Phoenix defense. So I think the Dragons do have a fairly good defensive composition, but the Bolts certainly have the tools to end the game.
And we'll go right back into game here. 35 minutes in, the Olympus Bolts in the driver's seat. Fury spawning here shortly. This one will be an Oni Fury, so that'll help in the mid lane. Oni fire minions. We've seen the Bolts even just yesterday won with some Winions on their side, so something in the mid lane is going to have to be looked at, though. If you're the Jade Dragons, you're happy that it's the mid lane Phoenix, because you can just send somebody over to clear that, then quickly on over to left. Could be a bait type scenario here, but if I'm the Jade Dragons, no chance I'm poking my head out of base. No way, not for an Oni Fury. And so we're going to have to see what this Phoenix defense looks like. The damage has started to pile up a little bit for Sanford Soccer. A lot of that trading with Lasbra, building up. There were some great auto attacks there in that previous fight that have shot him up. But regardless of where the KDA is, 1, 3, and 5, now this Mercury is still in a position where you're late enough in this game, you've reached full build, maybe that's where a difference comes from, but it is a big, big uphill battle.
And Lasbro did end up buying a 3K defense pot on that last back. He's looking for Sam in mid right now.
Sam for Soccer and Lasbra brawling out could be a big difference here. Sam for Soccer feeling more confident now on this one. The auto attack's flying in. Brutalize has to get used.
Lasbra's in trouble.
Defensively, Lasbra is in trouble. That means the Bolts need to win this fight on the left. It's Panda Cat who's found by Haddix, and Haddix gets the opening kill. So the siege much more simplified for the Olympus Bolts on the left-hand side. PBM stunned through, and the King Arthur reigns supreme for the Olympus Bolts. Fadenu rampaging. It seems like the bucket's Lasbro wins the 1v1. Olympus Bolts likely to take us to game 4.
It's all up to Hurry and Fine, and they don't have a lot of damage on the Titan quite yet. Hurry, no ultimate, and now no beats.
And guess who's there? Haddix forcing him back into the fountain. Barracuda swinging away on the Fine. Okay, the book will close on game 3, and the Olympus Bolts move us to game number 4.
Man, Haddix just closes that gap onto that Danza. You got to find a way to get that guy in combat, and the fact that he's able to get right on top of him, Panda a little bit greedy with the purification beads, doesn't use them right away. That sets up time for Jake to get there, for Barra to get there, and he ends up getting CC chained and killed. Panda was just a complete non-factor in that last team fight, and he's been so important for this Dragons team. Bolts have come back. We got a series.
What an admirable vote of confidence, though, that this Bolts team has, where Panda Cat was 3-0-3 after that big Gold Fury fight.
Yep.
Totally understandable if you're scared of going up against that Danzuburo, but it was the opposite. The Bolts dove in harder onto Panda Cat that game and made him a non-factor, as you point out there, towards the end of game number 3. We're going one more right after this.
Never gave you nothing but a funky high five. I know we can't go back in time, but I wish I could rewind and get back all that money that I spent every nickel and dime. Cause you a lie. Oh, you a front. You gon' say anything as long as you get what you want. Went and got yourself a new man. It ain't even been a month. I feel sorry for your boo, cause he don't know what he signed up for. Do he? Ooh, yeah, I heard that you met him at the bar, Louis. Okay, don't try to do him like you tried to do me, baby. You a cold-blooded killer like Stu. Cause up close, baby, you a ghost. You a demon, and you should float. Get out the way, and just go, and just go, and just float. Float like a balloon, an apple, empty bottle, cork, styrofoam, and most dead bodies. You killing me, homicide. Look at your lying eyes. I should have been better laced, cause I failed too many times. If money the root of evil, and you call yourself a dime, you gotta be penny wise. You gotta be penny wise. Cause up close, baby, you a ghost. You a demon, and you should float. Get out the way, and just go, and just go, and just float.
On my own, no fixer. I'm gon' ball, no picker. That I8 doors, they live for. Talking on my back, go figure. Whole team eats from Splitter. Never was the one to go flicker. No face, no case, no picture. Full place, big stakes, my dinner. Flip that. Canal Street. Flip back. Last week. Old money. This week. New racks. Never buy none more. If I can't afford to gift wrap. Stunning in your foreign car. You keep riding rental tax. Heard you roll the other lean, we are not the same. Couple thousand in my pocket, this pocket chick. Rubber bands on my arm, this is not for play. I put 20 on the crib, but you cop a chain. I know they hated or love it. You know I love when they hate it. Last year was living basic. Haters on the other side. 3 up, read between the lines. Know I got some majors with me. Made it through some evil time. Late night on some demon time. Pour the Sprite, I need a line. I can't lock it, see the line. Freeze time. Brainstorm, you cannot swim with your chains on. I can see none with the lights off. Cap, you been the main one. Coolin' when I got my mains on. Show money, but those aren't the same ones. I been told you that it was game on. Been winning since I was on game 1. Go. Telling me how to live like you made me. Go dumb and I blame you made me. Money longer than a grown-up baby. Got crazy in a new Mercedes. Thinking that's 550. 5 seats, fit the kids in there. Prime for my dinner plate. Nike tech for the dinner wear. Flex up, never play it just up. Never gonna let up. Never ever set up. Play with my fam, get wet up. Go, won't let up. Never ever. Haters on the other side. 3 up, read between the lines. Know I got some haters with me. Made it through some evil time. Late night on some demon time. Pour the Sprite, I need a line. I can't lie, can't see the line. Freeze time.
I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy. It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still tryna fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on. Maybe put my hands on my head like the Macarena. They want you walking on board like Kima. Ain't give a F to you like John Cena. Putting blood on the brand new Beamer. Tryna earn 8 stripes like Adidas. You get cold when you ride with the heater. It'll turn you to a dog like a Keto. And expose to a cat like a cheetah. They smoke my partner like reefer. Dímelo porque yo no entiendo. Mi gente must really need Jesus. They shed real blood. I never seen the crypt and I believe it. It's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy.
Well, you saw it right there on your screen. Not only can you ride the Lightning, you can go support the Bolts in full. Shop.smiteproleague.com. Maybe get yourself some Bolts merch, or if you're a fan of the team in the lead, the Dragons as well. Of course, all of the teams there. You can see their jerseys, but there's more shirts, as well as something a little special going on right now, available in multiple sizes. The official SPL mouse pad. Look, guys, now even less than 8 hours, technically, as it ticked over right there for you to be able to get this. Maybe I'm doing my math wrong. It might be technically 9 hours. Either way, not a lot of time left to pick this one up. Limited edition. Again, shop.smiteproleague.com. Go get yours now while you still can. Of course, while you still can, it is kind of the motivation, I think, for both of these teams right now. Dragons get the win while you still can. Same thing for the Bolts. Keep moving forward. They pull one back in their favor, though, Taco. And admittedly, it is very close throughout the duration of it. But towards the end, you start to see the greatness, the lightning starting to strike, and really pull ahead.
For me, I think that the real game changer was just the Bolts having Lasborough on this fender. It was just creating so much space for Venenu to finally get a chance to farm up on that Merlin, and he was such a core member for a lot of those objective teamfight engagements. We also saw some great stuff out of Awesome Jake on the Emoja, often playing the sacrificial lamb for his team, sacrificial goat for his team, I should say, and Barracuda and Venenu, they just kind of did the thing. They made it to a relevant point of farm in the game, and once you get a Jingwei and Merlin fully farmed up and online, Gore, it's tough. It's tough to deal with that damage.
And there weren't a ton of fights where this King Arthur was able to come out and really run the show, and that towards the end he started living through the engagements a little bit more, which is more than PBM can say. Unfortunately, he was getting focused down a lot early on. We even got to see it a little bit after this engagement. Fire Giant goes the way of the Bolts, but the next time they start the siege, Lasbra and Sam get into that 1v1, and that's really where the big difference maker was finally made for them.
It also just seemed like there were a few instances where the Jade Dragons would just kind of get a little bit too far ahead of themselves, because Mike would actually look for great moments of initiation and setup, but the miscommunication that might have taken place, because we would see Mike setting up and then no one else is behind him. And it's kind of uncanny for the Dragons to not really look for that immediate follow-up off of their front line. So that's the reason why I'm just led to believe that might have just been a mild slip-up in the comms there, which is kind of just a given at times whenever you're dealing with so much pressure. And also, Sam did not get a chance to really do anything with this Mercury like we have seen him whenever he's gotten this pick in the past. And again, that's largely just credited to Lasbra. He was on Mercury camp duty every single time you saw Sam in the jungle, Sam in a lane, who was right there with him. Lasbra, the whole way through. I think Fenrir is probably going to be one of the more center focuses for this next drafting phase.
That's going to be the more interesting fact. You can see behind me the Dragons logo is there. I'm going to go ahead and spoil this one for you. That means they're going to be first pick in game number 4. And that opens up that conversation, this Fenrir being banned in games 1 and 2 by the Bolts, even though they were first pick. Last time around, they first pick it away. Do they have to ban it here, or are the Dragons going to be able to get it?
If the Jade Dragons don't opt to ban the Fenrir right away, Gore, then it's probably safe for the Bolts to assume that it might just be better for them to strip it away, even though they would have to forfeit using 3 direct bans against Hurrywin like we saw in game number 2. You have to remember, this is their tournament life on the line, and even though it feels good, I'm sure, to finally get one underneath your belt, if you want this to go to a 5-game series, you can't really afford to let a pick that's as flexible as Fenrir slip into the hands of the Jade Dragons.
Now here's a risky question for you. With Yamoja, now Serket being banned away by the Dragons here, Tiamat, Gilgamesh, Fenrir, like all of a sudden, it's one of those questions of you get one, you pick 2 if you're the Bolts, Tiamat being taken away by them, and so you're still making that trade. Is Gilgamesh someone, especially if he's still on the topic of conversation, that you pick over Fenrir? I don't know.
It's worth consideration, but ultimately I believe that the Jade Dragons would probably want to prioritize that Fenrir just because it's, again, extremely flexible with their entire team, and not only that, but Gilgamesh does tend to struggle against gods with those hard leap escapes because he doesn't really have as much lockdown potential as what he would probably want, and whether or not he's able to find successful dropkicks into the likes of a Fenrir won't really matter as much if we see that Fenrir pick go into the hands of Mike, or even if that Fenrir pick were to go into the hands of Sam or Fino. It just provides so many different draft options for the Jade Dragons, and it puts them in a strong position, I think, or to just counter draft the Bolts.
Well, the Bolts have to pick their poison in this case. They choose the Fenrir to take away. Now the Dragons have the option to lock in Gilgamesh first pick. He hasn't been available for a majority of this. They've been the ones banning him, though, and I think it's mainly because, again, of what we've seen. Like the Serket up there, it's to try and make sure that Lasbra can't run away.
Gilgamesh certainly a wise pickup here for the Jade Dragons. Have to remember, though, Gore, Giannis actually still up for grabs. Could possibly see that headed for Venenu. And it might even be a force pick here for Venenu, because I just can't imagine that the Bolts would feel very comfortable seeing Hurrywin on that Giannis yet again, because you have to remember, even though he was relatively quiet with it at the start in Game 1, it was only a matter of time, no pun intended, before that Giannis really started to take off. Hurrywin is simply just too proficient on that god. And if the Bolts allow the Jade Dragons to have an opportunity to take it, then they've got to bank everything on the all-in commit, and that's exactly what Guan Yu and Raijin can do.
Well, that Fafnir is still available, and I was curious if the Bolts were going to lock it in there, because they don't mind seeing Giannis. If Jake then goes for Ares, maybe gives a pick for PBM still available here. I guess it does decide everything. The bandana diff is what's the question. I saw a lot of the headbands coming up earlier. Panicat's taking it off. I mean, he was popping off with it on, so maybe that's going to become a big factor for him. But now it's this Pele, and hey, lo and behold, this Ares. It has been the Bolts' answer to this Giannis every time they've gone against it for every other team. Do you think it'll work here against the Dragons?
If Awesome Jake is able to be on point with those chains like we've seen him in the past whenever he gets this pick, then that could definitely pose some issues, not just for the Giannis here, Gore, but also for the Gilgamesh. A lot of his force that he's able to create in that early to mid game kind of depended on his ability to be able to actually just jump right into the action, really get up in your face style of play, and that's going to be a lot more difficult to do. Or even if you were to look for a blink initiation, well, then you always have your jump to escape, but not going to be the case if Jake is on point with those Ares chains. And no Fafnir ban still, however, from the Bolts. They actually opt to take away the Denzaburu and the Ratatoskr, so a little bit more concern, I think, in terms of trying to limit PandaCat and FinoK's team fight capabilities.
First time today that we're going to see PandaCat on anything that's not Danza, so this is going to be an interesting change-up for him. Jingwei stripped away from Bera as well, so he won't be able to be as safe or maybe as successful, depending, as last game.
This is where Ho Yi could definitely be a strong pick option here, though, for PandaCat, because if there's one thing that Ares can certainly struggle with, it's being slow to all hell, and that's exactly what Ho Yi can do. He brings a lot of AoE presence with those Suns in that ultimate, and not only that, but Raijin also fairly stationary in his ultimate. Same goes for Chiron. Guan Yu, really the only one so far out of this Bolt composition that could feasibly get away from that slow, and slows are exactly what Giannis and Pele want to work with because it just makes their damage a little bit more consistent to land. And Ho Yi is also not a bad option choice into the Guan Yu just because he has the leap away escape. If it is a Hachiman though, then I would probably anticipate a Fafnir to follow.
It's something that we haven't seen a whole ton. I think actually once this year, a lot last year, Hachiman was coming back and forth, but Zapman's been kind of the only guy that wants to lock him in. He's safe, to say the least, and he can play aggressive, but he hasn't really been hanging out with the rest of the hunters.
Look at my horse. My horse is amazing. That could be the choice here, but now on her, actually PandaCat going to take it to as aggressive of a laning phase as possible. And I do like the Honor just because he's still relatively strong pick option into the Chiron, and not only that, but the Desert Fury, CC immunity, those are all going to be critical aspects for trying to keep the carries alive, because PandaCat, we saw what happened to him last game. The Bolts took their chance to just throw all of their emphasis onto killing PandaCat, and it works, but Anher might be a little bit more difficult to lock down since he does have that capability to jump over walls, and like I said, the CC immunity on that Desert Fury is also going to be pretty crucial, I think, and the damage as well. Even though it was nerfed from that 70 to 65% scaling, it still hits pretty hard if you can land at least 6 of those spears.
Well, so far it has been very popular for a lot of these teams to wait until the very end to try and lock in their junglers. It's what Lasbra is going to be doing here as they're looking to wait for it. But like you said, like Anher coming through, a lot of this feels like it is oriented around trying to respond to the Ares. I'm going to be honest with you, though, that from what I've seen, I give Jake a lot of benefit of the doubts. When I see this pick, I think he's going to be successful. I put more onus on the Dragons to deal with it here than I do on to Jake to perform, because I'm pretty sure he's going to. And now I think this becomes even more important, because you already know that one of your pillars and Jake is going to be able to be there. They're going to lock in the Nemesis for Lasbra. How are you feeling about it?
This is a smart pickup for the Bolts because the pressure was already on Polar Bear Mike here, Gore, especially with that Fafnir, because it's such a telegraphed ultimate. Whenever he does decide to go into that dragon form, you know exactly when he's going to finish, and most supports are able to keep track of the timer as well for how long it'll take for him to come out of that ultimate. But I'm thinking more so about the fact that if he tries to dragon form to get away from the slows of a Nemesis in her Retribution, I believe, for the ultimate name, but either way, ultimate names aside, Nemesis ult into Fafnir ultimate, well, then you no longer have the CC cleanse from the immunity frames, and that could be the prime time for Awesome Jake or Haddix to look for some form of punish against that Fafnir with their respective ults.
And then you added Chiron, Raijin, two really big, long-range damage dealers at that. It feels like what was last game. I mean, Venenu, Bera felt pretty safe a lot of the time. They didn't have a lot of pressure on them. You factor this in, Raijin, Chiron feels just as safe, if not maybe even safer, since they can do some of that damage from a further distance.
It is a spooky amount of burst damage, though, from this Jade Dragon's composition. You would normally anticipate that the burst would be more in favor of the Nemesis because of her ultimate, but Giannis, through space and time, we've seen how accurate Hurry Wind is with those on top of the unstable Vortex. If Dragons are able to not necessarily pull ahead. They don't have to look for the early game advantage here, Gore. They can honestly look to just try and stalemate the laning phases. The only one that I would really expect to maybe try and establish a little bit more of that early game map pressure would be this Pele, would be the Fafnir as well. But it's really just going to come down to how well the Jade Dragons can position and how well they can utilize some of those portals from Horiwind to try and funnel themselves into that backline for the Bolts.
Now, we've seen how well they play around it. And again, game 1, when Horiwind gets it for what we thought was going to be potentially the only game he'd be able to play this Yanis, we were a little nervous about it. Early game didn't necessarily work out for him. Late game worked wonders for him. Now he's going right back to that pick. Will that be the end-all be-all? Will it be Horiwind, the guy to lead the Dragons forward? Will somebody else stand up for them to give them this final win? Or will the Bolts give us the surprise we need, push us to a game number 5? It all happens here in game 4.
Can win this one. On to game 5 we go, but we got a long and exciting one before we even consider that. Olympus Bolts, Jade Dragons, game number 4, kicking off now with Dulcin, Aggro, Doug, bringing you the action. Aggro, what a different look now we've had from previous games, right? So it feels like everyone has some sort of switch except for Horiwind, going back to the Giannis, and for Soccer, of course, we've already seen the Pele. But as far as just how these compositions are built, feels like a totally fresh game here in Game 4.
Agreed. The Bolts have really done a lot of CC chain sort of stuff. They're pretty light on hard CC in this game. You're really just looking at Haddix's stun and Venenu's pull in and taunt and fear on the taiko drums as your super hard CC in this game. So you don't have a lot of options when it comes to easily locking people down on the Jade Dragon side. But at the same time, I feel the same way about this Guan pick that I did in game 1, and that's that Jade Dragons are going to have a lot of trouble killing him until they get to pretty much full build for Panda Cat and Hurry, because they just don't have a lot of easy to confirm damage on top of this Guan Yu that can lock him down, that can CC him, that can really cause a big difference.
It's maybe a bit of a non-question here as a knockback on the Barracuda, who ticked over to level 2 first. We'll get some pressure onto the Jade Dragons duo lane. How much of this game, how much of the Bolt's success do you think hinges on Awesome Jake on this area? So the Buzz question, the Buzz statement is always, it's about either stripping the beads yourself or having someone else strip them away. There are 3 sets immediately for the Jade Dragons to get rid of. Outside of just beads burning, how much of this composition for the Bolts do you think revolves around this Ares and his ability to do what he does?
It's very important. I think Jake was the biggest difference maker in Game 3 for the Bolts compared to what they were doing Games 1 and Game 2. I mean, obviously, Lasbra had a much better performance as well. But overall, Jake on that Yamoja really neutralized a lot of the dive from the Jade Dragons, and that's not what Ares is going to do. It's going to be much more aggressive than defensive. But the Bolts are pretty good at that aspect of the game. They're pretty good at putting the pressure on and really forcing you to make some mistakes. Wonder how often Jake is going to be out of this lane and just trying to roam, put pressure onto Hurriwind. I tweeted it after Game 1, and the way I feel about Hurdy's Giannis, if you just give him enough shots with full build, he's gonna win you the game eventually. He's going to hit the backline eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And so the Bolts, in my mind, are kind of on a clock. You can't let Hurry get to full build and then stall out the game from there and just let him wait until he hits the game-winning shot. You've got to put some pressure on not just him, but the entirety of the Jade Dragons early, because the Dragons going late means that Hurry has enough chances to win it for him.
And I wonder if the Bolts felt similar pressure on Panda Cat's Danza, where enough chances in this set to see where they, he's so mitigated there towards the end of Game 3. Hold that thought. Awesome. Jake bursted down, and Panda Cat on a different look. It's the honor of this game that'll strike for first blood. Now Sanford Soccer chased down just a little bit. Lasbro blinks in immediately before the auto comes through. Sanford Soccer trades in kind, and it's a clean first blood for the Dragons.
And that's the worst case scenario for Jake, because I just don't understand the game plan of why he's there at all. You saw Barra on his purple. You saw Lasbro on right side mids. You saw Ven without lane pressure in mid. What's the game plan? And now Haddix is in trouble.
Haddix has to dash away. Final K wants some more.
Missed
Drop
it.
kick. No good, and Haddix will live on.
Oh, that feels bad, because the Dragons decided not to go for the invade, go for the kill instead, and Haddix just barely able to survive that onslaught from the Gilgamesh. But still, the pace certainly being set so far by the Jade Dragons. Sam's falling a little bit behind because that was a lot of time where he did not get any farm, but he's got his whole right side donut to go back to, so he should be able to catch up pretty quickly. And the Dragons now have a slight lead in that mid lane in particular, as Hurriwind was able to get his hands involved in that first blood.
Barracuda finds himself about a half level up over Panda Cat despite first blood. Panda Cat had to leave. Barracuda could hang out, farm up just a little bit more. Such an interesting and even a unique pick this On Her is, especially in the hands of a guy who likes to play aggressively like Panda Cat. You know what he can do on a Donzo, where the ultimate takes you right into the fray. This On Her feels like it's almost built to try to push some advantages there in the duo lane. So it's going to be a tall task for Barracuda to keep himself out of harm's way, given the way that the game has already started for Panda.
I mean, clearly the Dragons have not respected the Chiron super heavily with that Danza matchup, and now on the On Her, you can't jump onto him and knock him up for free anymore. He can just dash to cancel out that jump knock up, and that does feel pretty good in the 1v1, but I do wonder how much Panda is just going to be looking to play really aggressively anyways in order to set up for these kills on this left-hand side. The Dragons have been very adamant on playing around his side of the map. They've been leaving Final K a lot more to his own devices and letting him just come in and be the impact guy come team fight time. Would expect that to continue in this game, even though it isn't the Danza anymore, it is that On Her.
Solo Lane finds itself in a bit of a different matchup here as well from what we've seen so far this set. Final K, you know, the game felt like it was pushing against him, but he didn't have the impact that I think he wanted or would have wanted on the Osiris in game number 3. So here in game number 4, a recurring pick that we've seen, a lot of it out of the jungle, Solo Lane, pretty much the remainder outside of a support pick or two. This Gilgamesh, such a unique pick, and gives a guy like Final K real playmaking ability in some of these team fights.
It's a big team fighter, and that's what maybe the Dragons were lacking a little bit in the last game in comparison to that Yamoja on the other side. Having someone who can get in there and really make a difference.
Awesome Jake will use the ultimate through space and time, connects onto Jake. He's almost baited himself into it, but he survived for the time being. Over on the right-hand side, Taiko drums used by Venenu, and Lasbra turns around the kill onto Sam for Soccer. Hurriwind ultimately on the board as well. Both mid laners getting involved in some fighting here in the mid. That's all she wrote here for this one.
Yeah, Sam bites off a little bit too much there in the mid lane. Got the beads from Venenu, but with Lasbra and Ven's ultimates, no shot he ends up surviving that 2v1, but great patience coming from Mike.
Can Haddix do this? He's in the cavalry charge. The stun will not go through on the back end. You're putting yourself further in tower range here, but oh no! Is Haddix now in some danger? He'll dash away. Sam for Soccer does have Blink, could close the gap. PBM trying to buy some insurance on the backside of this fight as well. Lasbro will have the slow if need be. Could be a tower dive in the midst, but little sustain from Haddix keeps him within a healthy threshold.
Sam's got to be careful here. Still only level 5. Then doesn't find the Raiju bounce quite yet, but then slows him down.
Awesome. Jake blinks over the wall, and it's Sam for Soccer down for the second time this game, and now it's a clean pick on over to the Olympus Bolts. That chase just goes on. It was telegraphed at some point by the Dragons where they were looking, and the Olympus Bolts were able to respond.
And a lack of ward vision from the Dragons comes back to bite them. They don't know that rotation is coming from mid lane. They saw Vlasbra. Yeah, we can spring the trap for him. We know Haddix can't do too much to help him. But how about Venenu coming in on this Raijin, definitely providing a vast bulk of that damage, and CC with the slow. And that slows Sam down, and once Pele falls behind, you're not utility Pele. No one is utility Pele at any point. Your job is simple, and that's to just win a 1v1 in a team fight, and if you can really find a big play, maybe more than that. But if you're not able to win your assassin 1v1 as Pele, you're in kind of a bad spot, or successfully dive the back line. And Sam is now in a position where he's going to have to share some farm with Hurry in order to try and catch back up.
2 kills, 2 levels, maybe a level and a half down is Sam for Soccer. So we've seen this continued trend. Granted, that one brought to you by Haddix, overextending just a bit, gets out alive. But a lot of pressure over on the right-hand side of the map so far this set. Expected maybe see some Mercury ganks there on the left in game number 3. Not to be those. Both of these solo laners have had some eyes turned over on towards the right there. Aggressive positioning here from the Olympus Bolts in the Jade Dragon side of the jungle, but likely just some ward coverage. Awesome Jake's got to be careful, though. He's been the one giving the kills right back over to the Dragons, and the portal here will provide some damage, but Jake able to walk away with half of his health.
Yeah, it doesn't cost the Dragons a whole lot to get that poke damage, but Jake not too pressed about it because he has that health chalice either way. Seems like the plan right now is to just try and counter-engage for the Bolts. Jake has fallen a little bit behind, not too much, but if you can start to get leads on Ares, then you can be so aggressive because you just have kill threat on the enemy backline. With the position that he's in, the only person that he can really threaten would be Sam, and Sam is really just on super farm mode with where he is in the build in comparison to Lasbra. So without Sam being the pace setter, feel like the Dragons are going to be pretty content to just wait this one out and play nice and slowly until Sam's at a point where he can be impactful.
We wondered how Awesome Jake would have to play around either sets of beads that are down or trying to get those beads down on his own. All three, from my memory, have been up throughout a large part of this game here so far. So Awesome Jake hasn't had the ability maybe to play as aggressively. Has been hanging out in the mid lane a lot. And we talk about the Ares versus the Giannis and that type of matchup, you know, with the CC immunity, with the ultimate, with the beads here as well. Surprised to see this much emphasis early on over in the mid lane.
It just you're not trying to take Barracuda's farm because you know Panda is going to be looking for the 1v1, and to Bear's credit, he's really kept Panda at bay in this lane. Don't think that he's ever been on the front foot, but that's because that's the Jade Dragon's plan to let Panda be on the front foot. Bear is not going to be playing into that the vast majority of the time, so he's been playing back. So Jake doesn't really want to be over there, and that leaves basically just the mid lane for him to be at, and you don't want to let Lasbra fall behind either. And he's got both the kills early, does Lasbra, for the bolts. So this is in a pretty good position for them at this point. It is worth noting that one of the more recent changes in Nemesis was that disarms now break her retribution shield, and that matters up against this Fafnir because Mike, you know he's going to be looking to use that underhanded tactics to peel out on those auto-attack dives, and Nemesis isn't doing a whole lot if she's not auto-attacking you a lot of the time. So watch out for that little interaction as the team fights start to break out.
Well, an important note is that Sanford Soccer has closed what was a 2-level gap down to what likely is about 1.5. Lasbra fully 1 level ahead. I imagine solo laners wouldn't love it if support started soaking up their farm, right? I mean, you said the only option that's left is the mid lane, but maybe solo lane starts to see some love. Awesome Jake channels the ultimate, and there's the response in kind by Hurrywin. Still, everyone's got their beads here, but Awesome Jake forces the through space and time. Could be worth it.
Lasbra going to use his ultimate, but Jake misses the chain right away. They needed that damage, even though the CC might not have mattered.
Still some damage flowing through from Venenu, though. Awesome Jake, he's caught out here with all the Dragons looking at him. Venenu with the Taiko drums has feared away the Dragons, but has he done enough? Haddix leaps on through, grabs the heal, but now the Guan Yu in an awkward spot. He'll gallop away. Sanford Soccer gets himself onto the board. Venenu already uses Thunder Crash here. Pillar used, but the beads are there, and Pandacat with the last bit of damage gets the kill on the thing.
Yeah, just a bad overextension from Jake once again. I just don't like the game plan from the bolts there. Let's ult this full health Fafnir and kill him how exactly? You're just not going to have the damage. And even though Hurwind and Sam didn't have their ultimates, they're still plenty healthy. You know they're local. Final K is able to get there a little bit earlier than Haddix because it's his side of the map, and just a good rotation from both ADCs, but Panda gets there a little bit early and in the right position in order to punish Venenu. And that was with Mike missing a couple of stuns in that fight that they really could have had land and had that be a lot easier. Definitely just a bad fight decision by the Olympus Bolts. And the Dragons are not a team that you can pick bad fights against. Nope. You have to go basically, you got to bat 1,000 on your engagements selection if you want to have a shot.
What a difference a few minutes makes now. Venenu finds himself down in levels. Lasbra also down in levels after what was a great start for this Nemesis. Sanford Soccer is caught back up. And so we talk about giving Hurrywin chances in this game now. Level and a half lead on this Giannis. Chronos Pendant into Soul Gem. Tends to be what Hurrywin likes. We've talked about that build a little bit, but already finding some early impact. Second to highest on this player damage charts. The Jade Dragons, I think, right where they want to be, about 12.5 in.
And this is what makes a team like them difficult to pick and ban against, is that as a best of 5 goes on, these target bans that you're going for end up needing to be changed based on position between first pick and second pick. Remember, this was the first game, if I'm remembering correctly, that the Dragons were in the first pick position. That's going to change how the picks and bans go. And so you end up having to let something through, and right now Hurry's making a pick.
Gold Fury started and finished by the Jade Dragons, and there's no reply from the Olympus Bolts. That's going to expand this lead to right around, just shy of 3,000. Bolts have been in this position, and in Game 4 they were able to turn it around. It wasn't maybe this big of a lead for the Jade Dragons, but it was pretty close. If you can turn around a big Deicide, you definitely have a chance with a 3K differential over here. But the pace of this game has completely shifted on towards the Jade Dragons. Awesome Jake has had a tough go of things early on here. 0-3 on this Ares, just hasn't quite found that value just yet. That's going to have to be the big turnaround.
And again, as you've said, who's putting pressure on these beads for the Jade Dragons? Is this Ares going to get better whenever hi-rez joins the fight? It's possible that the cavalry charge can be the pressure on the beads that the bolts need, but otherwise I just don't really see it from the bolts composition. I feel like Jake has really been left to make his own plays on this Ares, and that's just not really where you want to be on a pick like this.
Now when the game has started the way it has, right? Now you're like, man, every time I've gone in and tried to do something, it feels like I've been punished for it. He's got 3 of the 4 deaths. Now Jake trying to follow up onto Lasbra's engage. Sanford Soccer eats the ultimate, but just kind of walks on away from the Ares.
And it's because of that winged blade pickup from Sam. Lasbra didn't press tab, didn't check the build path on where Sam was going to go. It was an ultimate into speeding up the Pele, who then could speed herself up even more. That's not the position that you can really make a chase happen.
Oh man, awesome Jake now chain CC'd on through. He'll use the ultimate, but Hurrywin with the snipe will knock him right back down to earth. Now Barracuda being looked at by 4 members of the Jade Dragons. Safe enough with the gallop on away, and it has been awesome Jake on cooldown. That's where the Dragons' eyes are.
And why wouldn't they be? Because Jake keeps putting himself in bad positions. But how about that play from Panda?
Oh, Sanford Soccer blinks in, and it's Barracuda who's being looked at. Bye-bye health bar. Hurrywin puts Barracuda down once more. Vananu with the Tycho drums could make things interesting here. Beads used by Hurrywin. hi-rez gallops through after the blink. Aegis is there, but won't buy enough time, and Vananu follows up with a kill.
Yeah, Hurry just on the wrong side there. Can't portal into the jungle from that position. Should probably be hugging the other side wall and gets punished for it by a good initiation from hi-rez and Ven doing some good damage, keeping him there as well with the Tycho drums. But overall, still feel like all the momentum is on the Bolt side. But now, Hurry has no relics for a pretty good amount of time. Used them both in that instance and still ends up dying. Maybe that at least puts a halt on the Jade Dragons being aggressive and lets the Bolts get a breather, spend some time farming a little bit, because this left side of the map, particularly Barracuda, I should say, really needs it, as he's now down 2 levels to Panda Cat, who just continues to jump in and make these plays happen. I mean, that last pick onto Jake starts because Panda's just on tower line, daring someone to come and fight him. They're thinking about setting up a dive. That pulls Jake over, and instead of walking around and trying to do it that way, Panda's up and over the wall and instantly on the guy that Barracuda can't help with the cleanse. He's not in range in order to make it happen. And this Jade Dragons game plan of playing around the duo side has really been working.
You know what's maybe more terrifying than the gold differential, the level and XP separation? It's the fact that PBM has gone Thebes into Divine Ruin.
Yeah.
Because the last time I saw PBM do this, which was Thebes into a damaging item on this Fafnir, it was because the game was in a state like this where he could build that way because everything was coming up Jade Dragons, and I think that's an indicator of where his confidence lies.
Very high, but also that they know that they're going to be hard-pressed to get enough anti-heal to deal with this Guan Yu, and so Hurrywin can't really build Divine and have it be effective, so it's kind of left to Mike as the only guy who can build it.
Mike's going to walk in here towards the Pyromancer. It's a stun onto Awesome Jake through space and time. No good from Hurrywin. Frenzy gets used here. Sam for Soccer walks on in. Another retribution from Lasbar onto Sam, who just speeds himself away. Now the Jade Dragons thanking the Olympus Bolts for the leash onto the Pyromancer. This is a massive fight. The Olympus Bolts, you got to be careful here. The Jade Dragons win a big one. This game feeling difficult.
Got to keep Jake in combat. Hurry has no ult now and no relics still, so Jake's ultimate is a guaranteed kill onto Hurry.
Oh, it's a stun onto hi-rez instead. Awesome Jake blinks through. He's got 4 with the chains. Only 1 gets pulled back in, but it's Hurrywin. That's a great target. Vananu with the opening kill, but then there's a dive in onto the back line as well, and the Raijin Thunder crashes away. Lasbrook closes the gap, but not before PBM can finish off some of the damage. Panda Cat leaps in aggressively.
My goodness.
Can he get it done?
No
He's got
way!
trouble. There's a stun in onto hi-rez as well. Panda Cat burning away to Awesome Jake. Final K and PBM the last 2, and an Awesome Jake will make the DSI.
He's going to try and get away, maybe even get the kill on Define. Chains could get the job done, and he gets 1 on Define, but I don't think that's going to be enough.
No, it's a drop kick against the wall. The still ticking down, but the up-down from Fino makes the DSI, and Awesome Jake in the dirt for 38 more seconds. All things considered, aggro Could have been a lot worse for the Olympus Bolts. Jade Dragons still, though, big D aside, 2 left alive.
Man, Panda Cat saves that whole fight.
He does, doesn't he?
And by my estimation, I just am baffled at the decision-making from the Dragons that who cares about this Pyromancer that much? It doesn't matter, and you have to know, and Hurry's got to be the one saying, hey guys, I can't be here. I know I'm dead to Jake if he blinks in. But they just let it happen anyways, and they really don't get punished for it well enough. The Bolts didn't instantly dump all the damage into Hurry. It took him a little bit too long to die. He should have been insta-killed on that play. But Panda jumping in the midst of 4 and dealing that much damage was a psycho, just a psychopath play from Panda Cat. And it works out perfectly. My man's been practicing jumping into 4 and ranked for years now. And it's clearly paying off.
Well, that was the threat of this on her pick. We wondered, you give an aggressive guy an aggressive pick, and that's what you get here. Now Panda Cat 4-1-4, 2 levels up over Barracuda, and well underway into his build. Barracuda looks like going into Titan's Bane here shortly after the chins. Panda Cat definitely big advantage there in that Hunter matchup, but you gotta respect the signs of life now from the Olympus Bolts, and I kind of set that fight up as if the Bolts just get swept here, that's the type of lead that the Dragons likely don't fumble. So they've kept things respectable. Plus or minus hasn't really changed all that much, at least in the gold department.
Yeah, but what fight is going to go better for Jake than that one?
Yeah, right, nothing. Right?
Nothing. Right, that's the best ult Jake's going to have. That's the best fight Jake can have, possibly, in this game. I got to imagine. And you still don't clean it. For the Bolts, and that scares me if I'm on their side, because when's the next time you're going to be able to pull a backliner with no relics, no ult, and be able to insta-kill him that easily?
Next time, for sure.
Yeah, next time for sure. I mean, I guess the plan now is focus out the on her and try and have him be the priority target.
Right.
And then let Checks Notes, the world's best Giannis player, free cast. Oh, that doesn't seem good.
Yeah, Hurrywan's got the Staff of Mirrodin now, so the penetration joining that build a little bit. So the burst damage, if it wasn't enough, getting close to being enough now for Hurrywan, who has both actives up and ready to go. All 4 sets of beads ready for the Jade Dragons here as well. But healthy in the relic department as well are the Olympus Bolts.
And check out the net worth charts in the bottom left. Normally we don't keep them up quite this late, but it's noteworthy to me that Lasbra got both kills early.
Yep.
Was 2-0.
Yep.
Was really should have been in a position to push the pace, and now he's the least farmed in the entire game. It's not going to be easy for him to keep this going in this game. He's got to spend some time farming now, and he's going to get close. And it only takes another item or so for him to be in pretty prime position in order to make plays in these fights. But I don't know. He's got to find a way to be able to handle Panda on those dives. It's got to be on Lasbra to get on top of him.
What do we think here? Upgraded shell now for Awesome Jake. We've talked a little bit about it. Obviously doesn't give you the block stacks. Mitigations, though,
still good.
Always going to be feeling good.
Still good against Pele. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Just go, hey, good luck with that one, and just kind of turn around? Yeah, that's not really the call. Maybe you could go Sunder and try and just get her killed, but I think I like the upgraded shell in this moment.
Now Awesome Jake will have to try to compound that advantage, but the Jade Dragons playing aggressively. And rightfully so. They've got a lead in this game that the Olympus Bolts are going to have to fight back into. Venenu's been looking good on this Raijin, all things considered. 2-2-3, has the Soul Reaver on the back end of the Soul Gem. So if not respected, that's a route back into this game for the Olympus Bolts. Jade Dragons uninterested in the FG at the moment as the Tier 1 tower in mid has taken a decent bit of damage here. Polar Bear Mike walking on in, grabs the stun onto Haddix, immediately followed up by a pillar. Hey, 3-man chain for Awesome Jake. 2 sets of beads now down for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, but now he's left in no man's land and in trouble.
And he's getting some of those chains out, but he's taking way too much damage in return. It's a leap away from Final K, and that tells me it was Tier 1 and done for a minute for the Dragons.
Hurwin charging it up. It doesn't land this time.
No, right on through as Hurwin will have to walk right back on towards the right. You got to be careful here if you're overstaying on this Giannis. And maybe you've done your job if you're Awesome Jake. You exchange Blink, you get 2 sets of beads, but it's Final K and Sam for soccer. You like it onto Sam. Final K on this Gilgamesh. Maybe not as great as getting him off of Hurrywind or Panda Cat, but still a win.
Yeah, still a win. I mean, the Bolts, that's what the Ares has to do at this position. And he has Relic Dagger, so Blink's up in 55. Ultimate should be on roughly that same timer. You've got a pretty big window where the enemy purification beads are going to be down.
Yep.
If you're looking at the other side. Can they actually capitalize on it, though? Because the Dragons have done a pretty good job of taking the foot off the gas whenever they don't have these relics. We saw it Maybe not for Whirlwind, but after that big fight, Panda didn't have relics. Dragons hit the brakes, slowed it down, waited until he had them, and then as soon as he had them, they grouped up and tried to push down that tier 1 in mid. Certainly not exactly what they wanted, just getting the tier 1, but you see how willing they are to play around those timers. I'd anticipate for the next 79 seconds, Dragons are on chill mode.
Been an interesting ebb and flow out of the mid lane as well, where Hurrywind felt in control earlier on in this game. Now Venenu finds himself half a level ahead. And so earlier, just before that big fight broke out, I wondered how pivotal this Raijin might be as the game goes on. I think very is a pretty easy answer. But the fact that Venenu's been able to keep some pace here with Hurrywind, important, awesome. Jake blinks on through. He's found Fine-OK and Sam for Soccer, the 2 targets without beads, but now he's left alone. A drop kick puts Jake back in the back line with the rest of the Jade Dragons. The collapse is in, and Haddix now alone in here as well, but the Jade Dragons diving forward. They've got some damage onto Jake. Through space and time from Hurrywind, who takes the portal, but he has to Aegis and turn tail back to safety. Fine-OK follows up. Barracuda has found the opening kill for the Bolts.
But Sam ended up going right into traffic. Now Panda still no beads, but gonna have to jump away.
Well, look at the jumps back in. Now Haddix taking massive damage from the Jade Dragons. The pillars have been aggressive from PandaCat, forcing these jumps defensively from the Olympus Bolts. That 1-2 leap from Fine-OK and PBM is kind of terrifying, isn't it? You get a Fafnir followed up by a Gilgamesh immediately in your face, but the Olympus Bolts able to keep things even. They lose Jake, but the Dragons lose Sam.
Gold Fury down to about half, and the Dragons probably not super invested in grabbing this at the cost of a potential team fight because Hurry's in a similar position. No relics, no ultimate. Definitely the right call to play this one slow.
We're going to have to watch out for a steal here from the Jade Dragons. We've seen a Hammer steal away a Fury once or twice, though not often you get to see it done. Gold Fury gets reset. Both teams step back, take a deep breath. The gold lead doesn't shift all that wide one way or another here. Aggro still hovering right around 4-5K in the lead for the Jade Dragons. XP starting to matter a little bit less. We're starting to reach that level 19, level 20 mark. Everyone from the Bolts at worst one level ahead, I guess, actually. Everyone else is level 20 here in this game, so XP not really mattering here in this one. It's all about the gold.
No, not too much, but that was a good engage by Jake. You know, I've been pretty critical of the Ares pick overall, but he does his job twice in a row. Got 2 pulls, but the rest of the Bolts just not close enough in order to follow up, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. It's not who you pull, but who you get killed off the pull, and certainly that did not happen in that team fight whatsoever. But I don't know if Mike Sunder missed or if that was with Sunder, but it's taking them too long to kill Jake. Now, it's going to get better, not worse from this position of You're the Dragons, because Hurry does not have a whole lot of pen quite yet, still just 10%. He's working towards an Obsidian Shard. He's going to start doing more damage to Jake, and like I said earlier, these through space and times aren't landing quite yet. It's just a matter of when. It's going to happen that he hits a big one. So the Bolts, every time they escape, I feel like it's just ticking one. You know, it's the doomsday clock of the through space and time, and we're getting closer and closer to 0 hour.
Yeah, you're hoping the Olympus Bolts are hanging out around 11 p.m. and not 11:59 and 59 seconds here. This FG is going to be a big difference maker. Gold Fury over on the other side, though. The Bolts, of course, would love to grab that one. Catch up a little bit in the builds here, but definitely nothing worth dying over. This game is starting to simplify just a little bit. The Bolts have kept themselves relevant enough that this Fire Giant becomes quite interesting here. There's a period of time where Hurrywind's beads were down, PandaCat's beads were down. Olympus Bolts could have forced the issue in a moment like that, but electing everyone to regroup, they're going to take their chances in what likely will be a team fight around the FG.
So Sam decides he doesn't want to upgrade the starter and go for the Protector. Instead, going to work towards probably a Magi's, if I had to guess, either Magi's or a I'm losing it, Dave. Mantle. That's
Mantle
what I'm
of Discord.
Mantle of Discord. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the help there.
Oh, it really swooped in.
Yeah, you really did. Right at the right
your
moment.
mind isn't an enigma, and I can't read it, right? I mean, there's too much. If I even
what
attempted,
is going on up there?
If I even attempted, I'd simply crumble into despair. But the Jade Dragons starting up the FG here, a bit more aggressive in their positioning in the back line. It's Fine-OK with Barracuda through space and time, nearly connects onto the Chiron, but now Hurrywind's in a bad spot. He'll portal away and has to back off. Venenu sends Taiko drums, but only connecting onto PBM. Hurrywind uses the beads yet again. Awesome Jake has got Fine-OK's and Sanford Soccer's beads down.
And that's a good disengage coming from the Bolts. They're able to keep Barracuda safe. You know that Hurry's hunting them with that through space and time, and he's able to squeak by. but it's not going to take him long to reset and come back from base, and the Bolts are down a lot of ults.
Watch for Sam on the right-hand side. Jake gets stunned up against the pillar. Fire Giant looked at, but then disengaged from by the Olympus Bolts. Only Barracuda has his ultimate now. Has beads. Venenu has both. But Panda Cat also has both actives now in this game. So for the next 2 minutes or so, the Jade Dragons will be in an awkward bead spot where only Panda Cat will have his. Awesome Jake will have his blink up in about half that time. And as we've seen the Dragons do, we imagine then for the next 100 or so seconds they'll play defensively around this FG, but could be an opportunity for the Bolts to force the issue.
Very well could be. I mean, Jake's been pretty good about getting in on those timers up until this point. Looks like this is still... is that a... Yeah, that is a Jake Ward, so they know this is going on.
Yeah, Polar Bear Mike transforms here. No frenzy on this FG. If you're the Bolts, maybe you just back away. You wait for PBM to de-transform here in this fight. The Olympus Bolts start to work forward. PBM has found Haddix. Burning away is a little bit of damage. Haddix eats the stun. Some shielding is through thanks to the shell. Final K in on the follow-up. The ultimate is down.
That time.
Space and time connects over onto Haddix. Final K's found the first. And it's Venenu who's eating the damage.
And Sam's going in, baby. He's eating dinner tonight. That's one, and Barracuda's going to fall as well. The Bolts might be falling off Olympus.
Awesome. Jake pulls a few back in, but it's a double kill for Sam for Soccer. It's Lasbra against the world for 50 seconds, and it looks like the Jade Dragons will take their chances in the mid.
They might be trying to go for the end. Now, they don't have a wave, and Lasbra does have ult, but who does he kill? The backline all has relics.
Yeah, I don't know. This feels good if you're the Jade Dragons. It's a kick back onto Lasbra. 35 seconds on Barracuda. 25 seconds for Venenu. The health bars middle of the road now for the Jade Dragons.
They're
Lasbra's going to have to go massive. The Titan turns its eyes. Frenzy gets used here for PBM. Look at the Titan. The health is melting, and the Jade Dragons make no mistake. They'll take the Phase 1 finals.
And it does eventually hit midnight for that doomsday clock. Giannis Helt hits onto the backline. Venenu gets one-tapped, and that's it. And that's just all it takes there for the Jade Dragons to be able to pull that one out. Hurwind makes the difference. He really stepped up this whole set. And Final K creates that space, pulls everyone into the same area. Mike pulls everyone into the same area. And the Jade Dragons able to capitalize.
Bolts showed some life there in game number 4. And it's what we expected. It's what we hoped we would see from this Olympus Bolts team. But the way the Dragons played this weekend just kind of felt like they wouldn't be denied.
I mean, this team... We know that they've got all the talent in the world. You know, everyone coming into this season, all our pre-player interviews, everything like that, everyone goes, yeah, everyone's fighting for like 2 through 4, but the Dragons should probably be number 1. It's because of performances like this, man. I mean, they just have so many guys who can do it on any given day. Panda, I think, has been their standout player during this weekend, but Hurwind really stepped up today, really elevated his level of play. Fine played fantastic on that Gilgamesh. Mike, Sam, I mean, they're the team right now. They're the team to beat.
Felt like destiny at some point here for this Jade Dragons team. Congrats to the Dragon, your Phase 1 champions. We'll take a break, and the desk will wrap up.
I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul. On the road, I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul. On the road,
I can't sit still for a minute. I'm so dead set on indifference. Keep it Charlie, stay down with them Dickens. Let's get around like it's the 80s, right? Round, let's keep spinning. Let's keep playing these games that we don't want to finish. And I'm sorry if that sounds a bit bitter, but I am to the core. You want the whole damn thing, then you asking for more. You want that old jive swing, you take up all of the floor. I'm fine with standing at the edge of the door. You be the life of the party. I blend in with the core. You drink it all the Bacardi. Till the bottles no more. Let's take it back for this started. You want the love, I don't got it. Got my soul on the road. You screaming stay. Baby, please don't go. Don't think it's in me to listen to foe. It's so different with distance we roam into zones where nothing get hurt anymore. I just wish I was home when I step through front door, but instead I'm alone and completely unsure. And even though you're screaming out with the best of intentions, I don't get it. Why do you always gotta ask me to stay? Why you always gotta go? Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road. Say, why you always gotta go? Playing house, this ain't a home with your soul on the road. See, I've been lost in my thoughts, and my thoughts they too scared to usher off. Sorry, Mom, I just thought you were my world. Now you're not. And I'm just sitting, smoking, sloping in a daze, cause my days ain't been the same since I drove here away. I remember the way you wrote letters in blue ink. You and me was in love. Think about what your crew think. I know your moms probably think I'm a bastard. Your pops probably wanna beat my to death and take a in my casket. But I got sick of fighting, bickering, fussing over nothing, cussing. Instead of watching the death of discussions that we once had, days that we once spent in the backseat of our cars, reading poets at sunset. It's funny how love can fall out the foreground, get pushed into the back of your mind. We used to twist a spliff and laugh and relax. Now you crying, and I'm trying to find the reasons. So I ask, does forever ever happen, or is it always fade to black? I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road. I can't stay. No, I always gotta go. Playing house, this ain't a home with my soul on the road.
How you gon' lie when you look me in my eyes and you show me your facade? Show me your facade. How you gon' lie when you look me in my eyes and you show me your facade? Show me your facade. You a lie. You a front. You say anything long as you get what you want. Tryna play me like a fool. Homie, I am not a clown. It ain't nothing but a game, cause all you do is mess around. Now I'm on the verge of a meltdown. 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 I should've known when I met her back at Midtown, at Dogwood, when I was going through a rough patch, but it's all good. I even told about the dark times I had in childhood when we was driving off of I-10 in Kirkwood. Now all that time I never get it back. You wanted that. Used to hate when I didn't wanna hang. I noticed that. Used to talking about your ex Jake with your next jack. Used to messing with them white boys. Now she went black. Wait a minute. Guess you went and got yourself a real life. Got yourself some booty shots and live full up. You just wanna make a rapper beat like Dilla. You ain't the nice radiator eyes. Cause up close, baby, you a ghost. You a demon, and you should float. Get out the way, and just go. And just go, and just float, float, float. How you gonna lie when you looking in my eyes and you say you down for the cause, but you really here for the ride? You ain't really feeding no sheep. You're a K9 in disguise. Shoulda never gave you nothing but a funky high five. I know we can't go back in time, but I wish I could rewind and get back all the...
Well, Phase 1 has finally come to a completion. I guess there's still technically a little bit here at the very end, but the Dragons come out on top as the team in phase number 1. It wasn't an easy path for them. They had 12 games they had to go through this weekend to get there, but at the end of the day, they're the ones standing on top. You, as well, have one more chance, well, a few more hours for one more chance for something to put you on top. Get yourself the SPL official mousepad. Again, this is a limited time thing. You have until midnight tonight, maybe, if even. It's less than 8 hours at this point, so you got to be fast acting to make sure that you're going to be able to pick this one up. So go ahead and do that. Shop.smiteproleague.com. While you're there, there's other merch that you can take a peek at and try to purchase up to support your favorite teams as well. Maybe you're a Dragons fan now after they have a very meticulous and difficult weekend across all of them. Again, 12 games, Taco, that they had to play. Arguably, their Saturday was a little more lax, but Friday they go through 5. Here they get put through, it's only 4, but a grueling 4 at that.
If it had been any other mid laner but Giannis, I think we actually see a Game 5 series between these two teams. But letting Hurrywin get by far one of his best picks for such a critical game, it was just too much for the Bolts to handle.
Yeah.
And granted, there were definitely some promising moments throughout this game, Gore, where it looked as if the Jade Dragons were actually going to succumb to the Olympus Bolts' lightning powers. But then there was the Panda Cat effect. And as soon as Panda Cat gets the confidence to start jumping into team fights, that's a cause for concern for any team.
That was this fight, I think, in really just a tight bow is Panda Cat. That's all you really need to say, because he is the one left standing. They invest so much to kill off Heroin, because like you said, he's the most problematic mid laner on this Yanis. And yet it doesn't necessarily matter. Panda Cat still loses his life. They still get the deicide, though, as the Dragons. And that was one of those moments the Bolts maintained right there, but they didn't get a lot more fights like that one. Anytime that it felt like they won, quote-unquote, was anytime that Heroin maybe wasn't connecting fully on his damage. And anytime they lost, guess who was really kind of standing at the forefront? It was either Heroin with his ult or Panda Cat, who just, let's throw it out there, had maybe the best weekend we saw out of any character, any carry player, maybe out of any player the entire weekend.
Panda Cat definitely had an extremely strong showing, and Hurrywin already taking advantage of that set victory debut. And, I mean, props earned. The Hurrywin and the Jade Dragons have definitely earned the right to talk whatever smack they want, and it's all in fair fun, I think, Gore, at this point.
I mean, they had a very difficult task. In fact, they didn't even come into this as the top-seeded team, let alone, going into the group stages. They took a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. It was not a sure thing for them, but they still managed to do it. In fact, we've got PBM standing by, ready for an interview. And Mike, I'm sure you're just ecstatic you guys finally winning.
Yeah, it feels good. Always nice to win, obviously.
Now, with this kind of coming through, again, you go into group stages. The Leviathans had taken first place overall in kind of that initial portion of Phase 1. You come into this, you still have to play through Friday. I mean, were there some struggles, I guess, maybe mentally preparing for this weekend, or did you guys think that, yes, you can do it, it just had to get there to the finals?
No, I don't think so. To be honest, I think a lot of this split has been, I'd say myself and Sam just not being on the same page and kind of not playing our best. I think I especially had a pretty rough performance by how I want to perform. So I thought having that many games consecutively was really good for us, get us on the same page. And I love prepping for best of fives. I think it's a lot more fun. So I just felt like we were right back in our element this week.
Well, you guys looked a lot like in your element. Yesterday was very clean. Today, again, a couple of struggles. It felt like the Bolts kind of kept you guys on your toes. In that last game, though, you can see a lot of the effort building around where Hurwin's ult is. Panda Cat pops off. You guys just kind of get to lead your carries to victory, lead them to water, if you will. And it feels like a lot of, maybe some pressure was alleviated during some of those fights. How did that last game feel? What were the emotions, I guess, throughout the range of it?
The last game was a little interesting. Originally, our game plan was to let Sam kind of dictate the pace of the early, and I think we had a couple miscommunications on target selection or where we wanted to be, and he ended up getting pretty far behind, so we kind of had to shift gears, and I think Hurry kind of took over in that moment. And honestly, that's one of the biggest strengths of him as a player, and why we were attracted to picking him up in the offseason, is that he's really good at just communicating things around the map and taking control of things, and I think he was huge that game for sure.
Well, there's a whole rest of the year for you guys to continue to improve, but as of right now, you are the strongest team in the SBL, so congratulations again on your win, man, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I mean, Taco, just good. They just played good Smite. Everybody really came up and stepped up this weekend that we got to see, but I think that you get to see the Dragons and the way they formulate, the way they adapted, it worked out for them best this weekend.
If there were ever any doubts about whether or not this team was still sitting at the top of those team or overall standings, I think that this playoffs weekend should certainly answer a lot of those questions raised, because the Dragons definitely looked pretty controlling, even through this Bolt set. Like I said, we saw moments for sure where it looked as though the Bolts might have a chance to get the better end of the Dragons, but Hurrywind and Panda Cat and everybody else from the Jade Dragons kind of just prevails. And I really like the fact that Mike just touched on the map awareness, it seems, and the communication that this team clearly has with each other.
And the thing is, and I think this bracket kind of showcases it really well, and this is not to take away from the Dragons' victory, but I feel like right now every team is a lot closer than anybody would really have given credit for coming into this year. It got incredibly competitive way quicker than a lot of teams were accounting for, and a lot of viewers, at least myself, was accounting for. And so to see the Dragons climb up on top, it is not necessarily a huge surprise, but the way they got there is surprising. Definitely some more interesting games that are going to be coming up. Make sure you stay tuned in even on Twitter at SMITE Pro for information about Phase 2 when all of that stuff comes out and when it's going to happen. But if you are just yearning for some more SMITE competitive after today, I've got good news for you. Next Friday, the SMITE Challenger Circuit playoffs are going to be starting. We've got NA teams, we've got EU teams, we're throwing them all together. I think there's some open circuit teams in there as well. They're going to be fighting each other for a really big prize that comes through for them, so I'm sure they're excited. You should be excited. Tune in. That's going to be starting at 11 a.m. this upcoming Friday. But for now, from myself, from Taco, from everybody back in production and all the other casters, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.